Chapter 653. The three six-colored restriction zones were occupied by Shui Yin sect and Hai Yin sect, Xianling sect and Feiyu sect, and Jinling sect and Jade Sword sect and Chongming sect respectively. As for Songhai sect and Linggu sect, they were seized by Jiang Tianlin and Laozu's group at the last moment, as if they had grasped the timing. This caused the two sects to be completely squeezed out of the competition for the three six-colored restriction zones. Zhang Shi Laozu's face was gloomy. Dongguo Laozu finally understood at this moment. He looked at Jiang Tianlin and Laozu and said with a cold smile, "Good, Jinling is really good at scheming." Dongguo Laozu's words made the Laozu's hearts skip a beat. They thought about Jinling's performance after entering Yingtian Dojo, and they suddenly realized that Jinling really seemed to know everything about Yingtian Dojo like the back of his hand. After Jinling entered Yingtian Dojo, he first split up the Transcendent Stage and Core Forging Stage cultivators to attack a two-colored restriction zone and a three-colored restriction zone respectively. He broke through the restriction zones almost at the same time, as if he had already calculated the defensive strength of each restriction zone. When they attacked the four-colored restriction zone, Jinling let his allies, Jade Sword sect and Chongming sect, attack the remaining two-colored restriction zones first. At that time, although Feiyu sect was lucky enough to get a two-colored restriction zone, Songhai sect's ally Linggu sect didn't get anything. When it came to attacking the five-colored restriction zone, Jinling took advantage of Xianling sect's second four-colored restriction zone and let Jade Sword sect and Chongming sect attack the last five-colored restriction zone before Xianling sect. This left Xianling sect and their ally Feiyu sect with no room to interfere. However, Jinling's plan wasn't just that. After attacking the five-colored restriction zone, Jinling turned a blind eye to the exposed six-colored restriction zone and turned to help Jade Sword sect and Chongming sect to attack the five-colored restriction zone, giving Xianling sect and Feiyu sect the opportunity to occupy this six-colored restriction zone. Jinling sect, on the other hand, gathered the strength of the three sects and caught up from behind, taking over the final forbidden zone of the six-colored paths before the Azure Sea sect and Linggu sect. This time, however, they had completely eliminated the Azure Sea sect and Linggu sect from the ranks of the contending for the forbidden zone of the six-colored paths. From the beginning to the end, Xianling sect and Songhai sect, which were ranked second and third in the North Sea cultivation world, as well as their allies, had all suffered from Jinling's schemes. Compared to Jinling, their gains were naturally far inferior. On the contrary, Shui Yin Pavilion and Hai Yin sect had a smooth journey and didn't suffer too many setbacks. Hearing Dongguo Laozu's question, Jiang Tianlin smiled faintly and said, "Tianlin doesn't dare to agree with Mr. Dongguo's words. Fellow Taoist Feng was the first to break through the four-colored restriction zone, but he didn't choose the five-colored restriction zone. Instead, he continued to attack the four-colored restriction zone. This has nothing to do with my sect. As for why your sect didn't occupy the six-colored restriction zone, you can only blame your sect's lack of strength. After all, our sect was the first to break through the five-colored restriction zone, but we didn't immediately occupy the six-colored restriction zone. Under such circumstances, your sect still couldn't occupy the six-colored restriction zone before us. You can only blame your sect's lack of strength. Who else could you blame?" Dongguo Laozu was rendered speechless, while the other Laozu suddenly came to a realization. It was just as Jiang Tianlin Laozu had said, Jinling hadn't schemed against the other sect's cultivators. What Jinling had shown from the beginning was their luck, strength and familiarity with these restrictions. That's right, familiarity. Jinling seemed to be far too familiar with Yingtian Dojo. It was as if Jinling had already accurately predicted the layout and strength of the restrictions in Yingtian Dojo. That was why he was able to arrive before the Azure Sea sect at the last moment. Could it be that Jinling had really come to this Yingtian Dojo before? Almost all the Dharma projections Laozu had the same thought, but they immediately dispelled it. If Jinling had really entered the Yingtian Dojo, there wouldn't have been so many restrictions left for the cultivators from the various sects in the North Sea. Perhaps Jinling had obtained an ancient record that described the interior of Yingtian Dojo. However, this record didn't seem to have recorded the exact location of Yingtian Dojo, which was why Jinling hadn't been able to find the location first. In the blink of an eye, the various Laozu's thoughts were more or less the same. They had once again found a reason for Jinling to rejoice, but at the same time, it was a pity. They were glad that Jinling hadn't found the Yingtian Dojo in advance, but it was a pity that Jinling seemed to be able to reap the biggest reward among the various sects this time. After arriving at the area of the six-colored restrictions, the various sects all slowed down the pace of their attacks. Compared to the five-colored restrictions, the defensive power of the six-colored restrictions had once again increased qualitatively. Even a powerful formation like Jinling's, which consisted of 3 early Dharma adepts and 6 late core forging adepts, was unable to break through the light curtain of the restrictions in a short period of time. In the area covered by the 3 six-colored restrictions were 3 small palaces that surrounded and protected the central palace. Sage Jiang Tianlin took advantage of the time when Sage Xianxin was setting up the weakening formation to use some kind of remarkable power to investigate the palaces that were covered by the restrictions. He then said to Tong Jian Laozu and Saming Laozu, the palaces inside should be a large-scale space instrument. After breaking through the restrictions, the palace instrument will belong to our sect, and the treasures in the palaces will be divided equally among the 3 sections. What do the 2 of you think? Tong Jian Laozu laughed heartily and said, your sect has contributed the most. We have nothing to say. Saming Laozu also nodded and said, Brother Tong Jian is right. At this time, when the Canghai sect and Linggu sect saw that they had no hope of interfering with the 6-colored restrictions, they could only angrily and helplessly investigate the space around the training hall. After the various sects entered the training hall, almost everyone's attention had been attracted by the area covered by the light curtain of the restrictions. They did not pay much attention to the empty space around the training hall. At this time, the Canghai sect and Linggu sect had no choice but to investigate the surroundings, hoping to pick up the loot and make up for their own losses. Jiang Tianlin Laozu saw that the 2 sects were investigating the surroundings and knew that the fact that there was a medium-sized spirit mine in the training hall could not be hidden from the cultivators of the 2 sections. Thus he gave Lu Ping a look. Lu Ping already knew what the 6 Daos forbidden art was going to do. He stomped on the light barrier 3 times in a row, as if he wanted to test how strong the barrier's defense was. 3 rays of bluish-purple light fell down the light curtain, causing the ground near the light curtain to tremble. Muffled thumping sounds traveled all the way into the ground. At this time, from the edge of the dojo, the sturdy late-stage core forging cultivator from the Azure Sea sect suddenly cried out with great joy. The various sects all looked over. However, at this time, the various sects had already reached the final stage of their preparations for the 6-colored restriction. As for the fortunes of the Azure Sea sect and Linggu sect, the various sects could not be bothered to seriously investigate it. Only the people of Jinling sect looked in the direction of the exclamation. They knew that the small spirit mine had been discovered by the Canghai sect and Linggu sect. However, so what if they discovered it? Could the Canghai sect take away the spirit mine? The prelude to breaking through the 6-colored forbidden area had turned into a show for the 3 great formation masters of the North Sea. The 3 of them set up formation tools all around the forbidden area. Now that they had ample time, the formations that the 3 formation masters had set up were undoubtedly much more intricate and complicated. It was likely that their formations were also much more powerful than before. Among the 3 formation masters, the formation master of the Shuiyan Pavilion had the cooperation of a formation master from the Haiyan sect. Thus, the speed at which he set up the formation was the fastest among the 3. As for Sage Qian Daofeng of Xianling sect, he was worthy of being the oldest formation master in the North Sea cultivation world. With the power of one person, the speed at which he set up the formation was second only to the formation master of the Shuiyan Pavilion. Sage Xianxin was the slowest among the 3. However, at this time, the speed at which he set up the formation did not matter much to the various sects' gains in the Yingtian training hall. Looking at the last central palace that was covered by the 7-colored restrictions, it was not something that 2 or 3 early Dharma adepts could break through together. The 7-colored restrictions were known as the most powerful protective restrictions in the cultivation world. Of course, the prerequisite was that the restrictions had to be controlled by someone. Jiang Tianlin Laozu coughed and said to Tongjian Laozu and Saming Laozu, "Everyone, it's time to show everyone what you have." With that, he took out the last 5-colored restriction-breaking talisman from his storage artifact. This time, Tian Shui Laozu had given Sage Xuanju a total of 3 5-colored restriction-breaking talismans. After Sage Xuanju had been injured and replaced by Lu Ping, he had given these 3 talismans to Jiang Tianlin Laozu. Jiang Tianlin Laozu had used up 2 of the talismans in one go when he was breaking through the 5-colored restriction area. As a result, Jinling sect had become the only sect in the North Sea to have a complete 5-colored restriction area. Tongjian Laozu was a straightforward person. Seeing that Jian Tianlin Laozu had taken out the restriction-breaking talisman, he also took out his own restriction-breaking talisman. Saming Laozu hesitated for a moment and said, "Martial nephew Tianlin, if we use the restriction-breaking talisman now, what should we do with the last central palace?" Jiang Tianlin Laozu smiled and said, I'm afraid you've forgotten that the restriction-breaking talisman can only be broken through by brute force. Only the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman can be effective. Saming Laozu slapped his forehead in annoyance and said, yes. If we don't use it now, I'm afraid this restriction-breaking talisman will be useless in the dojo. At this time, the various sects finally began to show their respective treasures. Xianling sect's Feng Shu Tao took out a 3-foot 5-colored restriction-breaking talisman, while Feiyu sect took out a magic artifact that seemed to be useless in the eyes of the cultivators present. However, this magic artifact seemed to be effective in breaking through restrictions, so it was recognized by Feng Shu Tao. Haiyan sect and Shuiyan pavilion each had 2 5-colored restriction-breaking talismans. Their total number even exceeded that of Jinling sect and the other 2 sections. However, these 3 sects had 3 transcendents, Laozu. When breaking through restrictions by brute force, their overall strength far exceeded that of Haiyan sect and Shuiyan pavilion. Chapter 654. After setting up the formation, perfected Xuanqin's expression was solemn. He stood there for a long time without saying a word, as if he was thinking about something. In the other 2 areas, whether it was Qian Daofeng or the Shuiyan pavilion's formation grandmaster and master-level assistants, their progress in setting up the formation was above perfected Xuanqin's. However, for some reason, there were no sounds of violent breaking of the formation in these 2 areas. Jiang Tianlin Laozu saw perfected Xuanqin frowning as if calculating something, so he asked, Junior sister, is there something wrong? Perfected Xuanqin heaved a long sigh of relief. Senior brother, I'm afraid we underestimated the difficulty of protecting the 6-colored forbidden zone. According to the estimation of the light screen when we set up the formation, I'm afraid it will be very difficult for us to break this light screen. Tong Jian Laozu panicked and said, how is that possible? There are 3 Dharma laws Laozu here. If we can't break it, then the other 2 areas can't be broken either. Saming Laozu saw that perfected Xuanqin was a little unhappy and hurriedly said, Brother Tong Jian, disciple Xuanqin is a formation grandmaster. Since she said it can't be broken, then it really can't be broken. Haven't you noticed that the other 2 areas haven't started breaking the restrictions yet? Tong Jian Laozu chuckled. He was an impatient person and things came and went quickly. Disciple Xuanqin, the old man spoke too quickly. Don't blame him. Perfected Xuanqin nodded slightly. She was a formation grandmaster, and her status in the North Sea was not lower than that of ordinary Dharma laws adepts. She had her own way of doing things. After thinking for a while, perfected Xuanqin continued, this formation is considered to be doing its best. I'm confident that I won't lose to the 2 from Xianling sect and Shuiyan pavilion, but at most, each colored restriction will weaken 1 restriction. Although the 3 5-colored restriction-breaking talismans have some effect, it won't do much against the 6-colored restriction. At most, 1 or 2 restrictions will be destroyed. However, the 6-colored restriction's recovery ability far exceeds the 5-colored restrictions. I've calculated that with our combined power, I'm afraid we'll just barely be able to match the weakened restriction's recovery ability. Bronze Sword Laozu said with some disappointment, what should we do? Saming Laozu, on the other hand, laughed somewhat self-deprecatingly and said, at least the other 2 places might not be able to break the Jinji. It's just that this way the sects will definitely have to form alliances again. After a round of haggling, who knows how the disputes will turn out. Jiang Tianlin and Laozu looked at the 2 groups of people who were discussing in the distance. Their eyes flickered and no one knew what they were thinking. Although Jiang Tianlin Laozu's seniority was lower than Tong Jian Laozu and San Laozu, whether it was Cultivation or Jinling behind Jiang Tianlin Laozu was the leader. San Laozu saw that Jiang Tianlin was silent for a long time, so he asked, Martial nephew Tianlin, do you have any ideas? Jiang Tianlin Laozu smiled slightly and said, I'm afraid that Martial Uncle San Ming's guess just now is going to become a reality. San Laozu's expression changed. He looked at the 2 groups of people in the distance, but he couldn't see anything, so he asked with some doubt, Martial nephew Tianlin, how do you know? As if to confirm Jiang Tianlin Laozu's words, just as his voice fell, the cultivators of Canghai sect and Linggu sect who seemed to have found some treasure at the edge of the dojo flew back again. In midair, the 5 rays of light paused for a moment as if they were discussing something. Then Linggu sect's Laozu brought Zhang Shi to the Shuiyan pavilion and Haiyan sect's camp, while Donghua Laozu brought the array master of Linggu sect and the strong cultivator to Xianling sect's camp. Jiang Tianlin Laozu didn't directly answer Saming Laozu's question. Instead he said, Xianling sect, Feiling sect, Shui Yen Pavilion, and Hai Yen sect. These 4 sects are unable to break through the restriction, so they will definitely ask Songhai sect and Linggu sect to rejoin them. This way, the power of these 2 restriction areas will increase to 3 Dharma adepts, and the formation masters of both sides will each have a formation master assisting them. At the same time, don't forget that Songhai sect should also have many treasures that can break restrictions. When we broke the 5-colored restriction, because we underestimated the protection of the 6-colored restriction area, we had already used up 2 5-colored restriction breaking talismans. Now, with the combined power of the 3 sects, we only have these 3 talismans. This Songhai sect has a good plan. They want to reap some benefits from each of the 2 restriction areas. This way, even if Songhai sect and Linggu sect don't occupy the 6-colored restriction area, the benefits they will obtain after coming down will not be lesser. After Donghua Laozu said something to Feng Shutao, Tong Jian Laozu took out 2 5-colored talismans from his storage artifact and handed them to Feng Shutao, whose face was filled with joy. After Feng Shutao received the talisman, the Shui Yen Pavilion and the Hai Yen sect had already started attacking the light barrier with the help of the Linggu sect's old ancestor and Jiangxi. Soon after, the Xianling sect's side also started attacking. For a moment, the Yingtian dojo was once again filled with the loud rumbling of spells. This time, even Jiang Tianlin Laozu seemed to be a little hesitant. Tong Jian Laozu thought that Jiang Tianlin Laozu couldn't make up his mind, so he said loudly, "Who cares if it can break the restriction or not, we have to give it a try first." Lu Ping knew that it wasn't that Jiang Tianlin Laozu didn't want to give it a try, but he was hesitating whether to use the 7-colored restriction breaking talisman in his hand. That was Junling's trump card to break the restriction in the Yingtian dojo. Lu Ping looked at the 7-colored restriction palace in the center and pondered for a moment. Finally he made up his mind. He stepped forward and said, "Martial uncle, perhaps this disciple has a way to weaken the restriction's protection a little more after using the restriction-breaking talisman." Jiang Tianlin Laozu's eyes lit up when he heard this. He said, "What else do you have?" When Lu Ping heard Jiang Tianlin Laozu's words, he knew that Jiang Tianlin was also reluctant to use the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman on the 6-colored restriction. He smiled in his heart and said, "This disciple once learned a set of restriction-breaking secret technique from martial uncle Yang Shenfeng. Perhaps it can weaken this light curtain again. At that time, our speed of breaking the restriction may be faster than the restriction's recovery speed." Before Jiang Tianlin Laozu could say anything, Daoist Shenshin said happily, "Senior brother Liang taught you a restriction-breaking secret technique? Why didn't you say so earlier?" Saming Laozu smiled and said, "I was wondering why your sect didn't let martial nephew Liang Shenfeng participate in this operation this time. With martial nephew Liang Xuanfeng's attainments in the restriction-breaking secret technique, I think the trip to Yingtian dojo this time will be even smoother. However, this disciple of your sect has actually received martial nephew Liang Xuanfeng's secret technique. I think it's possible." Lu Ping didn't expect perfected Liang Shenfeng to be so famous in the restriction-breaking technique. Even a Dharma stage cultivator like Saming Laozu respected him. However, he knew the real reason why perfected Liang Shenfeng didn't come was because he and Chu Xuanqing had reached the critical stage of advancing to the Dharma stage. Therefore, they had to cultivate in seclusion in the True Spirit Grotto Heaven at the top of Tianling Mountain. Otherwise, Junling would never lack perfected Liang Shenfeng, a restriction-breaking expert, in his seclusion exploration. Jiang Tianlin Laozu also seemed to have a sudden realization. He seemed to have some understanding of what happened between perfected Liang Shenfeng and Lu Ping in the East Sea, but he obviously didn't think about this just now. Therefore, Jiang Tianlin Laozu didn't hesitate anymore and said to perfected Shenshin, "In that case, let's give it a try." The difficulty of breaking the 6-colored restriction was obviously beyond everyone's expectations. Although the cultivators who occupied the other 2 areas started to Junling to break the restriction first, the light curtain of the 2 restrictions was still standing after a full 10 minutes. It was just that the luster looked slightly dimmer. Perfected Shenshin activated the array formation and then focused all his energy on suppressing the restriction light curtain. Jiang Tianlin Laozu activated 3 5-colored restriction-breaking talismans in a row, and 3 5-colored rays of light brushed against the light curtain one after another. Meanwhile, Lu Ping, who had been preparing for a long time, surged all the quintessential essence in his body and fully executed a set of restriction-breaking secret techniques from the mysterious purple jade slips he obtained from Failing Mountain. Although perfected Xuanqing's quintessential essence was restrained by the array formation beneath his feet, His eyes couldn't help but twitch when he saw the restriction-breaking secret technique that Lu Ping's hands were like butterflies fluttering through flowers. Restrictions and array formations were fields that were extremely closely related. As an array formation grandmaster, perfected Xianxun had dabbled in restriction-breaking secret techniques. He usually had many discussions with perfected Liang Shenfeng, who was proficient in restriction-breaking techniques. Naturally, he could sense something from Lu Ping's restriction-breaking secret technique. However, he didn't say anything. Instead, he lowered his head and continued to control the array formation beneath his feet with all his might. Lu Ping hadn't used this secret technique before because he was afraid that perfected Xianxun would see through it and suspect him. However, now that he was about to return empty-handed from a treasure trove, Lu Ping couldn't care too much. After all, he couldn't use the precious 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman on something like this. The secret technique that Lu Ping was using now was much longer and more complicated than the restriction-breaking secret technique that he had used when he entered the Yingtian dojo. Naturally, its power was much stronger than before. However, the conditions for using this secret technique were extremely harsh. It could only be used on a restriction that had been weakened by perfected Xuanxun's array formation in advance. Every time Lu Ping made a seal, he would leave an inextinguishable trace of spirit qi in the air. When the 108 seals were completed, the 108 spirit qi imprints formed a beautiful strange bird with strange 5-colored tail feathers in the air. The strange bird let out a long cry, and the 5-colored tail feathers behind it swept towards the light curtain in front of it. The light curtain that had already been weakened by 2 colors shook violently, and countless spirit stars exploded and danced in all directions. When Jiang Tianlin Laozu saw the large 5-colored bird formed by Lu Ping's restriction secret technique, he couldn't help but be startled. He seemed to be thinking about something. However, after the large bird swept its tail feathers towards the light curtain, Jiang Tianlin Laozu's eyes suddenly shot out 2 rays of light that were 3 feet long. He saw something through the dancing spirit stars in the sky, and then his face lit up with joy. He said, "What a good restriction-breaking secret technique. This time we might be able to enter the other 2 places first." Copper Sword Laozu was the most impatient. When he heard this, he swung the copper sword in his hand and took the lead to slash at the light curtain. After that, Jiang Tianlin Laozu and Sanming Laozu attacked almost at the same time. Perfected Xian Su and the others were not willing to fall behind. Only Lu Ping and perfected Xianxun did not participate in the first wave of attack from the 3 sections. Perfected Xianxun naturally had to control the formation under his feet in order to weaken the light curtain as much as possible. After using the restriction-breaking secret technique just now, Lu Ping seemed to have consumed a lot of his strength. He didn't have the strength to attack at full strength for a while. Lu Ping took a deep breath and a purplish-blue light flashed across his face. The true essence in his core space immediately flowed into his veins, quickly replenishing the true essence he had consumed from casting the secret technique. The golden scale sword swayed in the air and a purple thunderbolt fell from the sky. The golden scale sword transformed into a 4-legged serpent shrouded in purple thunderbolts from head to toe. The serpent then charged towards the light barrier. This attack was much more powerful than ordinary greatsword techniques. This was also the first time that Lu Ping had thought of combining the lightning power of the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash and Lu Ping's sword techniques into one. He didn't expect that it would be so powerful. Then Lu Ping took out a talisman weapon from his storage device. It was the one that he had given to Debao previously. It was unknown when Lu Ping had taken it back. Poor Debao had only used this talisman weapon once since he had obtained it. Lu Ping placed this talisman weapon, which had been infused with enough qi, on Landslide. Then he raised Landslide in midair. Landslide fell, and because Lu Ping had infused it with qi, it turned into a bluish-purple light, which greatly increased the power of Landslide. With a loud bang, this attack was almost as powerful as a normal attack from a Dharma adept. Although Bronze Sword Laozu and Saming Laozu had long heard of this most outstanding 3rd-generation disciple of Jinling, and the strength that he had displayed during the process of breaking the restriction had surprised the 2 Laozu, Lu Ping's 2 consecutive attacks still made the 2 Laozu look at him in a different light. Bronze Sword Laozu slashed out with his sword and destroyed a rainbow restriction. Then he asked Jiang Tianlin Laozu, who was next to him, "Has this kid really only trained for less than 100 years? Jiang Tianlin Laozu smiled faintly and said, "He's just borrowing the external power of a talisman weapon. It's not his own strength." Although Copper Sword Ancestor didn't see the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash, he saw the talisman weapon stuck on the landslide. Although he was still surprised, at least his suspicions about Lu Ping's monstrous offensive prowess were lessened. thanks to Lu Ping's mysterious restriction-breaking secret technique, and Junling and the other two sects were originally stronger than the other sects. Although Junling was the last to attack the six-colored restriction area, after a full hour, they had already caught up and surpassed Xianling sect, Shui Yen Pavilion and Hai Yen sect. As Jiang Tianlin Laozu's Dharma with Luan circled in the sky, its 108 feathers formed a strangling formation that covered the entire light curtain. Then a series of crisp sounds could be heard, and the light curtain was finally broken. After continuously attacking the light curtain with all his strength, even someone as strong as Jiang Tianlin Laozu seemed to be a little short of qi in his body. However, before everyone could enjoy the joy of breaking the restriction, a strange cold snort suddenly came from the small palace in front of them. Jiang Tianlin Laozu's expression suddenly changed, and then there was a trace of surprise. Then this trace of surprise was well hidden by Jiang Tianlin Laozu. He ignored Bronze Sword Laozu and Sanming Laozu's surprise at the cold snort coming from the palace, and walked into the palace first. There was a trace of urgency in his footsteps. Chapter 655. In this world, the great adepts of the late Dharma stage had a lifespan of at most 1,500 years. Beyond that, there were those who had achieved the celestial soul. If such beings did not leave this world, they would only have a lifespan of 2,000 years. In Lu Ping's impression, those who could live for 4,000 years were only spirit herbs, spirit trees, and spirit demons like the dragon pagoda tree. Therefore, when Lu Ping heard the cold snort coming from the palace, he felt his heart palpitate for no reason. Could it be that there was a cultivator from the Ying Tian sect who had lived for more than 4,000 years hidden in this palace? However, when he saw Jiang Tianlin Laozu enter the palace without any hesitation, followed by Tong Jian and Saming Laozu, Lu Ping and the others no longer had any doubts. They followed behind the three Laozu cultivators and walked into the palace. The people who heard the cold snort were not the only ones who heard it. Feng Shutao, Donghua Laozu and the others in the distance also heard it clearly. Feng Shutao's expression immediately changed when he heard the cold snort. When he turned his head to look, he saw Jiang Tianlin's figure disappear into the palace. Feng Shutao's eyes twitched, but he tried his best to maintain a calm expression. He then focused all his attention on the light screen in front of him. Perhaps after he broke this light screen, there would also be a cold snort coming from inside. However, when that happened, he would have to snatch it from the cultivator from the Songhai sect first. However, none of this escaped Donghua Laozu's eyes. Donghua Laozu was confused about what that cold snort was, but he knew that it was definitely not a cultivator from the Ying Tian sect who was still alive in the palace. In the world of cultivation, he had never heard of anyone who could extend their lifespan to 4,000 years, not even those who had achieved a celestial soul. Donghua Laozu turned to Feng Shutao and asked, "Nephew Feng, do you know what that cold snort was?" Feng Shutao faked a smile and said, "How would I know? Could it be a surviving Ying Tian faction cultivator?" Feng Shutao chuckled dryly as he said this. Donghua Laozu was cursing in his heart, but there was nothing he could do about it. He had already made up his mind that if he heard a cold harumph from within the light barrier, he was going to rush in at once to see what it was. The Donghua elder casually slammed a spell onto the light screen, and his eyes inadvertently glanced over. He noticed that the corners of Feng Shutao's mouth were moving slightly, while the Dharma adept of the Feiyu sect on the other side was nodding his head almost imperceptibly. It was obvious that the two of them were discussing something and had already reached an agreement. Donghua Laozu turned his head, and his expression darkened. He was sure that the two of them had been discussing the cold snort, and from the looks of it, Feng Shutao was obviously aware of the cold snort, and it was obvious that he was discussing something with the Dharma adept of the Feiyu sect to target Donghua Laozu. After Jiang Tianlin Laozu entered the palace, he realized that this small palace was indeed a spatial ritual implement. However, this palace was not like the House of Gold, which was like a small world. Instead, it was like a palace. The only difference was that the space within this palace was far larger than the one outside. Jiang Tianlin Laozu quickly passed through the palace and headed deeper into the palace. Along the way, the lights of various treasures danced in the air, but Jiang Tianlin Laozu ignored them. Tong Jian Laozu and Sanming Laozu were dazzled by the dozens of lights that danced in the air the moment they entered the palace. At their level of cultivation, there were not many treasures that could catch their attention. However, among the dozens of lights, there were clearly many that had caught their attention. While the two of them were dazed, Jiang Tianlin Laozu had already disappeared into the depths of the palace. Tong Jian and Sanming Laozu finally managed to break free from the temptation of the treasures. They looked at each other and smiled bitterly. Then they quickly chased after Jiang Tianlin Laozu. When Laozu and Saming saw the lights flying in the palace, they were unable to control themselves, let alone Xian Su, Xian Sen, and the other late-stage core forging cultivators. Comparatively speaking, when the two late-stage core forging cultivators from the Jade Sword sect and Chongming sect saw the lights, their expressions were far more shocked than the people from Jinling. This also showed that Jinling's foundation was far more profound than these two sections. This caused the cultivators from the two sects to be inferior to cultivators of the same level as Jinling in terms of cultivation and knowledge. When Lu Ping saw the lights flying in the sky, he couldn't help but be stunned. Although his knowledge was not inferior to that of Daoist Xian Sen and the others, any late-stage core forging cultivator would not have a better expression than Lu Ping when they saw 7 or 8 magic treasures that were obviously at the spirit-nurturing level flying in the air. Lu Ping's eyes flashed with a green light as he looked at a scarlet light. The treasure that was wrapped in the light was obviously a cauldron that looked like a pill furnace. Lu Ping was 100% sure that it was a top-grade pill furnace. Lu Ping roughly examined the dozens of lights. The lowest grade treasure among them was also a spirit-connected mystic treasure. There were also a variety of treasure boxes, jade bottles, and the like. Although he couldn't examine them for the time being, judging from the intensity of the light shrouding these treasures, the items inside were probably more precious than the spirit-connected mystic treasures. As the three patriarchs had already made their way deep into the palace, the cultivators from the three sects did not move to collect the treasures without the approval of the three patriarchs. Although the treasures were tempting to look at, none of them moved to collect them. At this moment, a cold snort came from the depths of the palace. This cold snort was even louder than the previous one. It even impacted everyone's divine sense. Moreover, this cold snort seemed to carry a trace of anger. Everyone's expressions changed, but they weren't too worried. After all, the three Laozus had gone together. Moreover, there were no sounds of fighting coming from the depths of the palace. Everyone waited here for about the time it took to drink a cup of tea, but there was still no news from the depths of the palace. Unable to restrain themselves, they discussed going to the depths of the palace where the three Laozus had gone to take a look. However, after they advanced for a few dozen feet, an invisible barrier suddenly blocked their way. Lu Ping held the golden scale sword in his hand and stabbed forward. Lu Ping stabbed the invisible barrier more than 3 feet into it before it rebounded. The two late core forging cultivators from Yujin sect and Chongming sect looked like they had seen a ghost. Just now, the cultivator from Yujin sect had touched the invisible barrier first and had tried to use the flying sword in his hand to cut through the barrier. However, the flying sword had only pierced 7 or 8 inches before it could go any further. Sage Xian Sen and Sage Xian Su, on the other hand, seemed to have expected this. In order not to be shocked by their own juniors, they acted as if they hadn't seen anything. Lu Ping scratched his head and asked Sage Xianchen with some uncertainty, "Uncle Master, is this barrier the famous cultivation barrier of the cultivation world?" Sage Xianchen's knowledge of arrays and restrictions was clearly far above Lu Ping's. Hearing this, he nodded and said, "Yes, the cultivation barrier can determine a cultivator's level of cultivation based on the aura around them. This is a Dharma stage cultivation barrier. Only those who have reached the Dharma stage can pass through this barrier without any obstacles. Cultivators below the Dharma stage will be blocked by this barrier." Sage Xianchen paused and then said pointedly, "Actually, although this cultivation barrier is strange, it is not unbreakable. If a person's level of cultivation is not enough, but their strength is comparable to that of a Dharma stage cultivator, it is not impossible to break this cultivation barrier through violent means." For some reason, Lu Ping heard a hint of provocation in Sage Xianchen's tone. At this moment, a low grunt came from the depths of the palace after the cultivation barrier was broken. This grunt was different from the previous cold grunt. It seemed to contain a trace of fear. Everyone looked at each other, not knowing what had happened in the depths of the palace. However, from these three sounds, it seemed that the three Laozu situation was not too bad. After a while, Lu Ping asked hesitantly, "Uncle Master Xianchen, if we combine our strength, we can definitely match that of a Dharma stage cultivator. Can we break this cultivation barrier?" Sage Xianchen opened his mouth and was about to speak, but he suddenly felt that the cultivation barrier in front of him was strange. When he turned to look, he saw Bronze Sword Laozu and Sanming Laozu walk out from the depths of the palace. However, Lu Ping and the others did not see Jiang Tianlin Laozu. Bronze Sword Laozu and Sanming Jinling easily passed through the cultivation barrier. Everyone hurriedly asked the two about what had happened in the depths of the palace. The cultivators and Jinling did not know why Jiang Tianlin Laozu did not come out with the two of them. Bronze Sword Laozu looked at Sage Xiansen and the others. For some reason, an envious and emotional expression flashed across his face. He said slowly, "Nephew Jiang Tianlin has encountered a great opportunity. Don't be impatient. I believe Nephew Jiang will come out soon." Bronze Sword Laozu had just finished speaking when the space in the entire palace suddenly shook violently. When the shaking subsided, Lu Ping looked to his side strangely. Then he sent the flying sword in his hand forward. The flying sword pierced tens of feet away without any obstruction. Lu Ping hurriedly kept the golden scale sword and said, "The cultivation barrier has disappeared." Bronze Sword Laozu and Sanming Laozu looked at each other. When they looked into the depths of the palace, they found that a space door had suddenly opened beside them. Jiang Tianlin Laozu stepped out of the door. He did not know if it was an illusion, but when he saw Jiang Tianlin Laozu, Lu Ping felt that Jiang Tianlin Laozu seemed to be covered with a mysterious veil. The aura around him was like turbulent waves, fluctuating unsteadily. Bronze Sword Laozu and Sanming Laozu cupped their hands at Jiang Tianlin Laozu and said, "Congratulations, Nephew Jiang, for your great improvement in your cultivation. You will soon reach the mid-Dharma stage." Old Ancestor Jiang Tianlin bowed to the two of them and said, "Thank you, seniors, for letting me have it. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to refine this Dharma Laksana 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 Laksana." Bronze Sword Laozu and Sanming Laozu's faces turned red. Bronze Sword Laozu smiled bitterly and said, "Nephew Jiang, you don't have to flatter us. Neither of us can refine that Dharma power soul. Only you can suppress it with your strength. Being able to obtain it is your opportunity. It has nothing to do with the two of us." Jiang Tianlin Laozu smiled and did not dwell on this issue. He reached out and pointed at the dozens of balls of light that had stopped flying in the sky. These balls of light flew in front of everyone and landed neatly. Jiang Tianlin Laozu smiled and said, "We agreed that this spatial instrument belongs to our sect, and the other gains will be split equally. Just now, I was lucky enough to obtain a Dharma power soul, so I have already picked one treasure first. Both of you can choose one of these dozens of treasures, and we will split the rest equally." Bronze Sword Laozu smiled and said, "All right, then I won't stand on ceremony with the old man first." Sanming Laozu's face was also filled with joy. Among these dozens of treasures, he had already taken a fancy to a few of them. Now that Jiang Tianlin let the two of them pick first, he could take the most valuable treasure among the treasures that he had taken a fancy to. Bronze Sword Laozu's face was full of smiles as he directly put away the crimson top-grade alchemy furnace that Lu Ping had seen just now. Lu Ping felt a burst of pain when he saw it. And the treasure that Sanming Laozu took made Lu Ping a little surprised. It was actually an ancient zither. When Lu Ping saw this ancient zither, his heart skipped a beat, as if the qi in his body was triggered. When Jiang Tianlin Laozu saw Sanming Laozu put away the ancient zither, he raised his eyebrows unconsciously. Obviously, this ancient zither was also quite important to Jiang Tianlin Laozu. After being picked by Sanming Laozu, he also felt a bit pained. This time, Lu Ping's mysterious restriction-breaking secret technique had made a great contribution. Therefore, the treasures in the palaces that the three factions had previously discussed were to be divided equally. After that, the two Laozu urged Jinling to choose first. Jiang Tianlin Laozu declined slightly and then agreed. After a few rounds of selection, dozens of treasures were divided among the three factions. Everyone had their own gains. Jiang Tianlin Laozu smiled and said, "The matter here is over. We should also go out and see how the other two six-color forbidden areas are being cracked." Tong Jian Laozu was stunned and said, "Aren't we going to occupy the colorful palace in the center first?" Sanming Laozu smiled a little impatiently and said, "Brother Tong Jian, the six-colored restriction is already so difficult. The seven-colored restriction is a total of 49 colors. How can our three factions break it?" When everyone left the palace, they saw Jiang Tianlin Laozu patting the stone pillar at the entrance of the palace. The entire palace suddenly trembled and the palace slowly rose. Then it gradually shrank to the size of a palm and disappeared into Jiang Tianlin Laozu's sleeve. When everyone looked at the other two palaces that had already been broken, they saw that the cultivators of the other six factions had long disappeared. They must have entered the palaces. At this time, Jiang Tianlin turned to Tong Jian and Sanming Laozu and said, "Since there is no way to break the restriction of the colorful central palace for the time being, we will go to the surroundings of the dojo and see what treasures the Blue Sea sect cultivators found." Chapter 656. Junling naturally knew what treasure the Blue Sea sect had discovered. On the ground at the edge of the dojo, Bronze Sword Laozu discovered the spirit stone vein that was covered by a restriction from afar. Bronze Sword Laozu was surprised and said, I didn't expect there to be any treasures in this border area. Bronze Sword Laozu swung his 2 fingers like a sword, and a sword chi smashed the simple restriction on the ground into pieces. A mine entrance appeared in front of everyone. This is... Bronze Sword Laozu looked at the mine entrance on the ground. With his divine will, he could easily discover the secret hidden in the depths of the mine entrance after breaking the restriction. Saming Laozu was also a little surprised and sighed regretfully. It's actually a medium-sized spirit stone vein. It's a pity that we don't have a Grotto Heaven magic treasure, so there's no way to move it now. Bronze Sword Laozu said, even if we don't have a Grotto Heaven magic treasure and can't take this mine away, we just have to move it out of this Grotto Heaven. Saming Laozu shook his head and said, there's not enough time. To move this mine, we have to set up an extremely complicated relocation Dharma formation. Saming Laozu glanced at perfected Xianxin and said, with martial nephew Xianxin around, there's no need to worry about this. It's just that we don't have enough time. I'm afraid that before we can set up the Dharma formation, the cultivators of the other sects will come out from the other 2 palace spaces. Bronze Sword Laozu wanted to say something, but Saming Laozu seemed to know what he was going to say, so he said, so what if we can move this spirit stone vein out? This place is thousands of miles away from the North Sea. This mine can't be moved back to the North Sea. Will the sects still have to send cultivators to guard the Yingtian mountain range for this spirit stone vein? Bronze Sword Laozu looked at the mine in front of him with eyes full of regret, but he also knew that Saming Laozu's words made sense. Patriarch Jiang Tianlin smiled at the 2 of them and said, seniors, please don't be impatient. Maybe we can find a way to move this spiritual mineral vein today. However, if we want to move such a spiritual mineral vein, I'm afraid it will be beyond our power to do it alone without the help of the 2 of you. Bronze Sword Laozu perked up and said, oh, what's the method? Tell me. Saming Laozu was puzzled. He said, Jinling I Tianlin Jinling Sect Sword Spirit Stone Vein Jinling Sect Jinling Tianlin Jinling Yang and Jinling Spirit and Yang Tianlin Jing Sun Sect Zhang Tianzhou Sect Moon Sect Zhang Wu Yang Sect and Zhong. However, he did not show his doubts on his face. As an ally of Jinling Sect, Jinling Sect's strength would directly affect the stability of Chongming Sect's position in the North Sea's cultivation world. At present it was very beneficial for Chongming Sect. Each of the sects in the North Sea had their own independent inheritance system and traditional sphere of influence. Although Jinling's strength and expansion attracted Yujin Sect and Chongming, it would inevitably affect his allies in the future. When that time came, it was unknown whether Chongming and Yujin Sect would be able to maintain their independence. Jiang Tianlin Laozu looked at the silent Saming Laozu with a faint smile. Saming Laozu was shocked and quickly suppressed his thoughts. He was now very clear that, based on the current situation, Chongming Sect could only follow closely behind Jinling, which was getting stronger day by day. As for the future, Saming Laozu smiled bitterly in his heart. It would depend on the development of the sect. Ancestor Jiang Tianlin glanced at the silent Saming Sect's ancestor with a faint smile. The Saming Sect's ancestor was startled and hurriedly suppressed his thoughts. He was now very clear that the Chongming Sect could only follow closely behind the increasingly powerful Jinling Sect. At the very least, the Chongming Sect's immediate benefits could still be guaranteed. As for the future, the Saming Sect's ancestor smiled bitterly in his heart. It would depend on the sect's own development. Ancestor Jiang Tianlin stretched out his hand, and a bronze mirror glowing with green light appeared in his hand. Saming Laozu looked at the bronze mirror in Jiang Tianlin Laozu's hand and suddenly thought of something. His expression changed and he said in shock, yesterday the 3 Laozu in the Yingtian mountains seemed to have joined forces to fight against one person. It seemed to be for the Yingshu mirror. Could it be that this bronze mirror? Impossible. The bronze sword Laozu jumped up, but saw Jiang Tianlin Laozu smiling and nodding, so his words became a little awkward. He said, You really broke through the siege of 3 Dharma adepts of the same level and even injured Changhe Laozu, who was at the peak of the early Dharma stage? Saming Laozu's heart sank. He had already believed that Jiang Tianlin Laozu was the person from last night. Although Jiang Tianlin Laozu's level of practice was the same as his level of practice was much higher than that of other adepts of the same level. Previously, when everyone had joined forces to attack the light screen, although the 2 of them were amazed by Jiang Tianlin Laozu's strength, it was only now that the 2 of them realized that Jiang Tianlin Laozu had actually been holding back. Last night, when the 4 Laozu were fighting, Saming Laozu and the others naturally did not miss it, and had long been hiding at the side to watch. However, because the various sects were afraid of exposing their tracks and alerting the enemy, they could only watch from afar. Jiang Tianlin Laozu's secret technique of hiding his own aura was really brilliant, so no one had recognized that the practitioner who had snatched the treasured mirror of abundance was actually Jinling's Jiang Tianlin. The reason why Sanming Laozu smiled bitterly was not because of the difference between him and Jiang Tianlin, who was also at the early Dharma stage, but because Jinling had someone like Jiang Tianlin here. At least until Jiang Tianlin fell, Chongming Jade Sword, and the other sects could only be loyal allies of Jinling. Thinking about the Dharma soul that Jiang Tianlin Laozu had just inherited in the palace space, which made Jiang Tianlin Laozu's cultivation and strength greatly improved, Sanming Laozu smiled bitterly in his heart. As for the future, Sanming Laozu looked at Lu Ping, who had cultivated for less than 100 years, and sighed in his heart, time, fate. Copper Sword Laozu did not think so much. Seeing the treasured mirror of abundance in Jiang Tianlin Laozu's hand, although his face was full of envy, he said anxiously, then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and set up the relocation formation. Otherwise, when the people from the other sects come out, I am afraid it will be a different story. Jiang Tianlin Laozu was not in a hurry, but turned his head and nodded at Lu Ping. Lu Ping understood and stamped his foot, and a bluish-purple light penetrated into the ground. Copper Sword and Sanming Laozu did not know what Lu Ping's intention was at first, but after a while, the two of them seemed to have discovered something, and their faces showed a surprised expression. Debao's fat body jumped up from the ground, and he suddenly felt several tyrannical auras around him shrouding him. His instinct urged him to quickly hide behind Lu Ping, and then he began to slowly look around. Unexpectedly, Debao's sudden appearance in the Yingtian dojo, and when he was hiding underground, even Fa Xiang Laozu did not notice his existence, causing everyone to stare behind him. When Debao turned around, he happened to see countless shining divine lights staring at him. Coming from the nature of the spirit-seeking mouse, Debao's brain shrank, and he desperately wanted to hide his body behind Lu Ping to avoid everyone's eyes. However, although Lu Ping was also considered burly, he still could not hide Debao's fat body. Sanming Laozu looked at the timid Debao. Although he was surprised at Debao's outstanding talent in the earth escape art, he still looked a little worried. Martial nephew Tianlin, although this disciple of your sect is extremely talented in the earth escape art, once he is discovered by the cultivators of the other sects, I'm afraid that Xianling sect and Songhai sect will use Jinling as an excuse to break the sect's oath to attack him together. Copper Sword Laozu also said, originally your sect had 4 core forging cultivators, but now it has become 5. I'm afraid it's really not appropriate. Although Yujin sect and Chongming sect were Jinling's allies, these two sects were independent and not under Jinling's control. If Jinling really brought 5 core forging cultivators into the Yingtian dojo, it was obvious that he had broken the rules set by the sects of the North Sea. Even if Chongming sect and Yujin sect were on Jinling's side, they would not allow Jinling to trample on the rules of the North Sea's cultivation world. Jiang Tianlin Laozu looked at the two of them in confusion. When he looked at Debao, he suddenly frowned. Then, when he saw the golden necklace hanging around Debao's neck, he suddenly realized something and asked Lu Ping in surprise, demonization bracelet. You actually have this treasure? Only then did Lu Ping remember that Debao still had the demonization bracelet that Lu Ping had given to him. No wonder Sanming Laozu and Copper Sword Laozu showed dissatisfaction. It turned out that they had regarded Debao as Jinling's disciple. The name of the demonization bracelet not only surprised Jiang Tianlin Laozu, but also Copper Sword Laozu and Sanming Laozu. The fat, timid boy in front of them was actually a demon cultivator? However, when Lu Ping took off the golden necklace from Debao's neck, Copper Sword Laozu and Sanming Laozu were even more surprised. Spirit-seeking mouse? Copper Sword Laozu looked as if he had seen a ghost and said, Spirit-seeking mouse can also cultivate to the transformation stage? Although Sanming Laozu didn't say anything, the expression on his face also showed that his mood at the moment was probably not much different from Copper Sword Laozu's. Different from Copper Sword and Sanming Laozu's surprise that Debao, who was born as a spirit-seeking mouse, could cultivate to the transformation stage, Jiang Tianlin Laozu's interest was completely attracted by the demonization bracelet in Lu Ping's hand. Have you met the cultivators of the Spirit Beast sect? Jiang Tianlin Laozu asked solemnly. Lu Ping didn't know why Jiang Tianlin Laozu looked so solemn, but he still shook his head and said, this is what I obtained previously. After Copper Sword and Sanming Laozu heard the conversation between the two, they realized that compared to a spirit-seeking mouse that cultivated to the transformation stage, the power behind the demonization bracelet was more shocking. Jiang Tianlin Laozu knew that the previously that Lu Ping mentioned referred to Yingtian Dojo, so he nodded and said, "The demonization bracelet is magical and ingenious. I think you have more than one. Remember to give one of them to your master when you go back." Although Lu Ping didn't know why Jiang Tianlin Laozu gave such an order, he still agreed. At this time, De Bao had already handed an array disc to Taoist Xianchen. Taoist Xianchen followed the diagram and checked the array that De Bao had previously set up in the spirit mineral vein. After finding that there were no mistakes, he said to Jiang Tianlin Laozu, "Senior brother, you can start." Chapter 657. Lu Ping explained De Bao's identity as his spiritual pet to Tong Jian and Saming Laozu, dispelling the two Laozu's suspicions that Jinling had violated the agreement between the sects in the North Sea. Then he told them about how Jiang Tianlin Laozu deliberately lagged behind when he entered the Yingtian Dojo and almost crashed into the spatial crack. He threw De Bao from his sleeve into the ground the moment he landed in a sorry state, thus hiding it from Laozu. Saming Laozu finally couldn't suppress the doubts in his heart and couldn't help but ask, "Could it be that your sect already knew that there would be a spirit stone vein in the Yingtian Dojo? You're actually so well prepared? Not only that, after entering the dojo, your sect seemed to have a good understanding of the distribution of restrictions in the dojo. It was also under your sect's guidance that my Chong Ming and Jade Sword sects were able to have a far more abundant harvest in the dojo than Ling Gu and Fei Yu sects." Lu Ping shook his head and said with a smile, "We don't have the ability to predict the future, so how could we know the situation in the dojo? We just prepared for a rainy day and made various preparations. As for my spiritual pet, the spirit-seeking mouse, it was precisely because he had the opportunity to advance to the core forging stage that he had more talent in searching for spiritual treasures than ordinary spirit-seeking mice. That's why I played a little trick and begged Marshal Uncle Tianlin to bring him in. I didn't expect him to really discover this mine." Saming Laozu was still skeptical, but at this moment he heard spiritual master Xuanshen's words. Jiang Tianlin Laozu then said, "It would be extremely difficult for me to quickly move this spirit stone vein into the treasure mirror's grotto heaven by myself. I'll have to ask the two seniors to help me. After we return to the North Sea, the Jade Sword sect and Chong Ming sect can take a total of 40% of the spirit stone vein's production." Tong Jian Laozu and Saming Laozu showed a trace of joy on their faces. Tong Jian Laozu said loudly, "All right, then my Jade Sword school will take 20% of the spirit stone vein." Saming Laozu also said in a deep voice, "Then it's a deal between us three sects." Of course, the two sects wouldn't obtain a total of 40% of the spirit stone production just because they helped Jiang Tianlin Laozu relocate the spirit stone mine. Jinling would definitely cause the other sects to object if he took the spirit stone mine. At that time, the two sects would naturally support Jinling for their vested interests. Jiang Tianlin Laozu raised the Yingshu treasure mirror high, and a cyan light shot out from the mirror, shining straight into the mine. Taoist Xianchen activated the array disc in his hand, which was used to guide the earth vein. The array disc also fell into the mine and disappeared. Immediately afterward, there was a burst of shaking in the mine. With a puff, a cyan light suddenly ejected from the ground. Then, as the ground shook more and more violently, like a chain reaction, cyan light pillars ejected from different areas on the ground one after another, spreading everywhere as if there was no pattern. Lu Ping knew that the direction of these cyan light pillars was actually the direction of the spirit stone vein underground. These cyan light pillars were like steel nails, firmly locking the spirit stone vein. Then, with the support of the array arranged underground, the entire spirit stone vein could be completely moved into the Yingshu treasure mirror. Jiang Tianlin Laozu saw that there were no more light pillars coming from the ground, so he shouted to the other two Laozu, "Seniors, now is the time." The three Dharma idol Laozu attacked together, and three incomparably abundant pillars of spirit energy formed above the spirit stone vein. Then the three pillars of spirit energy intertwined with each other, and finally the three of them joined forces to form a giant three-colored hand that seemed to cover the sky. The giant three-colored hand fell, and 5 three-colored fingers inserted into the ground. Then the giant hand clenched tightly and the ground suddenly cracked. The entire spirit stone vein was suddenly separated from the ground. On the ground, Lu Ping and the others looked at the giant hand, which seemed to be completely disrupting the world. The giant hand suddenly lifted up, and a series of roars came from the ground. The ground shook more and more violently, and the entire spirit stone vein slowly rose from the ground. A series of spatial cracks continued to emerge from the ground. Not good. The migration of this spirit stone vein has affected the stability of this space. This kind of forced migration will greatly reduce the existence time of the Yingtian Dojo space. The three bright old ancestors said worriedly as he looked at the grayish spatial fragments that were revealed after the spiritual stone vein gradually rose up. We can't care so much anymore. Even if we put down this spiritual vein now, we won't be able to repair the entire space where the dojo is located. We can only collect this spiritual vein before the space of the Yingtian Dojo completely collapses. Only then will we have gained something. Jiang Tianlin Laozu said coldly, and then the spiritual ether in his hand shone brightly. At this time, the sky-treasured mirror had already expanded to the size of a bright moon, and the green light completely enveloped the entire giant three-colored hand. At this moment, one of the two remaining palaces after the previous six-colored restriction was broken suddenly burst out with a violent explosion. After that, the roar was endless, as if a chaotic battle had broken out in the space of the palace. The entire palace even began to tremble slightly. Obviously, as a spatial artifact, although the space in it was large enough, it seemed to be unable to withstand the battle that broke out in the palace. This also meant that the cultivation of the two parties fighting in the space had reached the Dharma manifestation stage. Looking at the crumbling palace that was about to collapse, Tongjian Laozu let out a strange cry and said, "It's actually the palace that Shuiyan Pavilion, Haiyan sect, and Linggu sect tried to break just now." Obviously, the Laozu of the various sects in the palace finally had an internal conflict. However, Junling had obviously been looking forward to this situation for a long time. Because Jiang Tianlin Laozu was very sure that if the two Dharma manifestation stage cultivators of Shuiyan Pavilion and Haiyan sect joined forces, even if the Dharma manifestation stage cultivator of Linggu sect had the assistance of Zhang Shi, he would definitely not be a match for them. Now that the battle between the two sides had lasted for such a long time, it was obvious that a chaotic battle had broken out inside. In other words, the real internal conflict was probably between Shuiyan Pavilion and Haiyan sect. Lu Ping and the others all showed joy on their faces. Obviously they had already thought of this. The alliance between Shuiyan Pavilion and Haiyan sect had been going on for a long time. The two sects were friendly with each other and had always advanced and retreated together in various matters of the North Sea cultivation world. The cultivators of the two sects also often cooperated with each other and had a tacit understanding when dealing with certain matters. The seamless cooperation between the two sects had always been a headache for Xianling sect and now Junling. Because whether it was Shuiyan Pavilion or Haiyan sect, in terms of individual strength, there was a big gap between them and Xianling sect, Junling sect and Songhai sect. However, once the two sects joined forces apart from Junling, no other sect was a match for them. This showed the power of the two sects' alliance. Now that the Dharma manifestation adepts of the two sects had obviously fallen out because of something and even started fighting, this might be a great opportunity for Junling to break up the alliance between the two sections. As for what kind of treasure could make Laozu of the two sects fall out so mercilessly, Tongjian Laozu and Saming Laozu could not help but look at Jiang Tianlin. Jiang Tianlin Laozu's expression was a little solemn as he said, "I'm afraid it's also a Dharma manifestation soul." At this moment, a long howl suddenly came from another palace. The howl was full of surprise, and the high-pitched howl contained surging spiritual essence dermic powers. Junling and the others could clearly hear that it was Feng Shutao's howl. Jiang Tianlin Laozu's expression changed and he said, "Everyone attack. We must absorb this spirit stone mine into the treasure mirror before the cultivators from the other sects come out of the palaces." Everyone also knew that the situation was urgent. Once the cultivators from the other sects came out of the palaces, the three sects' plan to monopolize the spirit stone mine would definitely not be realized. This time Lu Ping took the lead. The bluish-purple spiritual essence turned into a strange four-legged dragon that rushed into the spirit chi pillar that formed the three-colored giant hand. A thin bluish-purple spiritual essence line was faintly discernible in the three-colored spirit chi pillar. It was unexpectedly not assimilated by the spiritual essence of the three Dharma manifestation stage cultivators. Immediately after Lu Ping, the other 5 late core forging stage cultivators also made their moves. They transformed their spiritual essence into different kinds of magic power and integrated it into the three-colored spirit chi pillar to increase the power of the giant hand as much as possible. However, whether it was perfected Master Xian Sen who was about to condense his golden core, or the late core forging stage cultivators of the other two sects, after their spiritual essence entered the spirit chi pillar in the form of magic power, without exception, their spiritual essence was assimilated into the three-colored spirit chi pillar. Only Lu Ping's bluish-purple spiritual essence line remained firm at the edge of the three-colored spirit chi pillar. Since it was not assimilated by the spiritual essence of the three Laozu, what did this mean? It meant that the quality of the spiritual essence that Lu Ping had cultivated during the core forging stage was extremely high. It meant that the quality of the spiritual essence in Lu Ping's body was not inferior to that of a Dharma manifestation stage cultivator. The spiritual essence of a late core forging stage cultivator might be insignificant, but when the spiritual essence of 6 late core forging stage cultivators were added together, and these 6 late core forging stage cultivators were the elites of their respective sects, their power was not inferior to that of a Dharma manifestation stage cultivator. The spiritual essence that was held by the giant hand was slowly being absorbed into the Yingshu cave by the Yingshu treasure mirror. At this moment, the Shuiyan Pavilion, the Haiyan sect and the Linggu sect's palaces were finally unable to withstand the endless roars, and the space inside suddenly collapsed. A ball of white light shot up into the sky, followed closely by the 3 Dharma adepts. As they flew towards the ball of white light, they continued to exchange blows. Numerous spells crisscrossed each other, and the spiritual chi that emanated from them caused cracks to appear in the entire space of the hall. Jiang Tianlin Laozu patted his chest. Immediately, a small wooden bird swelled up in the wind, swooped down with its sharp claws, grabbed the half of the earth vein exposed outside the mirror, and loosened its grip on the mirror. An earth-shattering boom rang out from the mirror. The entire mirror trembled in midair before falling to the ground unsteadily. At this moment, an exasperated roar came from another palace. Jiang Tianlin, how dare you! Donghua Laozu flew out of the palace with a menacing aura, and a streak of purple-golden light shot out from his body at an even faster speed, flying toward Jiang Tianlin Laozu, who appeared to be in an extremely feeble state after activating his avatar with all his might to draw the spirit stone mine into the boundless void cave. Chapter 658. Just as the purplish gold light was about to strike Jiang Tianlin Laozu's body, Copper Sword Laozu and Sanming Laozu suddenly burst forward, and a copper sword and 3 balls of light shot out from the hands of the 2 Laozu. Amidst a loud explosion, the purplish gold light was blocked by the joint efforts of the 2 Laozus, but Donghua Laozu was a peak early Dharma adept after all, and although this furious attack was blocked by Copper Sword Laozu and Sanming Laozu, the 2 of them still involuntarily took a few steps back. After this attack, Donghua Laozu's forward momentum was also stopped. However, in the instant that Donghua Laozu was stopped, the Yingshu jeweled mirror, which had been trembling continuously after swallowing the spirit stone mine, suddenly stopped trembling. The smooth surface of the mirror suddenly shone towards Donghua Laozu, and a green light shot towards Donghua Laozu. Donghua Laozu instinctively felt that this light was dangerous, but Jiang Tianlin Laozu's timing was too ingenious. At this moment, Donghua Laozu's body was blocked, and it was difficult for him to move. Donghua Laozu activated the inner yuan in his body and forced his body to move a foot to the left, and the inner yuan in his body suddenly surged like a raging sea, causing Donghua Laozu's face to instantly turn red. Even so, Donghua Laozu was still unable to completely avoid the green light from the Yingshu jeweled mirror, and the right half of his body was covered by the green light from the shoulder down. Donghua Laozu felt the right half of his body go numb, and the inner yuan in the blood vessels on that half of his body seemed to be frozen, and his entire body looked like it was paralyzed. Right at this moment, Jiang Tianlin Laozu, whose face was pale due to the depletion of his quintessential essence, suddenly opened his eyes, and his right palm abruptly slapped in the direction of Donghua Laozu. The void suddenly seemed to be compressed, and it was directly transmitted from Jiang Tianlin Laozu to Donghua Laozu. Donghua Laozu wanted to evade, but he was unable to completely control the right half of his body, even as he struggled to break free from the true essence in his body. At least a third of the true essence in his body had been frozen within the meridians of the right half of his body. Just as Donghua Laozu was about to be struck by Jiang Tianlin Laozu's palm, a purplish-black color suddenly flashed across Donghua Laozu's face, and a mouthful of blood was coughed up by Donghua Laozu, and the right half of his body that had been sealed immediately regained its freedom. In the face of the giant palm in the air, how could Donghua Laozu dare to take it head-on? He immediately turned around to evade, but Donghua Laozu had just turned around when his expression changed again, and he had no choice but to forcibly twist his body once more. His internal organs that were already injured became even worse. A dark blue sword image flashed past the direction the Donghua ancestor was about to dodge. Even though the Donghua ancestor had already noticed it beforehand, he was still unable to completely dodge this dark blue sword image that flashed and vanished in the end. The clothes on his left upper arm were sliced open by a 3-inch wide wound, and a wound that was so deep that bones could be seen suddenly split open on the surface of his skin, causing fresh blood to gush out and instantly drench his sleeve. Donghua Laozu retreated far away, and he wiped his left arm with his right hand, instantly stopping the bleeding from his wound. Only then did he turn his head to look at Lu Ping, who was standing beside Jiang Tianlin Laozu. Jiang Tianlin Laozu poured out a crimson pill from a jade essence bottle that Lu Ping had handed to him, and he swallowed it. His originally pale face instantly regained some color. Donghua Laozu glanced at Lu Ping, then looked at the abundant void treasured mirror that was hovering above Jiang Tianlin Laozu's head. At this moment, the mirror had already regained its original simplicity, and it was clear that the spirit stone mine had been completely moved into the abundant void treasured mirror. Donghua Laozu asked coldly, "Is this the abundant void treasured mirror that Changhe Laozu of the Abundant River sect claimed to have lost last night?" Jiang Tianlin Laozu quickly regained the vital energy in his body with the help of the Dharma manifestation stage pill that Lu Ping had refined, and he smiled as he replied, "That's right, it is indeed the abundant void treasured mirror, but it wasn't stolen from the Abundant River sect. Instead, this mirror was originally a mystic realm that I was lucky enough to discover." Donghua Laozu nodded, then turned to look at Lu Ping again as he said coldly, "The shapeless sword technique. Who would have thought that your esteemed sect had even obtained the complete inheritance of the Fei Ling sect's great divine sword technique?" Tong Jian Laozu and Sanming Laozu both looked at Lu Ping in shock. This sword technique had been a rather famous one in the Fei Ling sect, but after the Fei Ling sect had been destroyed, many of its inheritances had been lost, and this sword technique had not been passed down for thousands of years. Who would have thought that Jinling would be the one to obtain it? A loud rumble came from behind Donghua Laozu, and the palace that Donghua Laozu had been in suddenly rose into the air. It then shrank rapidly before landing in the hands of Feng Shutao, who had just flown out of the palace. A hint of unwillingness flashed across Donghua Laozu's eyes, but he soon narrowed his eyes and suddenly said in a loud voice, "Martial nephew Feng Shutao, Jinling intends to monopolize a mid-sized spirit stone mine. What do you think?" "What?" Feng Shutao, who was in midair, suddenly flashed, and when he reappeared he was already standing next to Donghua Laozu. A ferocious aura immediately swept towards Jinling. Tong Jian Laozu and Sanming Laozu's expressions changed drastically, and they exclaimed in shock, "The peak of the early Dharma stage. How is this possible?" Jiang Tianlin Laozu did not know what kind of miracle medicine Lu Ping had given him, but in just a short period of time, the inner yuan in his body had already recovered by 70%, and it was still recovering at a steady rate. Jiang Tianlin Laozu glanced at Feng Shutao and said coldly, "You've completely integrated the essence of that Dharma power spirit into your own inner yuan. Even so, your level of training has greatly increased, but how much of it will still help you break through to the late Dharma stage and become a great adept in the future?" Feng Shutao's expression changed, and then he laughed coldly and said, "At least there is no longer any obstacle for me to break through to the mid-Dharma stage. At least my abilities have greatly improved, and at least there is no one in the Yingtian temple who is a match for me now. As for becoming a great adept, who knows what will happen in a few hundred years?" Jiang Tianlin Laozu laughed coldly and did not say anything. Donghua Laozu, who was beside him, hesitated for a moment before he composed himself and said to Feng Shutao in a low voice, "Martial nephew Feng, that Jiang Tianlin is the one who snatched the Yingshu treasured mirror from Laozu of the Yinghe triad last night." Feng Shutao's expression changed, and an aura of anger and despair suddenly surged from the bottom of his heart. He had inherited the Dharma power spirit in the space and used the fastest method to increase his level of training, all so that he could defeat Jiang Tianlin in one fell swoop. However, he did not expect that even though he had inherited the Dharma power spirit and his level of training had greatly improved, he would suddenly realize that Jiang Tianlin's abilities were already beyond his imagination. Moreover, Jiang Tianlin had also inherited the Dharma power spirit. However, unlike Feng Shutao, who was eager for quick success, Jiang Tianlin had chosen the most reliable method of inheritance. Although it would not be of much help to his level of training right now, it would be very beneficial for him in the future. 3 early Dharma Laozu, one of whom was at the peak of the early Dharma stage, had been suppressed by Jiang Tianlin in one fell swoop. Jiang Tianlin had even injured the strongest of them, Changhe Laozu, and then left with ease. Even if Feng Shutao were to push his level of training to the peak of the early Dharma stage, he would not be able to achieve such a level of ability. How could this not infuriate him? Ever since Feng Shutao had entered the Dharma stage, It seemed as if fate had played a joke on him. Originally he had been very ambitious, but he was first defeated by Jiang Tianlin, who was as famous as him after entering the Dharma stage. Then he was defeated again by Lu Tianling, who had been weaker than him before entering the Dharma stage. As for Mei Tianqin, who had always been at odds with Lu Tianling and Jinling, after returning to Jinling she first fought with Lu Tianling, and it seemed like they were evenly matched. After that, she was separated by the other Dharma adepts in Jinling. However, when the indignant Mei Tianqin heard about what had happened to Feng Shutao, she was instantly overjoyed. She immediately went up to Feng Shutao and fought him again. Unfortunately, Feng Shutao was burned by Mei Tianqin's seven-colored spirit fire and had no choice but to escape. In an instant, Feng Shutao became the laughing-stock of the Dharma adepts in the North Sea training world. The famous North Sea twins of the past had actually fallen to such a state after entering the Dharma stage. Actually, Feng Shutao was not weak. Although he had only entered the Dharma stage for a short period of time, in Xianling sect, other than a few mid-Dharma adepts, none of the early Dharma adepts were a match for him. Even among the early Dharma adepts of other sects, Feng Shutao's strength was rarely a match for him. Otherwise, Xianling sect would not have allowed him to infiltrate the Central Plains and join forces with the other sects to open the Yingtian dojo. Unfortunately, the rising Jinling was clearly more fortunate than him. The three most outstanding adepts among the second generation of Jinling disciples were all extremely talented and had surpassed Feng Shutao in terms of strength. However, the three of them had chosen Feng Shutao to be their touchstone after entering the Dharma stage in a fit of pique. Hence, Feng Shutao's tragic fate was sealed. Feng Shutao wholeheartedly wanted to wash away the humiliation he had suffered from the 3 times he had lost. After inheriting the Dharma soul, how could Feng Shutao not know that Jiang Tianlin's method was the safest and most beneficial method of inheriting the Dharma soul? However, he could not wait and he did not want to wait any longer. Hence, he gave up on the method of inheriting the Dharma soul that might have helped him advance to the late Dharma stage in the future. Instead, he chose the most direct and violent method of inheriting the Dharma soul, but it was also the fastest way to increase his strength in a short period of time. In the depths of his heart, he wanted to compete with Jiang Tianlin, even if it was only a temporary victory. Donghua Laozu saw that Feng Shutao had not spoken for a long time, so he said sternly, "Jiang Tianlin, that mid-sized spirit stone vein is in the Yingtian dojo, so it should belong to the sects of the North Sea. You Jinling are taking it all for yourself. Don't you think you're being too greedy?" "That's right." A muffled sound rang out, and another burly late-core forging cultivator from the Shanghai sect who had been following behind Donghua Laozu all this while said in a low, muffled voice, "I was the one who first discovered this spirit stone vein, so if we're talking about who should own it, it should belong to the Shanghai sect." Donghua Laozu's expression changed and he was just about to turn around and scold him when Jiang Tianlin laughed coldly and said, "What a joke. Since the Shanghai sect was the one who first discovered this spirit stone vein, why didn't you tell the other sects about it just now? I'm guessing that you've already decided to take it all for yourself. Now that our 3 sects have gotten here first, you're trying to say that all sects should own it. How can it be that easy? Mr. Donghua, you're a senior cultivator of the North Sea world after all. Don't you think you're being too shameless by doing this?" Chapter 659. The Saming Laozu and the Tongjian Laozu sects had a total of 40% of this spirit stone mine. If the North Sea sects divided this spirit stone mine, the Yujian and Chongming sects would definitely not be able to get such a share. Hence, the two of them looked at each other and said in unison, "That's right. Since this spirit stone mine has already been taken by Jinling, it belongs to Jinling. If the Shanghai sect was the first to discover it, why didn't you move it? How could the Azure Sea sect be relocated?" Old ancestor Donghua cursed loudly in his heart. How precious were abode magic treasures. The number of abode magic treasures possessed by each sect in the Northern Sea could be counted on one's fingers, and they were all used as places of inheritance. They couldn't be used easily, so how could they possibly allow cultivators to easily carry them around? Feng Shutao did not care about this. Now that his strength had improved greatly, all he wanted was to make things difficult for Jinling. Or rather, he wanted to use every possible way to get back at Jiang Tianlin for the humiliation he had suffered. Feng Shutao said coldly, "I don't care what the Shanghai sect was thinking at the time, but now that the spirit stone mine is in your hands, Jiang Tianlin, it is impossible for you to take it for yourself. I think the North Sea sects will not let you, Jinling, have a second mid-sized spirit stone mine for yourself." Jiang Tianlin laughed coldly. You, Feng Shutao, are trying to represent the North Sea sects? At least the Yujin sect and Chongming sect are not under your command. As for the others? Jiang Tianlin Laozu looked at the three Laozu from the Mistwater Pavilion, Haiyan sect and Linggu sect who were fighting in the distance and said mockingly, I don't know what you, Feng Shutao, can do to stop the fight there. At this time, the space in the third palace had been completely destroyed by the battle between the three Laozu. Not only did the Mistwater Pavilion and Haiyan sect, the two traditional allies, turn against each other, but even the Dharma adepts of the Linggu sect were also trying to get a share of the spoils. Just as Feng Shutao and the others were reminded by Jiang Tianlin to look at the three people fighting, Donghua Laozu suddenly shouted, "Oh no!" He had already turned into a stream of light and rushed toward the battle. When everyone looked over again, they saw that perhaps because the three of them were fighting over the aspect soul and none of them were willing to let the other obtain it, the aspect soul finally lost control of itself under the impact of the battle between the three of them. In an instant, it broke away from the battle and flew in another direction. Donghua Laozu and Saming Laozu were also fighting over the Dharma. Laozu and the Laozu. Saming Laozu and Saming Laozu. Laozu and the Laozu sect thought. Laozu and Saming Lao and Saming Laozu and Ming and Tianlin, and Laozu Tian finally lost. Laozu, Tongjian Laozu and Saming Laozu were also very tempted to fight over the Dharma soul. However, Jiang Tianlin said, these three people are fighting over the Dharma soul, but they didn't expect it to be taken away by someone else. Tongjian Laozu and Saming Laozu were stunned. When they looked up, Zhang Shi had suddenly appeared in front of the Dharma soul. The Dharma soul crashed into Zhang Shi's chest and disappeared. Brat, how dare you! Among the three Laozu, the Mistwater Pavilion and the Haiyan sect's Laozu saw that the Dharma soul in their hands had flown away. They were furious and raised their hands to attack Zhang Shi. Although the Linggu sect's Laozu was also very displeased with Zhang Shi's method of taking advantage of the situation, his expression changed several times. In the end, he didn't attack Zhang Shi, but he also didn't help Zhang Shi because he was his ally. The moment the Dharma soul appeared, Zhang Shi stood still like a puppet with a broken string. He watched as the attacks of the two Laozu hit him, and Zhang Shi was about to turn into nothingness. At this moment, Donghua Laozu suddenly appeared in front of Zhang Shi. He pushed his hands forward and two flying shuttles flew out from Donghua Laozu's palms. They suddenly turned into two ferocious wolves in midair, and they bit at the two Laozu's attacks. Boom boom. Two loud sounds rang out in succession. The two wolves collapsed and the two flying shuttles flew back. However, the attacks of the Mistwater Pavilion and the Haiyan sect's Laozu was also blocked by Donghua Laozu alone. Zhang Shi stood motionlessly behind Donghua Laozu. However, the aura around him became stronger and stronger, and the fluctuations of his aura became more and more obvious. He's going to break through to the Dharma manifestation stage. Feng Shutao followed closely behind. When he saw Zhang Shi's current situation, his expression changed and he shouted loudly. Zhang Shi's cultivation level had already reached the peak of the core forging stage. Originally, with his cultivation level, the Azure Sea sect would definitely let him go into seclusion and peace, just like Liang Shenfeng, Chu Xuanqing, Spiritual Master Xuanzu, and the others in Jinling, and they would definitely not let him take the risk in Yingtian Dojo. However, Zhang Shi had strongly requested to go to Yingtian Dojo, and the Azure Sea sect's Laozu Dojo had no choice but to let him come. Zhang Shi's status in the Azure Sea sect was special. It was even higher than Jiang Tianlin Laozu's status in Jinling before he had broken through to the Dharma stage. After all, when Jiang Tianlin Laozu Dojo was at the peak of the core forging stage, he was only the head of the 3 truths and 4 spirits. At least there were 6 other cultivators in Jinling, which made Jinling look more like a gathering of heroes. Zhang Shi, on the other hand, was at the top of the Zhonghai sect. Among the second-generation disciples of the Zhonghai sect, Zhang Shi felt lonely at the top. This was also why when Zhang Shi proposed to come to the Yingtian Dojo, not only did no one from the second generation compete with him, even the Dharma adepts of the Zhonghai sect could only let him be. Zhang Shi's level of cultivation was already one step away from breaking through to the Dharma stage. After he obtained the Dharma Power Soul, the huge and pure inner yuan contained within it was quickly refined by Zhang Shi. Just as Donghua Laozu was trying to stop the 2 Dharma adepts, Zhang Shi had refined a small portion of the pure inner yuan, allowing Zhang Shi's level of cultivation to begin the final push towards the Dharma stage. Feng Shutao had originally wanted to take advantage of the situation, but he did not expect to run into this situation. Zhang Shi was strong and powerful. Among the late core forging adepts, he was one of the few who could catch up to him and Jiang Tianlin. Now that the Songhai sect was about to gain another Dharma adept, he thought about how Jinling sect had been suppressing Xianling sect all these years, and how the merged Songhai sect had also begun to challenge Xianling sect's position in the North Sea. How could Feng Shutao allow the Songhai sect to gain another Dharma adept to narrow the gap between the two sects? Feng Shutao shouted angrily. As he reminded the two Laozu of the Shuiyan Pavilion and the Haiyan sect, he had already thrown a treasure in his hand at Zhang Shi, who was behind Dongguo Laozu. Obviously, he wanted to interrupt Zhang Shi's advancement process. Despicable Feng Shutao, the old man will never forgive you. Dongguo Laozu shouted angrily. He hurriedly sent out a wave of qi to deflect Feng Shutao's treasure. At the same time, a pair of flying shuttles once again blocked the attacks of the two Laozu from the Shuiyan Pavilion and the Haiyan sect. After all, Dongguo Laozu did not have the strength that Jiang Tianlin Laozu could fight against three people at once. Even though he was also at the peak of the early Dharma stage, he was still overwhelmed by the attacks of the three. Brother Ling Yun, please help the old man. Dongguo Laozu had no choice but to plead with the Linggu sect's Laozu. The Linggu sect had just left Xianling sect's camp and joined the newly risen Songhai sect. Although Zhang Shi's previous actions had infuriated Ling Yun Laozu, the two sects were still allies. Moreover, the Linggu sect had already left Xianling sect's camp once. If they were to fall out with the Songhai sect again, then the Linggu sect would no longer have a place to stand in the North Sea training world. No sect would be willing to accept an ally that constantly changed sides. Ling Yun Laozu sighed to himself as he used the spirit-nurturing treasure in his hands to block the Dharma adepts from the Feiyu sect who were rushing over to help Feng Shutao. At the same time, a muffled groan came from behind Ling Yun Laozu. Dongguo Laozu was finally unable to contain the injuries in his body under the attacks of the three Dharma adepts, and he spat out a mouthful of blood. Originally, with Dongguo Laozu's abilities, even if he was surrounded by three people, he should not have been defeated so quickly. However, Zhang Shi was standing there like a target, not moving at all. Dongguo Laozu had no choice but to bite the bullet and continue to fight the three people head-on so that the hope of his sect's rise to power would not be destroyed just like that. At this time, Jinling and the others had become the ones watching the show. Although Dongguo Laozu was fighting left and right, he still kept a part of his attention on Jinling and the other two sects in the distance. Dongguo Laozu knew that before Zhang Shi woke up, Jinling was already the key to the Songhai sect's success in this trip to the Yingtian dojo, even if this hope was extremely slim. Feng Shutao struck out with his palm and once again caused Dongguo Laozu to spit out a mouthful of blood. However, Dongguo Laozu still stood in front of Zhang Shi to protect him. Feng Shutao shouted angrily, "Dongguo, do you really want to die?" Dongguo Laozu spat out a mouthful of blood and spat at Feng Shutao. He said viciously, "At most, we will perish together." The old man does not believe that after the old man self-destructs his core space, the Yingtian dojo will still be able to exist in this crack in space. Dongguo Laozu's face was filled with viciousness, and this caused the expressions of Feng Shutao and the others to change. Their attacks became less vicious, and it was obvious that they had been restrained by Dongguo Laozu's desperation. If a Dharma adept self-destructed his core space, there was no guarantee that the dozens of late core forging adepts in the dojo would be able to survive. Even if the space around the dojo was destroyed, it was hard to say how many of the Dharma adepts would be able to survive the turbulence in space. Just as everyone was hesitating to attack Zhang Shi, the previously unstable aura around Zhang Shi suddenly changed, and a deep and vigorous life force radiated from his body. The expressions of Feng Shutao, the three Dharma adepts from the Shuiyan Pavilion, and the Haiyan sect all changed, and the three of them actually launched their final attack in Zhang Shi's direction at the same time. Dongguo Laozu's expression changed drastically. He would not be able to block this attack. Chapter 660. A leaf seemed to drift along with the wind. Right when the Dongguo forefather was feeling despair, this leaf suddenly seemed to have been lifted up by the aftershocks of the battle between the four of them, and it blocked Feng Shutao's path of attack. Jiang Tianlin, what is the meaning of this? Feng Shutao's expression turned cold when he saw this leaf. He was very familiar with this leaf. It was one of the personal treasures of his nemesis, Jiang Tianlin. The leaf fluttered and undulated in Feng Shidao's god art as if it was extremely weak. Even so, the leaf still dissolved most of the power of Feng Shidao's god art as it fluttered. With Jiang Tianlin's strength, it was naturally impossible for him to only block half of the power of Feng Shutao's spell. Jiang Tianlin's plan was to not kill Donghua, but to not let him have it easy either. Jiang Tianlin's plan naturally did not escape the eyes of all the Dharma adepts present. However, they could not say much about it. At most, they would just say that Jiang Tianlin had attacked in a hurry and could not use his full strength. On the contrary, Jiang Tianlin had attacked in the end. Donghua Laozu still owed Jiang Tianlin a huge favor for this. Brother Feng, you have to take a closer look. I'm sure you're more familiar with the might of the seven-colored restriction in the Central Palace than I am. Do you think that if Mr. Donghua and fellow Taoist Jiang were to perish, with our strength, what do you think our chances of breaking the restriction are? Jiang Tianlin's words were directed at Feng Shutao, but they were also directed at the Dharma adepts of the Shuiyan Pavilion and the Haiyan sect. Indeed, after hearing Jiang Tianlin's words, the attacks of the other two Laozu weakened. At this moment, a clear cracking sound suddenly came from Zhang Shi's body. He had broken his core and formed his Dharma. A surge of spiritual qi surged from all over Zhang Shi's body, especially from his chest. The spiritual qi gathered above his head and gradually formed a half-sized elephant with a long trunk. The elephant raised its trunk and gave a loud roar. The cold wind swept in all directions, and a faint pressure grew from nothing, from weak to strong. This was the blood pressure that only a Dharma adept could possess. Before Donghua Laozu could rejoice, the attacks of the Ocean Flame sect, Water Mist Pavilion, and Feng Shutao had already arrived before Donghua Laozu. Zhang Shi suddenly opened his eyes. The Dharma idol that had just materialized above his head lifted its two front legs and stomped on Feng Shidao's attack. A strange vibration came from the feet of the Dharma idol, as if waves of space waves were stirred up, dissolving Feng Shidao's attack. Feng Shutao's expression changed and he snorted heavily. In the end, he did not attack again. This was because he could tell that although Zhang Shi had just become a Dharma adept and was not at a stable level with the help of the Dharma Power Soul, his level of training was not as simple as someone who had just broken through to the early Dharma stage. Furthermore, what Jiang Tianlin had said earlier was the truth. For the sake of the Central Palace, Feng Shutao had no choice but to temporarily give up on suppressing Donghua Laozu. Furthermore, even though Feng Shutao's attack had been dispelled by Jiang Tianlin and Zhang Shi, the combined attacks of the Water Mist Pavilion and the Ocean Flame sect's Laozu still inflicted more injuries on Donghua Laozu. When Donghua Laozu's two flying treasures were attacked by the two, one of the flying treasures was broken into two. The destruction of his natal treasures caused Donghua Laozu's mental state to be severely injured. Blood flowed from his mouth as he glared viciously at the two Laozu from the Water Mist Pavilion and the Ocean Flame sect. The destruction of his natal treasures had caused Donghua Laozu's strength to be greatly reduced. However, more importantly, Donghua Laozu had initiated the tribulation of the early Dharma stage, and his dream of advancing to the mid-Dharma stage would probably be pushed back by several decades. Destroying one's foundation was tantamount to killing one's parents. However, Donghua Laozu forcefully swallowed his anger. The situation before him was very clear. Although he had been severely injured, he still had the strength of a Dharma stage cultivator. At this moment, Zhang Shi had temporarily advanced to the Dharma stage, and coupled with the Linggu sect's Ling Yun Laozu, there was no one else in this dojo who had the strength to win against them other than Jinling. Furthermore, the cultivators of the various sects would definitely not fight amongst themselves for the sake of the Central Palace. Jiang Tianlin was the first to laugh and say, "Everyone, this is not the time for us to fight amongst ourselves. The largest and most important Central Palace in this Yingtian dojo has yet to be opened. If we were to fight here, then we would have entered a treasure trove and come out with some useless treasures. Although they might be of some value, in reality it would not be worth it." At this moment, in the Yingtian dojo, regardless of the power of the sects behind them or the strength of the cultivators present, Jiang Tianlin was undoubtedly the best person to unite the forces of the various sects and open the Central Palace. At this moment, Jiang Tianlin seemed to be unwilling to pass on this responsibility. Although Jiang Tianlin and Laozu's few words were unable to resolve the tense situation, the cultivators of the various sects did not continue to provoke them. Instead, most of them began to listen attentively to Jiang Tianlin's words. This result was rather satisfactory to Jiang Tianlin. He continued to say, "Just now, I have already asked my sect's formation grandmaster, junior sister Xian Qin, and found out that the light screen of this Central Palace is not only the key to protecting the entire Yingtian dojo, but there is also a large spirit vein beneath this Central Palace that is used to support the operation of the formations and restrictions of the entire dojo. This also means that the light screen formed by the 749 colored restrictions has already greatly exceeded the original level of protection. As Jiang Tianlin said this, he paused for a moment. Indeed, he saw that the various sects Laozu had begun to ask their own formation grandmasters or formation masters. After receiving the same opinion as perfected Xianxin, the expressions on the faces of all the Laozus turned serious. It was obvious that they also agreed with what Jiang Tianlin and Laozu had just said. Ancestor Jiang Tianlin smiled and said, "Therefore, if everyone does not join forces now, I think this trip to the Yingtian dojo will end here. However, don't forget that although we have set up a large concealment formation outside the Yingtian dojo, we have to break through the restrictions along the way. With 9 Dharma adepts and more than 10 late core forging adepts working together, the formation outside the dojo will not be able to conceal us. If we leave now, the cultivators from the other central sects will definitely gather here after hearing the news. At that time there will be nothing left for us to do." Feng Shutao snorted coldly and said, "Jiang Tianlin, you don't have to provoke us. We can all see this clearly. However, the crux of the problem is that this last palace was attacked by the 9 sects together. Once we break through the light screen, how are the treasures inside going to be divided?" Although Dongwu Laozu had destroyed one of his natal treasures, he still had the abilities of a Dharma adept. When he heard this, he smiled coldly at Feng Shutao and said, "Do you even need to ask? Of course we will rely on our own abilities and our own opportunities." Although the Songhai sect had almost become the target of public criticism just now, after Zhang Shi had advanced to the Dharma stage, the Songhai sect suddenly had 2 Dharma adepts, causing their strength to surpass that of the other 7 sections. If it wasn't for the fact that Jiang Tianlin had fought 1 against 3 and severely injured Patriarch Long River last night, causing the Dongwu Patriarch to be fearful, the Dongwu Patriarch might have even challenged the Zhenling sect's authority in the dojo. As soon as Dongwu Laozu's words left his mouth, he was met with opposition from the various sects, especially from the various sects who had participated in the attack on the Songhai sect. The crowd was in an uproar, but in the end they still had no idea what to do. Jiang Tianlin stood in the center and smiled slightly. He watched as the various sects insisted on their own opinions and fought for the benefits of their respective sections. Dongwu Laozu's face was dark. Now, the various sects were obviously very wary of the Songhai sect suddenly having 2 Dharma adepts. From their words, it seemed like they wanted to impose restrictions on the Songhai sect. This made Dongwu Laozu very angry, but there was nothing he could do. He inadvertently saw that Jiang Tianlin seemed to have a card up his sleeve as he stood at the side, and his heart jolted slightly. No matter how Jiang Tianlin had weakened Feng Shutao's attack just now, the old ancestor Dongwu owed Jiang Tianlin a favor. Even though the old ancestor Dongwu felt that Jiang Tianlin had an ulterior motive in helping him, the old ancestor Dongwu had to repay this favor. "Does martial nephew Jiang have any other opinions?" Dongwu Laozu asked loudly, causing the cultivators of the various sects to fall silent. Jiang Tianlin smiled faintly as if he had already expected this. He chuckled lightly and said, "I can't say that I have any opinions, but I do have some opinions. If there's anything wrong with what I say, I hope that the various elders and friends here can correct me." Dongwu Laozu had just swallowed the spirit pill passed down by the Songhai sect, and his complexion was much better than before. It could be seen that the various sects valued the rewards from this trip to the Yingtian dojo very much. Many spirit pills and medicines had already been prepared in advance. This was also the most important reason why the various sects were able to calm down even when the battle was about to break out. After paying such a heavy price, this trip to the Yingtian dojo definitely could not end on a strong note. Dongwu Laozu smiled and said, "Martial nephew Jiang, feel free to speak your mind." The various sects Laozu cursed inwardly. Since when did your Songhai sect become so close to Zhenling? However, the 2 of them were echoing each other, and it was indeed enough to make the various sects Laozu wary. None of them dared to interrupt them. Jiang Tianlin Laozu pondered for a moment before saying solemnly, "This central palace is a grotto heaven artifact. I believe that everyone has already noticed the clues." The various sects Laozu all nodded. Jiang Tianlin Laozu then continued, "In that case, after the restriction is broken, there should be a portion of the treasures in the palace that will rush out due to the sudden opening of the grotto heaven. In my opinion, this portion of the treasures can be sealed first, and then the order of selection will be determined based on the contribution each sect made during the process of breaking the restriction. What do you all think?" The various sects Laozu were a little confused. At this moment, Zhang Shi suddenly asked, "Brother Jiang, can you explain further?" For example, how will Brother Jiang determine the contribution each sect made during the process of breaking the restriction? Zhang Shi's words were exactly what the various sects Laozu were thinking. For a moment, everyone fell silent again as they waited for Jiang Tianlin's explanation. That's easy. I believe that all of you still have some trump cards up your sleeves, so there's no need to hide them anymore. Out of the 49 colored restrictions, the sect that destroyed the most will have the right to choose first. What do you all think? At the end of the day it still depends on the strength of each sect. The more powerful the sect, the more restrictions they will destroy. Feng Shutao's expression was very unhappy. He knew that this way, even if his strength had increased greatly, he might not be able to compete with the Songhai sect and Jiang Tianlin, who had 2 Dharma adepts. Furthermore, the combined strength of Jinling's 4 late core forging adepts could not be underestimated. It is to use strength to overcome order. Do you have a better idea, Brother Feng? Jiang Tianlin asked. Chapter 661. Jiang Tianlin's question made Feng Shuzhao speechless. The cultivation world still believed in strength. Whether the change in the Songhai sect was intentional or not, the fact that there were 2 Dharma adepts in the Songhai sect forced the sects to accept this result. Moreover, the fact that there were 2 Laozu adepts in the Songhai sect was the most affected. Jinling, who was originally the strongest, was the one who suffered the most. Now that Jiang Tianlin didn't say anything, what else could the others say? After the other restriction areas were destroyed, not only did the 7-colored restriction light curtain not weaken, it became even more tenacious. It seemed that after the other restriction areas were destroyed, whether it was the power of the Yingtian Dojo's formation or the large spirit vein in the central palace, all of them could concentrate all their power on the 49 restrictions, causing the surface of the light curtain formed by the 7-colored restriction to radiate with spiritual light that soared into the sky. In the face of such a powerful restriction, the only 3 formation grandmasters and 2 formation grandmasters could only work together to set up a formation that could weaken the restriction. At this moment, perfected Master Qian Daofeng of the Xianling sect suddenly said, "Since it's based on contribution, what should we do for those who practice formations?" Although Qian Daofeng was only in the late core forging stage, he was a first-generation disciple of the Xianling sect. His seniority was higher than Jiang Tianlin, Feng Shuzhao, and the others. His status as a formation master also meant that his status was not lower than that of a normal Dharma adept. Jiang Tianlin Laozu smiled and said, "The contribution of a formation master is half that of a formation master. What do you think, Senior Daofeng?" Although Qian Daofeng was a little dissatisfied and thought that the contribution of a formation master should be higher, he remembered that perfected Master Xianxian was a formation master himself. He couldn't say anything about Jiang Tianlin's decision. Only Donghua Laozu and Zhang Shi were a little displeased. The Songhai sect didn't have any outstanding talents in the field of formations. However, even though the 2 of them felt extremely uncomfortable in their hearts, there was nothing they could do. They could only blame the Azure Sea sect's imperfect inheritance. A sect that ranked in the top 3 in the cultivation world of the North Sea actually didn't even have a single formation grandmaster. Who else could they blame? Ever since Lu Ping had become a grandmaster alchemist, his alchemy skills had improved tremendously. Previously he had used the spirit demon peach to refine a half-step Dharma elixir, and now he had successfully upgraded it to a Dharma elixir that could restore his inner yuan. Jiang Tianlin and Laozu had originally used up a large amount of inner yuan to relocate the mid-sized spirit mine, but with the powerful effects of the tracing spirit elixir that Lu Ping had given him, his strength had now mostly recovered. This was also the main reason why Jiang Tianlin was still able to maintain his composure and control the situation despite the appearance of 2 Dharma adepts in the Blue Sea sect. Naturally, Donghua Laozu and Zhang Shi had already noticed Jiang Tianlin's calm demeanor. Although the 2 of them didn't know what Jiang Tianlin was relying on, they had already made up their minds to firmly control the first round of the selection of treasures. Although Zhang Shi had broken through to the Dharma stage with the help of the Dharma Power Soul, and his strength and level of training far surpassed those adepts who had just broken through to the early Dharma stage, he knew that his stage was still not stable yet. Although he now had the strength of a Dharma adept, if he were to engage in prolonged battles with others, it would definitely affect the stability of his Dharma stage. Every time a core forging adept achieved a breakthrough to a stage, it would take at least 2 to 3 years of seclusion to stabilize it. As for Dharma adepts, after breaking through to the Dharma stage, they would usually need to go into seclusion for an even longer period of time, unless they had some miraculous elixir that could stabilize the stage that they had just broken through to and shorten the time taken to stabilize it. Lu Ping watched as Zhang Shi swallowed a different type of elixir for the third time. Previously, after Zhang Shi had repelled Feng Shutao's attack, he couldn't care less about helping Donghua Laozu again. Instead, he had hurriedly swallowed a type of elixir. After that, when Jiang Tianlin and Laozu had gathered the strength of the various sects and were preparing to work together to break through the restrictions of the central palace, Zhang Shi had swallowed another type of elixir. This was the third time and it was the same type of elixir. However, as an alchemy grandmaster, Lu Ping could clearly see that these three elixirs were all used to stabilize the stage of the Dharma stage. Elixirs that could stabilize the stage of the Dharma stage were extremely rare, and Jinling only had two types of elixir formulas that could be used to stabilize the stage of the Dharma stage. However, Zhang Shi had three types of elixirs that could be used to stabilize the stage of the Dharma stage. This piqued Lu Ping's interest. Not only did the Shanghai sect have an additional elixir formula that could be used to stabilize the stage of the Dharma stage, but more importantly, Zhang Shi had brought these elixirs with him everywhere he went. Thinking about how Zhang Shi was only one step away from the Dharma stage, but he didn't stay in the Shanghai sect and go into seclusion to break through to the Dharma stage. Could it be that Zhang Shi had already predicted that he would break through in the Yingtian dojo and had made preparations beforehand? He thought about how the Dharma soul that had been fought over by the three Dharma stage cultivators had suddenly flown away, and how Zhang Shi had coincidentally appeared on the path that the Dharma soul had taken, causing the Dharma soul to crash directly into Zhang Shi's core space. All of this made Lu Ping suspect that Zhang Shi had already planned to use the Dharma soul in advance, and that he had taken three elixirs that were prepared to stabilize the stage in advance. This meant that Zhang Shi had already predicted the existence of the Dharma soul in the Yingtian dojo before he entered. Thinking about how Laozu had stayed in the Shanghai sect for decades, it seemed that the Shanghai sect had really dug out a lot of information about the Yingtian dojo from him. At this moment, Qian Daofeng, who was setting up the matrix in front, walked over with a gloomy face. He said, "I'm afraid the defensive ability of this light curtain is much higher than what we had estimated. With the abilities of us three matrix masters, and the help of two others, the matrix that we set up is unable to weaken the restriction at all." When everyone heard this, their faces turned ugly. Without the weakening effect of the matrix, it would be even more difficult for them to break the restriction. Bronze Sword Laozu was anxious. After hearing Qian Daofeng's words, he slashed at the light curtain with his sword. Under everyone's shocked eyes, Bronze Sword Laozu's sword was directly broken by a roaming rainbow restriction. It was important to know that the Jade Sword sect was the only pure swordsman sect in the North Sea, and Bronze Sword Laozu's abilities in the sect were second only to Jade Sword Laozu, who was at the mid-Dharma stage of the Jade Sword sect. Swordsmen had always been famous in the world of cultivation for their offensive and destructive abilities. Bronze Sword Laozu's sword was so powerful that among all the Laozu present, other than Jiang Tianlin, Donghua, and Feng Shutao, no one would dare to take it head-on. However, such a powerful sword could not even destroy one of the roaming 49 rainbow restrictions. Seeing that the most important central palace of the Yingtian dojo was right in front of them, but no one had the ability to break it, Feng Shutao was also a little anxious. He said, "Uncle Master, is there really no other way?" Qian Daofeng pondered deeply for a moment and said, "It's not that there's no way. I discussed it for a moment with the other two earlier. If all of you join forces and are able to annihilate one of the 7 different colored restrictions in one go, then we can seize the opportunity to completely activate the formation that's weakening it. In this way we can further weaken the restrictions." Donghua Laozu said unhappily, "If we can destroy the different rainbow restrictions in one go, why would we still need to weaken the formation?" Donghua Laozu's tone made Qian Daofeng very angry. However, Donghua Laozu was right, and so he said angrily, "All of you only have one chance to attack. Otherwise, the entire restriction will quickly recover. Even in such a situation, you Dharma adepts can't do anything about it. Formation masters like us are weak, so there's nothing much to say." After saying that, he actually turned around and left, leaving the 10 Dharma adepts behind to look at each other. "Why don't we join forces and give it a try?" Shuiyin Pavilion's Laozu suggested. However, even she herself could not tell from her tone that she was very confident. Perfected Xianxin, who had just walked up to Jiang Tianlin and Laozu and was discussing something with him, said, "It's no use. The last restriction is far stronger than we had expected. Based on the current situation, there should be a palace spirit at the core of the formation in the central palace." "Palace spirit?" What is that? A high-grade heaven-level spirit item? Shuiyan Pavilion's Laozu had also confirmed part of perfected Xuanzhen's words with the other formation master from his own sect. However, he had never heard of the palace spirit. Perfected Xianzhen hesitated for a moment and said, I don't know what it is exactly, but a heaven-level spirit item can indeed be used as a palace spirit. With the existence of a palace spirit, regardless of whether it is a restriction or a formation, the power of it will increase significantly. When Lu Ping heard the term palace spirit, he felt that it was very familiar. After thinking for a moment, he then remembered that when he had entered the Ying Tian dojo, he had obtained a copy of the Ying Tian sect's inheritance, which had mentioned the palace spirit. It was just that at that time Lu Ping had only roughly flipped through it. He was not proficient in formations, so he did not remember much about the essence of the book. When perfected Xianzhen had obtained the copy of the book from Lu Ping, it had been as if he had obtained a treasure. He had flipped through it overnight and found the records about the palace spirit. Actually, there were still some things that perfected Xianzhen had not mentioned just now. Not only could a heaven-level spirit item be used as a palace spirit, but the Dharma idol soul in the 3 small palaces of the 6-colored restriction was also a kind of palace spirit. Just when everyone was at their wits' end, Jiang Tianlin Laozu had obtained quite a bit of information from perfected Xianzhen. He chuckled and said, actually, it is not impossible to destroy the entire 6-colored restriction in one strike. Tong Jian Laozu's eyes lit up and said, you have a way? Hurry up and say it. Jiang Tianlin Laozu nodded slightly. Just as he was about to say something, Donghua Laozu beat him to it and said in a deep voice, state your conditions. Chapter 662. Donghua Laozu seemed to have already guessed Jiang Tianlin's next move, so he took the initiative to ask, state your conditions. Jiang Tianlin didn't mind. He slowly took out a purple wooden box from his storage artifact. There were several spirit sealing talismans sealed on it. From these spirit sealing talismans, it could be seen that the item inside the box should be extremely precious. This caused the previously doubtful cultivators to become more solemn. Jiang Tianlin Laozu brushed away the spirit sealing talismans on the box, then opened it, and the item inside was immediately revealed to everyone. This is Restriction Breaking Talisman, it's 7-colored. Junling actually has a 7-colored Restriction Breaking Talisman. In the purple wooden box, there was a talisman shining with 7-colored light. It was the 7-colored Restriction Breaking Talisman that Lu Ping had given to Jiang Tianlin Laozu. Jiang Tianlin Laozu had kept it, but he didn't use it until the last moment. When he needed it the most, he finally showed it to the cultivators of the various sects. The appearance of the 7-colored Restriction Breaking Talisman caused the cultivators of the various sects to suck in a breath of cold air. The expressions of the other Transcendence Realm cultivators changed. The 7-colored Restriction Breaking Talisman was the most powerful type of talisman passed down by the 7th Patriarch of the Heaven-Splitting Talisman. It was also the talisman with the lowest success rate in making. Every 7-colored Restriction Breaking Talisman was extremely rare in the cultivation world. The Sea Flame Sect's Transcendence Laozu looked at the 7-colored Restriction Breaking Talisman in Jiang Tianlin's hand with a complicated expression. He said, I didn't expect your sect to have the complete inheritance of the 7-colored Restriction Breaking Talisman. This talisman must be the masterpiece of your sect's Taoist Tian Shui? Jiang Tianlin Laozu smiled lightly and said, Senior, you worry too much. This 7-colored Restriction Breaking Talisman is something that our sect obtained by chance. We don't have the complete inheritance of the 7-colored Restriction Breaking Talisman. At most, we only have the 5-colored Restriction Breaking Talisman. Jiang Tianlin Laozu's words made many of the cultivators present calm down. Thinking about it, it made sense. It was said that even the Crystal Palace didn't have the complete inheritance of the 7-colored Restriction Breaking Talisman. In the past, the Crystal Palace had paid a huge price to obtain the complete inheritance of the 5-colored Restriction Breaking Talisman from the 5 Mountains Wuxing School, which was also a giant sect in the Central Plains, but they were rejected by the 5 Mountains Wuxing School. However, what everyone didn't know was that Junling's sect didn't have the complete inheritance of the 7-colored Restriction Breaking Talisman. However, the part of the 7-colored Restriction Breaking Talisman that Lu Ping had obtained from the Ying Tian dojo just so happened to complete Junling's inheritance of the Restriction Breaking Talisman. In other words, if Jiang Tianlin and the others escaped from the Ying Tian dojo unscathed, Junling would have the complete inheritance of the 7-colored Restriction Breaking Talisman that even the Crystal Palace didn't have. The 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman was extremely important. Apart from the fact that the Crystal Palace couldn't obtain it, the fact that the Ying-Tian sect had the complete inheritance of the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman but had kept it a secret showed how important it was. Even a large sect like the Ying-Tian sect was so secretive about the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman that they did not dare to disclose. Naturally, Zhenling's sect would never admit that they had obtained the complete inheritance of the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman. Jiang Tianlin Laozu glanced at the surrounding Laozu and said, "With this talisman in hand, I believe that everyone should believe that we can easily break a 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman with one strike. However, I don't need to say much about how precious this talisman is. Our sect only obtained it by chance. If this central palace was really important, I would never have taken it out." Feng Shutao said impatiently. "Jiang Tianlin, stop talking nonsense. Just state your conditions. I just hope that you won't ask for too much." Jiang Tianlin Laozu didn't mind. He continued to smile and said, "That's fine. Our sect's request isn't too much. After we break the restriction-breaking talisman of the central palace, our sect will be allowed to choose 3 treasures. Furthermore, we will have the right to choose the first round." "What? 3? That's impossible. Zhenling's appetite is too big. Although a restriction-breaking talisman is precious, it's unreasonable for him to ask for 3. "That's right. Zhenling wants the right to choose the first round? How is that possible? Doesn't that mean that the best 4 treasures will be taken by Zhenling? A man who is never content is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. What if only 4 treasures fly out after the restriction-breaking talisman of the central palace is broken? Or perhaps only 4 of the treasures are spirit-nurturing treasures or heaven-rank spirit treasures, while the rest are just scrap metal. What should we do?" Jiang Tianlin Laozu didn't take the displeasure of the cultivators of the various sects to heart. He just stood there calmly and waited for everyone to calm down from their frenzy. Meanwhile, Donghua Laozu spoke with a serious expression. "Martial nephew Jiang, even though the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman is precious, it's only because it's rare and not because it's difficult to craft. Zhenling wants to take the best 4 treasures in one go? That's quite unreasonable. It was time to haggle." Jiang Tianlin smiled. "What do you think, Mr. Donghua?" Donghua Laozu fell silent for a moment, and he seemed to be discussing something with the other Laozus around him. "We believe that after martial nephew Jiang breaks the restriction, you can choose one of the treasures that spill out, and we'll give the right to choose the first round to Zhenling. That way, Zhenling will have the right to choose 2 of the best treasures. What do you think, martial nephew Jiang?" Jiang Tianlin's expression darkened, and he pondered for a moment before replying with a serious expression, 2. Zhenling must choose 2 treasures first, and the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman is also worth 2. Furthermore, there's no need to give the right to choose the first round. Zhenling will fight for it." Donghua Laozu was stunned and he said, "Martial nephew Jiang, how heroic of you. Are you confident that your sect will be able to destroy the most restrictions?" Jiang Tianlin smiled and remained silent. Donghua Laozu glanced at the other Laozus around him and said, "All right, it's a deal." Jiang Tianlin held the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman in his hand, and it slowly rose into the air before transforming into a ray of rainbow light that swept down towards the restrictions outside the palace. A series of explosions rang out, and under the repeated scouring of the rainbow light, colorful restrictions exploded into spirit flowers one after another. Perfected Chen Daofeng was indeed the #1 formation master in the North Sea. He saw the opportunity when the 7-colored restriction-breaking talisman was about to attack the light screen, and he suddenly shouted, "Now!" Just as the power of the restriction-breaking talisman reached its peak, and there was still some energy left to maintain the 7-colored restrictions that had been dispelled and could not recover under the support of the protective formation, the weakening formation that had been set up by the 3 formation masters and 2 formation masters immediately activated. 4 of the restrictions that had already been weakened by the restriction-breaking talisman were destroyed once again. The original purpose of the weakening formation was not only to destroy the restrictions, but more importantly, it was to suppress the self-recovery of the light screen, even though the effect of the suppression was not very obvious to Lu Ping. After the weakening formation was activated, there was no need for anyone else to say anything. All of the cultivators in the Dao Plaza attacked the remaining 35 rainbow restrictions with all their might. In an instant, the restrictions surrounding the central palace were blasted by the attacks of several tens of cultivators, causing light to shine in all directions. The defensive power of the 7 colored restrictions was indeed worthy of its reputation. 2 Dharma adepts from the Songhai sect and a late core forging adept joined forces and destroyed 2 of the restrictions in the first 3 attacks. When Donghua Laozu looked to the side, he saw that Jiang Tianlin Laozu alone had destroyed 2 restrictions with just 2 attacks. Donghua Laozu's expression was a little ugly. Although Jiang Tianlin's speed was not as fast as that of the Songhai sect, one must not forget that Jiang Tianlin Laozu was alone. Lu Ping himself felt a little depressed. This was because in the process of this competition, Lu Ping's own strength could not be used to its fullest. Although the power of the 12 Ginshin's natal formation was strong, Lu Ping had always been unwilling to reveal his natal Dharma treasure in front of others. The Changlu sword was a spirit cultivation level Dharma treasure that had refined 8 treasures, but if Lu Ping revealed it now, Donghua Laozu and the others would immediately fight him to the death. As for the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash, Lu Ping could only use its lightning power, but he had never revealed it in front of others. This way the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash could only use 70% of its original power. Lu Ping still had 3 spirit cultivation level Dharma treasures on him, but whether it was the ocean crossing boat, the cloud glow 5 elements robe, or the 8 views tower that he had just subdued, they were not good weapons for attacking. With no other choice, Lu Ping could only use the golden scale sword, the landslide, and the aqua nether sword as well as the weakened lightning power, to join forces with perfected Shensen and perfected Shensu to attack the restrictive barrier. In the first 3 attacks, the 3 of them managed to destroy 1 colorful barrier. This allowed Jinling to surpass the Songhai sect, which had 2 Dharma powers in Laozu, and temporarily occupy the first place. However, Donghua Laozu did not seem to be in a hurry. Compared to core forging adepts, a very important advantage for Dharma adepts was that Dharma adepts could sustain their strongest attacks for a very long time. On the other hand, for late core forging adepts, the power of their combined attacks might not be any weaker than that of a Dharma adept in the first 3 attacks. However, as time went on, they would not be able to keep up. Hence, this was the best time for the Songhai sect to surpass Jinling. After Feng Shutao inherited the Dharma soul, although he had used the power of the Dharma soul to push his own cultivation level to the peak of the early Dharma stage, when he joined forces with another late core forging adept, Lu Shuheng, he did not manage to destroy 2 colorful barriers like the Songhai sect did. Naturally, there was no way he could compare to Jinling. However, his current progress was enough to place him in the 3rd place. Furthermore, Xianling sect still had a formation grandmaster who had not been counted. After the sects completed the first 3 attacks, in order not to give the restrictive barrier any time to recover, they immediately continued to attack. However, at this time, other than Laozu who could still maintain the power of their attacks, the rest of the core forging adepts could no longer match the power of the first 3 attacks. In this way, the North Sea sect's time to destroy the restrictive barrier was undoubtedly delayed. Chapter 663. However, after a short while, not only Donghua Laozu, but Laozu from the other sects also quickly discovered that among the late core forging adepts, there was another person who not only maintained the same rhythm as the previous 3 attacks, but as the attacks continued, the power of this person's attacks gradually increased. How could this be possible? Lu Ping did not know that his performance had already been observed by all the Laozu. He was only focusing all his attention on attacking the seal in front of him. Lu Ping's inner yuan was already extraordinary from the start, and it was enough to support him to continuously use high explosive attacks. Coupled with the fact that the golden scale sword and other treasured weapons were unable to unleash their full potential, Lu Ping was unable to unleash his full potential right from the start. However, in the eyes of the others, what they saw was Lu Ping's double attacks that were filled with treasured weapons and remarkable powers. When Lu Ping observed Celestial Laozu's process of overcoming the tribulation of the mid-Dharma stage, he had once gained some enlightenment from the Lightning Galaxy, and finally upgraded the Great River Flowing East sword technique to the level of a great remarkable power. This time, when Lu Ping used this sword technique, it was accompanied by the lightning power of the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash. This reminded Lu Ping of the time when Celestial Laozu was fighting in the Lightning Galaxy. The Lightning Galaxy used lightning to transform into water, but Lu Ping's Great River Flowing East sword technique used swords to transform into water. This was different in nature. However, when Lu Ping used the purple lightning of the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash to attack it, he had an idea. If the 2 were to be combined and the sword light formed from the Great River Flowing East sword technique carried the lightning of the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash, Wouldn't it be the same as the lightning galaxy that celestial Laozu encountered when he was undergoing tribulation? Of course, the 7 treasures lightning gourd and the great river flows east had fused together. Even if the power of the 7 treasures lightning gourd had increased greatly, it still couldn't compare to the true lightning galaxy. However, its power was still far above that of an ordinary great river flows east. From the very beginning, Lu Ping had been trying to combine these 2 great divine powers into one. However, he was unable to do so. As Lu Ping continued to try, the power of the 2 great divine powers gradually began to stack, and the effect of the attack also became more and more obvious. From the beginning, when Lu Ping attacked with his 3 magic treasures and lightning divine art, his power was only slightly stronger than Daoist Xianxin or Daoist Xiansu. As Lu Ping gradually merged the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash's lightning power with its great river flows east, sword skill, the power of the 7 treasures Thunder Calabash's, 7 treasures Thunder Calabash. Great river flows east, sword skill gradually surpassed the combined power of the lightning and sword skills. This newly formed divine art still hadn't broken away from the barrier of the great river flows east. It was far from reaching the height of the legendary supreme divine art. However, Lu Ping's bold attempt this time had succeeded. It could be said that he had laid down a foundation for exploring and cultivating supreme divine arts in the future. If one were to say that Lu Ping's sudden appearance on Frost Island and barely fought to a draw with Zhang Shi, who was at the peak of the core forging realm, and many second-generation cultivators felt that it was inconceivable, then in the Yingtian Dao Plaza, Lu Ping's display of power that surpassed Daoist Xianxin and Daoist Xiansu from the very beginning also gradually made people feel that it was only natural. However, when Lu Ping's new divine art combination was completed, the effect of his attack was even comparable to the combined attack of Daoist Xianxin and Daoist Xiansu, the 2 veteran late-stage core forging cultivators. This could no longer be described as simply amazing. 2 words suddenly popped up in the hearts of the 2 Daoist Xianxin and Daoist Xiansu: monster. Lu Ping's sudden explosion caused Blue Ocean Sect, who was originally keeping up with Jinling's progress, to be left far behind once again. When the restrictions in the Central Palace were destroyed by the combined forces of Laozu and the Daoist masters, Jinling destroyed 6 rainbow restrictions and took first place without any suspense. Songhai Sect had destroyed the 5-colored restriction formation and was tied with Xianling Sect for second place. Initially, Songhai Sect's progress was far ahead of Xianling Sect, but at the last moment, Feng Shutao suddenly took out a 5-colored restriction-breaking talisman from his pocket. Under the shocked and furious gazes of Donghua Ancestor and Zhang Shi, he easily destroyed a half-colored restriction formation, allowing Xianling Sect to catch up with Songhai Sect. However, one should not forget that Xianling Sect still had the help of Daoist Master Qian Daofeng, a formation grandmaster. Therefore, without the help of a formation master, Blue Ocean Sect was destined to be ranked behind Xianling Sect. Hai Yin Sect and Shui Yin Pavilion each destroyed 4 rainbow restrictions, but Shui Yin Pavilion had a formation grandmaster, so they were ranked ahead of Hai Yin Sect, which only had 1 formation grandmaster. The remaining 11 rainbow restrictions were destroyed by the cultivators of the other 4 sections. Among them, Copper Sword Laozu and his disciples took the 6th place with their powerful sword cultivators. Linggu Sect's Lingyun Laozu took the 7th place with the help of his sect's formation grandmaster. Sanming Laozu took the 8th place, and Feiyu Sect took the last place. The moment the restriction in the Central Palace was destroyed, 20 to 30 treasures suddenly shot out from the Central Palace. Qian Daofeng and the other 2 formation grandmasters, who were already prepared, suddenly clapped the formation plates in their hands. The formation that was used to weaken the restrictions suddenly flashed again, but it was a light barrier cage that enveloped the entire Central Palace, trying to trap all 20 to 30 treasures within it. In the instant that the protective barrier was erected, 20 to 30 treasures collided with it, producing sounds of various sizes. However, they were all repelled by the protective barrier. However, at this moment, an inconspicuous object that looked like a wine cup suddenly hit the barrier among these treasures. Poof! A bowl-sized hole was easily smashed through the barrier, and it flew rapidly toward the edge of the dojo. When the barrier was broken, the 3 formation grandmasters spat out a mouthful of blood at the same time, each with a look of horror on their faces. No one knew the power of this restrictive formation better than the 3 of them. A treasure that could easily break through the barrier. What exactly was this wine cup-like magic treasure? Just as the wine cup was about to sink into the spatial crack at the edge of the dojo, a blue brilliance suddenly shone through the air, but it could only freeze the wine cup in mid-air. After a moment, a mellow fragrance suddenly rose from the wine cup, and the blue light turned into nothingness in this mellow fragrance. But just this moment of pause was enough. Jiang Tianlin Laozu had the abundant void mirror floating above his head, staring solemnly at the small wine cup in front of him. If someone was in front of him, they would notice that Jiang Tianlin Laozu had closed his breathing and even his pores. The wine cup seemed to have sensed danger, and when Jiang Tianlin Laozu appeared in front of it, it tried to fly away again. However, Jiang Tianlin Laozu did not use his hand to grab the wine cup in front of him, but once again used the abundant void mirror to freeze it in midair. Then, without waiting for the wine cup to break free again, the abundant void mirror once again emitted a beam of light to cover it. This time, the beam of light was golden. Just as the wine cup broke free from the shackles of the blue light, the golden beam of light flashed and disappeared, and the wine cup also disappeared in midair. Jiang Tianlin Laozu turned back, and at this time, there were already other treasures trying to escape again by taking advantage of the hole that the wine cup had just broken. Jiang Tianlin Laozu forced all these treasures back with one palm, and at the same time helped the three injured grandmasters to replenish their shields again. Just at the moment that the inconspicuous small wine cup broke the formation shield, there were many cultivators who realized that this wine cup was unusual. Whether it was Donghua Laozu or Feng Shidao, they were already ready to make a move, but both of them were a step behind Jiang Tianlin Laozu. In the end, they could only watch Jiang Tianlin Laozu put this small wine cup, which was very likely to be a treasure, into the abundant void mirror. In a battle between masters, what was lacking was this moment of effort. This also made Donghua Laozu and Feng Shidao, who were both at the peak of the early Dharma stage, once again realize the true gap between them and Jiang Tianlin Laozu. Haha, that wine cup just now is the first treasure that our sect has chosen. Jiang Tianlin Laozu said to the various Laozu with a smile. It was able to break through the formation shield set up by three grandmasters when it had no owner, Reverend Chen Daofeng muttered to himself, then asked in disbelief, "Could that wine cup that you took be a spirit treasure?" Chen Daofeng's words caused all the Laozu present to be shocked and moved, and they stared at Jiang Tianlin Laozu with shining eyes. Donghua Laozu and Feng Shidao both looked dejected. At this moment, the two of them were more and more convinced that the wine cup just now could only be a spirit treasure. If they had made a move just now, even if they were a step slower than Jiang Tianlin, they would still have been able to cause a chaotic scene. Even if they were unable to take advantage of the situation in the end, and even if they had sent the wine cup into the crack in space, it would still have been much more worth it than letting Jiang Tianlin obtain a spirit treasure so easily. Lu Ping also knew about spirit treasures because he had once observed Celestial Phenomenon Laozu's tribulation. In order to prevent the tribulation from failing, Celestial Phenomenon Laozu had given him a storage ring, which contained several treasures of Jinling, and among them was a spirit treasure. Lu Ping had learned from his teacher Lu Tianling that there were only a few spirit treasures in Jinling, and each of them was the treasure of Jinling's sect. They were the accumulation of tens of thousands of years of inheritance in Jinling. Usually only Celestial Phenomenon Laozu, Tianfan, Tianxue and Tiankong, who were at the mid-Dharma stage and above, were in charge of these treasures. After Lu Tianling took over the position of sect leader of Jinling, in order to strengthen his authority, Celestial Phenomenon Laozu had given a spirit treasure to Lu Tianling. However, Lu Ping did not know what this spirit treasure was. The so-called spirit treasure was a spirit-nurturing magic treasure that had been refined with the 9 treasures. After going through the test of the thunder tribulation, a wave of pure yang qi would be formed in the magic treasure, causing the magic treasure's spirituality to increase greatly, and then advancing to an even more powerful spirit treasure. In the face of everyone's greedy gazes, Ancestor Jiang Tianlin smiled and said, "Everyone, there isn't much time left. I think a lot of cultivators have already been attracted to the dojo to ambush us. Instead of thinking about snatching the wine cup that might be a spiritual treasure from my hands, you should hurry up and find the treasures in the palace. After that, you can think about how to break out of the encirclement. Otherwise, the longer we delay, the more cultivators will ambush us outside." After saying that, Patriarch Jiang Tianlin walked towards the treasures that had fallen from the shield. He was ready to choose the second treasure. Chapter 664. The Laozus of the various sects watched as Jiang Tianlin and Laozu walked leisurely to a group of treasures and put a huge cauldron, which was obviously a magic treasure, into the abundant void mirror. The eyes of the Laozus present were practically spitting fire. A spiritual treasure could be related to the foundation of the various sects in the North Sea, but the sects had thousands of years of inheritance, so at least 3 to 5 spiritual treasures could be passed down as the foundation of the sections. However, how many magic treasure-level cauldrons were there in the entire North Sea cultivation world? Xianling sect's sea-boiling cauldron and Jinling's Nachuan cauldron, there were only these two. But now Jiang Tianlin easily put away Jinling's second magic treasure cauldron. How could the Laozus of the various sects be willing to accept this? What's more, if Lu Ping's 3 pure true pupils' magical power was not wrong, the magic treasure cauldron that Laozus collected by Jiang Tianlin was very likely to condense 2 or even 3 cauldron treasures. It was a cauldron of a higher quality than the current Nachuan cauldron. Lu Ping and the others secretly broke into a cold sweat. The strange atmosphere at the scene seemed to be a little careless, and the Laozus of the various sects would gang up on Jinling. After Jiang Tianlin Laozu put away the cauldron, he seemed to be aware of the atmosphere at the scene. He glanced around and seemed to be talking to himself, but also seemed to be talking to the crowd. Just the treasures that overflowed from the central palace already have a magic treasure-level cauldron. Then what kind of treasures would be hidden in this palace? Jiang Tianlin Laozu's words immediately shifted most of the Laozu's attention. After all, treasures at the level of spiritual treasures and magic treasure cauldrons, except for Xianling sect and Songhai sect, if other sects obtained them, they would probably give them up under the threat of these sections. Before the 2 Laozus of the Shuiyan Pavilion and Haiyan sect fought, with the close cooperation between the 2 sects, they had the right to compete for these treasures. But now, just looking at the 2 sects standing on opposite sides, one would know the result. As for the sects joining forces to snatch Jiang Tianlin, this was even more of a joke. Even if Jiang Tianlin was forced to give up the treasures in his hands now, when they returned to North Sea, which sect could withstand the wrath of 2 late Dharma adepts of Jinling and a total of 11 Dharma adepts? Now in the North Sea cultivation world, after Tian Fan and Tian Shui Laozu had advanced to become adepts, the combined forces of Tian Fan and Tian Shui Laozu were already seen as equivalent to a late Dharma adept. Now, with the huge number of 11 Dharma adepts, Jinling had long been called a quasi-large-scale sect by the North Sea cultivators. After the destruction of Fei Ling's sect, the North Sea cultivation world had the most hope of becoming a large-scale sect, reconnecting with Central Plains, and being accepted by the cultivation world. Jiang Tianlin saw that his words had caused the greedy gazes of the various sects Laozus to subside, so he bowed slightly to everyone and said, "If that's the case, my sect's chance to choose 2 treasures first has been used up. Next, each sect will decide the order of choosing according to the results of each sect's attack on the seal. Since my sect was lucky enough to be first, I will not decline this responsibility and choose first." After saying that, the patriarch of Jiang Tianlin's divine telekinesis enveloped all 20 to 30 treasures, ignoring the interesting expressions on the patriarch's faces. This kind of selection was also a kind of test for the cultivators. The cultivators could use their divine will to explore to their heart's content, but they could not touch the treasures with their hands. As for the treasures in the boxes that were sealed with spirit-sealing talismans, they could only rely on luck to determine which one was the right one. To put it bluntly, this kind of selection was a test of the cultivators' foresight, knowledge, and luck. At the same time that Jiang Tianlin used his divine will to carefully examine each and every treasure, the various sects Laozu and core forging stage cultivators were also using their divine will to check if there were any treasures that their respective sects were interested in. At this time, Jiang Tianlin Laozu was in a dilemma between a spirit-forbidden box, a spirit-nurturing treasure with 9 treasure restrictions, and a refining Grand Master's inheritance book. Jiang Tianlin Laozu's hesitation also made the other sects' cultivators' hearts hang in mid-air, because the 3 treasures that Jiang Tianlin Laozu was looking at were obviously the top treasures among the 20 to 30 treasures. There was no need to mention the top spirit-nurturing treasure. The purple spirit-forbidden box, according to the harvest that Laozu had obtained in the restriction area, should at least be a heaven-stage spirit treasure, and the complete refining Grand Master's inheritance book. Jiang Tianlin saw 2 people's names on the cover of the book, which meant that this book should at least be the inheritance of 2 refining Grand Masters. The value of this book was even greater than any of the complete inheritance books that Lu Ping had obtained before. Just when Jiang Tianlin Laozu seemed to be dazzled, he suddenly heard Lu Ping's urgent voice transmission. "Martial uncle, the purple jade slip on the left is very important. Please be sure to pick it first." A look of surprise flashed across Jiang Tianlin's face. He then wrapped his divine sense around the purple jade scroll on the left and carefully examined it. However, he couldn't find any useful information from it. If that was the case, why was Lu Ping so eager to obtain this jade scroll? Judging from Lu Ping's tone, it seemed like he hoped that Jiang Tianlin would give up all the important heritage books, top-grade mystic treasures and top-grade spirit items, but he would still want this purple jade scroll that didn't seem to be of any use to Jiang Tianlin. Jiang Tianlin Laozu's expression changed, and he turned his divine sense slightly. He saw a seemingly inadvertent mark on an inconspicuous place on the purple jade slip. This mark made Jiang Tianlin Laozu raise his eyebrows, and he seemed to have guessed something. When Jiang Tianlin Laozu was young, he had also gone to Failing Mountain and obtained some inheritance about Failing Sect. Later, it became an important factor in Jiang Tianlin Laozu's rise from Jinling. Among the opportunities of Failing Sect that Jiang Tianlin Laozu had obtained, there was also a purple jade slip. Jiang Tianlin Laozu had repeatedly examined it, and at the same place on the jade slip, there seemed to be an inadvertent mark left behind. Although the jade slip he obtained was very important, it was a remnant of Failing Sect's inheritance. Jiang Tianlin Laozu still felt that the contents of the jade slip were incomplete, and he had not used it back then. Could it be that this jade slip contained the remaining half of the inheritance that he had obtained back then? If that was the case, after combining it with the part of his inheritance, its value would barely be comparable to that of the complete inheritance of weapon refinement. However, how did Lu Xianping discover it? Although Jiang Tianlin Laozu still had some doubts, he chose to believe Lu Ping in the end. He reached out and took the jade slip. Under the surprised gazes of the other sects, he smiled at Feng Shutao and said, "Brother Feng, our sect has finished choosing. It's your turn now." Although Feng Shutao did not understand why Jiang Tianlin would choose a jade slip that he could not see the contents of, it was obviously a gamble. This was not Jiang Tianlin's usual style of planning before taking action. However, Feng Shutao still suppressed his doubts and quickly put away the inheritance book of weapon refinement that Jiang Tianlin had been hesitating about. This caused many of the other sects Laozu to sigh secretly. Not only were the cultivators from the other sects surprised, but many of the cultivators from Jinling were also confused. When Sage Xiansu saw Jiang Tianlin Laozu walking over, he hesitated for a moment before asking in a low voice, "Senior brother Jiang, this?" Jiang Tianlin Laozu raised his hand to interrupt Sage Xiansu's question. He turned around and set up a sound barrier. Then he looked at Lu Ping and asked in a low voice, "Kid, now is the time for you to tell me why you chose this jade slip, right?" Sage Xian Sen and the others looked at Lu Ping in surprise. They did not expect that Jiang Tianlin Laozu's choice of this jade slip was Lu Ping's idea. Moreover, it seemed that even Jiang Tianlin Laozu did not know what was in this jade slip, but Jiang Tianlin Laozu chose to believe Lu Ping. Lu Ping was also quite touched by Jiang Tianlin Laozu's trust. However, when he saw the slightly reproachful gazes of Sage Xian Sen and the others, he still smiled and said, "Martial uncle, why don't you check the contents of the jade slip first?" When Jiang Tianlin Laozu heard this, he smiled awkwardly. He had chosen this jade slip as a gamble. After choosing it, he only wanted to ask Lu Ping for the reason, but he forgot that he could check the contents himself. Sage Xian Sen, Sage Xian Su, and Sage Xian Shen all looked at Jiang Tianlin Laozu. Suddenly, a green light streaked across his hand, and the restriction on the surface of the jade slip, which was used to prevent divine senses from invading, was instantly broken. Jiang Tianlin Laozu sent his divine sense into the jade slip and carefully checked it. He frowned, then threw the jade slip to Lu Ping and said, "This seems to be the pill formula of an extremely high-level pill. Moreover, the contents of the pill formula do not seem to be complete. There is only the second half. What are you going to do with it?" When Lu Ping heard Jiang Tianlin Laozu's words, the last trace of apprehension on his face disappeared. After receiving the jade slip from Jiang Tianlin Laozu, he checked it and confirmed Lu Ping's judgment. Lu Ping immediately beamed with joy. Sage Xiansen coughed and said, "Martial nephew Lu, what exactly is it? Since it is only half a pill formula, you should have the most say in this matter since you are an alchemy grandmaster." Sage Xiansen's words were actually to protect Lu Ping. If this half-step pill formula was chosen by Jiang Tianlin Laozu because of Lu Ping's passion for alchemy, and its actual value was not comparable to the inheritance of alchemy, Lu Ping would inevitably be reprimanded when he returned to the sect. Lu Ping understood Sage Xiansen's good intentions. He smiled at him and said in a low voice, "Spirit forging pill." "What?" Sage Xianshen exclaimed in a low voice. Then, as if realizing something, he hurriedly covered his mouth and put it down. He looked around and realized that the cultivators of the various sects were all focused on the treasures that were circled. Not many people were paying attention to Jinling. Only then did he relax. Among the 4 late core forging sages present, the one who desired the spirit forging pill the most was undoubtedly Sage Xianqin himself. This was because Sage Xianqin knew that with his cultivation, if he did not have a great opportunity, he would not be able to enter the Dharma realm in this lifetime. Now that he suddenly heard the news of the spirit forging pill formula, Sage Xianqin was undoubtedly the most shocked. Chapter 665. Although Sage Xianqin was overjoyed that Lu Ping had obtained the second half of the spirit forging pill's recipe, Sage Xiansu still felt a little regretful. He said, although the Crystal Palace previously announced the various spiritual herbs needed to refine the spirit forging pill to the various sects in the North Sea, and although we now have the second half of the recipe, I'm afraid it will still be difficult to successfully refine the spirit forging pill. Sage Xianqin had already recovered from his surprise and said, that is indeed the case. I was too excited just now. However, with the abilities of our sect's 3 alchemy grandmasters, even if they can't completely replicate the spirit forging pill, they should still be able to improve on some pills that can improve the refining of spiritual objects. Everyone looked at Lu Ping again. Alchemy grandmasters did not care about seniority or status. The one who had the most say was still Lu Ping, the new alchemy grandmaster. However, they saw Lu Ping smile proudly and slowly open his left palm in front of everyone. A purple jade slip that was exactly the same as the one in his right palm appeared in Lu Ping's left palm. Before everyone could exclaim in surprise, Jiang Tianlin Laozu, who was at the side, suddenly waved his hand at Lu Ping. Lu Ping's open hands involuntarily clenched again and then retracted them. Only when Lu Ping's hands retracted in front of his chest did he slowly regain control of his hands. The moment Jiang Tianlin Laozu made his move, Lu Ping had already understood Jiang Tianlin Laozu's intentions. Thus, he took advantage of the force of Jiang Tianlin's brush and directly put the 2 jade slips into his storage magic tool. Sage Xianqin could not contain the joy in his heart and asked softly, you already have the first half of the spirit forging pill's recipe? Lu Ping nodded lightly and said, although I have not carefully studied the contents of the second half of the recipe, it should not be a big problem. Jiang Tianlin Laozu said seriously, if the recipe of the spirit forging pill is really gathered, even a spirit treasure cannot be exchanged for it. However, this matter is our sect's biggest secret. Everyone, not even the eldest son or younger brother of your own family, cannot reveal a single word. Everything will wait until after this trip to Yingtian Dojo is completed and we return to our sect. Then we will discuss it with Sect Laozu before making a decision. Regarding this matter, everyone nodded as a matter of course. It was said that one of the main reasons for the destruction of Fei Ling's sect was because the inheritance of the spirit forging pill in Fei Ling's sect was too eye-catching. This had forced Jinling to be cautious, afraid that the misfortune of Fei Ling's sect would befall Jinling. After the first round of selection by each sect's Sect Laozu, basically the most valuable treasures had already been taken away. In the second round, Jinling was still the first to pick. Jiang Tianlin Laozu looked at the remaining 20 treasures and turned back. You guys should also take a look and see if there is anything that can be used. Obviously, although the remaining treasures still had some value, they were not worthy of Jiang Tianlin Laozu's attention. In the end, Taoist Xianqin still had his eyes on a copper gong. This copper gong was only a spirit-connected magic treasure that had condensed the 6 Tao treasures. However, Taoist Xianqin found some patterns on the surface of the copper gong that were similar to formation runes. This greatly interested Taoist Xianqin. Thus, Jiang Tianlin Laozu went forward and took the copper gong. Just as Jiang Tianlin Laozu handed the copper gong to Taoist Xianqin, he frowned and looked to the side. He just happened to see Taoist Chen Daofeng of Shenling sect turn his head to the side. Obviously, the experienced Taoist Chen Daofeng had also discovered the strangeness of this copper gong. Unfortunately, Shenling sect was ranked below Jinling, so they could only miss this copper gong. After another round of selection, Jinling was once again the big winner. However, at this time, the central palace had already been opened to the cultivators of the various sections. It was hard to say whether there were even more precious treasures hidden inside. Moreover, whether or not one could obtain the treasures inside the palace, apart from the cultivator's personal strength, there was no doubt that luck had also increased a lot. No matter how strong one was, if one walked in the wrong direction in the palace's grotto heaven, they would still end up with nothing. The central palace was different from the 3 small palaces in the 6 Tao treasures area. The 3 small palaces were only spatial magic treasures, but the central palace was 100% a grotto heaven magic treasure. It was a pity that this Grotto Heaven magic treasure had already completely fused with the Yingtian dojo. Everyone could no longer subdue and refine it. Otherwise, the various sects would probably fight fiercely for this palace Grotto Heaven. In the Grotto Heaven of the palace, Lu Ping was currently hurrying through a barren and dry desert. At this time, it had already been about an hour since he entered the central Grotto Heaven, but the path Lu Ping was walking on still seemed to be the depths of the endless desert. After dividing up the treasures in the palace, the cultivators of the various sects couldn't wait to enter the palace. After Lu Ping followed Jinling and the others into the palace, he realized that he had already been separated from Jiang Tianlin Laozu and the others. This Grotto Heaven seemed to suppress Lu Ping's divine will. Even though Lu Ping's divine will was no weaker than that of a Dharma manifestation stage cultivator, at this time, he could only explore a radius of a few hundred feet around him. Lu Ping was at a loss in the Grotto Heaven for a moment, not knowing which direction he should go. At this moment, a strange expression flashed across Lu Ping's face, and a green light appeared in his eyes as he looked around. After discovering that there was no one spying on him, he gently patted his chest with his right hand, and a small purple gourd came out of Lu Ping's core space. After the 7 treasures thunder gourd hovered above Lu Ping's head for a moment, it seemed to have discovered something and stopped moving in a direction. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat, and he walked in the direction that the 7 treasures thunder gourd was pointing. Every time Lu Ping's direction made a mistake, the 7 treasures thunder gourd floating above Lu Ping's head would tremble, causing Lu Ping to correct his direction. Lu Ping did not know where the thunder gourd was leading him, nor did he know what would attract the thunder gourd in front of him. However, Lu Ping could not decide which direction to go, so he simply followed the 7 treasures thunder gourd and gambled. However, Lu Ping followed the 7 treasures thunder gourd for more than an hour. At this time, Lu Ping had walked into a barren desert, and the destination in front of him seemed to be far away. At this moment, the 7 treasures thunder gourd that was floating in front of Lu Ping suddenly stopped, and then suddenly changed direction, moving towards a small sand dune. Walking in front of this sand dune, Lu Ping's divine sense moved slightly, and he finally found what was hidden in the sand dune. Lu Ping reached out towards the sand dune, and a ball of sand jumped out from the sand dune. Lu Ping took the 7 treasures thunder gourd, and with the mouth of the gourd facing the ball of sand, he formed a hand seal and shouted, "Collect." A purple lightning flashed, and the ball of sand floating in the air disappeared. Then the 7 treasures thunder gourd in Lu Ping's hand began to tremble, as if it was digesting something. From time to time, lightning would spew out from the mouth of the gourd. After a while, the thunder gourd gradually calmed down in Lu Ping's hand, and Lu Ping once again took out the 7 treasures thunder gourd. The thunder gourd seemed to be drunk, and the lightning jumping at the mouth of the gourd was like a drunken burp. It staggered into the air and once again pointed out the direction for Lu Ping to go. Originally, the 7 treasures thunder gourd swallowed heaven and earth treasures was an important way for it to grow, but after becoming a spiritual treasure, ordinary heaven and earth treasures seemed to no longer be able to attract the 7 treasures thunder gourd's interest. Only rare heaven and earth treasures with special powers could provoke the 7 treasures thunder gourd's desire to refine them. As such, after the 7 treasures thunder gourd became a spiritual treasure, Lu Ping was only able to find 2 or 3 special heaven and earth treasures that suited the 7 treasures thunder gourd's appetite. Due to that, the 7 treasures thunder gourd's power did not increase by much. These special heaven and earth treasures were often even rarer in the world of cultivation. This slowly solved one of the questions Lu Ping had about the 7 treasures thunder gourd. To refine the 7 treasures thunder gourd, it needed to refine a total of 49 different heaven and earth treasures. Although 49 heaven and earth treasures did not seem like a lot, with the full support of some large sects, it would not be difficult to gather all of them. However, why was it that in the tens of thousands of years of history, only Peng Laozu's 7 treasures thunder gourd had earned the title of the world of cultivation's #1 divine artifact? Clearly, the refinement of the 7 treasures thunder gourd was not as simple as Lu Ping had imagined. There might be more restrictions on its future growth. However, Lu Ping did not have the legacy to refine the 7 treasures thunder gourd. Thus, he could only let it grow on its own. Thinking back to how the 7 treasures thunder gourd had found an earth attribute heaven and earth treasures in the sand dune, Lu Ping remembered that DeBao could not be absent from this exploration. Lu Ping thought back to how he had forgotten to release DeBao just now. He didn't know how many treasures he had missed out on in the past hour he spent on the road. Due to the suppression of a cultivator's divine sense, Lu Ping's ability to control the surrounding environment was greatly weakened. However, they were now in the desert. For Debao, this environment was like a fish in water. One man and one Yao continued to advance in the direction indicated by the Seven Treasures Thunder Gourd. Along the way, Debao would occasionally leave the route and explore the surrounding area. Sometimes he would bring back something. Sometimes Lu Ping would have to temporarily abandon the route and work with Debao to explore or collect something from the desert. However, although the things the two of them collected along the way were of some value, they did not find anything of real value. This was very different from what Lu Ping had imagined. The central palace was the most important place in the Yingtian dojo. It was bound to be filled with treasures. Could it be that his luck had really run out? The two of them continued forward for another 2 hours. Just as Lu Ping was beginning to doubt the Seven Treasures Thunder Gourd's guidance, a bolt of lightning suddenly flashed across the clear sky. With a loud bang, the lightning fell in front of the two of them, flattening the sand dune beneath their feet by one zhang. Lu Ping and Debao looked at the scene in front of them in shock. The Seven Treasures Thunder Gourd above their heads once again trembled rapidly. Chapter 666. Lu Ping and Debao turned around a sand dune that had been struck by the lightning and saw a long and narrow lake in front of them. Lu Ping looked at the lake in front of him and felt that something was strange. Debao said, "Don't desert areas with water often form oases? Why is there only a lake and sand here?" Lu Ping suddenly realized what was wrong. This lake suddenly appeared in the desert, but there were no plants growing around it. It was still a desert of white sand. There were no ripples on the surface of the lake. The entire lake gave off a feeling that there was not a trace of life. On the contrary, there was a feeling of death. Just as Lu Ping lifted his foot to walk in the direction of the lake, another thunderbolt fell from the sky, falling directly on top of Lu Ping's head. This time Lu Ping saw it clearly. The thunderbolt that suddenly appeared in the sky came from the center of the calm lake in front of him. Lu Ping directly put the Seven Treasure Thunder Calabash on top of his head. When the thunderbolt hit the mouth of the calabash, it seemed to be attracted by something. In an instant, it disappeared into the Seven Treasure Thunder Calabash. It didn't affect Lu Ping in the slightest. Lu Ping took 2 more steps forward. 2 more thunderbolts sounded in the sky. 2 green thunderbolts fell on top of Lu Ping's head, but they were easily dissolved by the Seven Treasure Thunder Calabash. At this point, Lu Ping finally understood why an oasis couldn't be formed around the lake. A certain treasure in the lake had already claimed the area around the lake as its territory. Once a living being trespassed into the area, the treasure would be able to kill the living being with lightning bolts. Lu Ping took 2 more steps toward the lake. At this time there were 3 thunderbolts falling from the sky. They hit Lu Ping's head almost at the same time. However, Lu Ping had the Seven Treasure Thunder Calabash in hand, so he didn't care about this level of attack. But after Lu Ping took a few more steps forward, 5 thunderbolts sounded in the sky almost at the same time. When the 5 thunderbolts fell, they intertwined with each other in the air, unexpectedly forming an even larger blue thunderbolt. Lu Ping looked at the thunderbolt falling from the sky and his expression became slightly serious. This time, the power of the thunderbolt had already exceeded the power of an ordinary minor magical ability. A minor magical ability was naturally nothing to the current Lu Ping. However, at this time, Lu Ping was still several feet away from the lake. Now, a minor magical ability had already appeared. If Lu Ping were to go deeper, would the treasure hidden in the lake use an even more tyrannical magical ability to block Lu Ping's invasion? The Seven Treasure Thunder Calabash was worthy of being called a supreme magic treasure for controlling lightning. Lu Ping directly suspended the Seven Treasure Thunder Calabash above his head and walked all the way to the edge of the lake. The thunderbolts in the sky became more and more concentrated. There were constantly intertwining thunderbolts falling on top of Lu Ping's head, but they were easily dissolved by the Seven Treasure Thunder Calabash. However, as Lu Ping continued to go deeper and closer to the lake, the thunderbolts in the sky suddenly disappeared. Lu Ping was unable to adapt. When he looked up, he saw a purple thunderbolt streaking across the sky. It seemed silent, but in fact, it was directly falling on top of Lu Ping's head. This purple thunderbolt, Lu Ping could clearly feel the huge power contained within it. This was a thunderbolt technique that was no less powerful than a great magical ability. What kind of treasure was hidden in the lake? It could actually summon a great magical ability to protect itself out of thin air. Lu Ping slowly rose into the sky, and a huge 9th-grade lotus bloomed under his feet. This time, the Seven Treasure Thunder Calabash didn't try to devour this thunderbolt. Instead, it spat out a purple thunderbolt, and the two thunderbolts collided in opposite directions. There was no earth-shattering explosion like he had imagined. After the two thunderbolts met in midair, they began to annihilate each other. However, what surprised Lu Ping was that the purple thunderbolt emitted from the lake actually surpassed the Seven Treasure Thunder Calabash's great magical ability, the Seven Treasure Thunder Calabash. After the Seven Treasure Thunder Calabash's purple thunderbolt was completely annihilated, the remaining purple thunderbolt bypassed the Seven Treasure Thunder Calabash and struck towards Lu Ping's body. The ninth-grade white jade lotus under Lu Ping's feet bloomed layer by layer. This weakened purple thunderbolt was only able to penetrate 2 layers of lotus aura chi before it was completely consumed by the third layer. After emitting this purple thunderbolt, the thing hidden in the lake seemed to have consumed a lot of its energy. Lu Ping walked directly to the edge of the lake, but there was no more thunderbolt falling from the sky. Lu Ping's eyes glowed with a blue light, trying to see through the body of the thing hidden in the lake. However, just as Lu Ping used the 3 pure true pupils, a dazzling brilliance suddenly burst out from the bottom of the lake. Lu Ping's eyes hurt, and with a muffled groan he tightly closed his eyes. However, tears were already flowing down his cheeks. After a moment, Lu Ping slowly opened his eyes, and secretly thought that it was a close call. Just now, he was careless and his magical ability was almost broken by the thing at the bottom of the lake. However, what exactly was the thing at the bottom of the lake? This aroused Lu Ping's curiosity even more. Lu Ping slowly squatted down and stretched out his finger to explore the lake. A numb and even tingling feeling spread from Lu Ping's fingertips to his forearm. Lu Ping's eyes showed surprise. The power of thunder and lightning carried by this lake was obviously because of the treasure hidden in the depths of the lake, and after being diluted by this lake with Lu Ping's current physical strength, he could still feel such a clear tingling pain. This more and more proved that the thing hidden in the lake was not simple. What exactly is in the lake? Lu Ping reached out and pointed at the lake, and a clear stream of water rolled up from the lake. Lu Ping's hand gesture changed, and the North Sea 12 Techniques water control technique was launched. This stream of water meandered on the lake, and gradually formed an undercurrent in the lake that was enough to stir up the entire lake. Under the seemingly calm lake, the surging undercurrent allowed Lu Ping and Lu Ping's sense of touch to explore every corner of the lake. However, when Lu Ping controlled the water to gradually explore the thunder ball that emitted countless electric lights in the depths of the lake, the divine sense contained in the water suddenly discovered that the power of thunder and lightning in the water had suddenly increased several times. The true essence contained in the undercurrent that Lu Ping had used the water control technique was being rapidly melted by the power of thunder and lightning. This phenomenon greatly surprised Lu Ping. It must be known that after Lu Ping's true essence had been refined by the profound heavy water and the thousand wonder dew, the quality of his true essence was thick and condensed. Among the cultivators of the same level, there was no second, but now it was easily melted by the power of thunder and lightning that had completely dissolved in the lake water. How could this make Lu Ping relax? Let's see if your power of thunder and lightning will first exhaust my true essence, or if my water control technique will first absorb all the water in this lake. For a time, Lu Ping's competitive spirit was aroused. The profound heavy water had given Lu Ping a thick and condensed true essence, and the thousand wonder dew had made up for Lu Ping's shortcoming of slow true essence recovery. Now, it could be said that Lu Ping did not fear true essence consumption in any situation. Lu Ping used the water control technique and condensed 12 undercurrents at the bottom of the lake, controlling almost all the water in the lake. To do this, Lu Ping consumed nearly 1/3 of his true essence. This was the first time since Lu Ping had refined 2 portions of the thousand wonder dew and advanced to the lake core forging stage. At this moment, Lu Ping's hand seals suddenly changed. The most profound of the North Sea's 12 techniques, the art of changing seas and mulberry fields, replaced the water control technique. The entire lake suddenly shook. The art of changing seas and mulberry fields was a magical ability that Lu Ping had yet to fully grasp. It was only after Lu Ping advanced to the late core forging stage that he was able to study this magical ability. As soon as he used it, the entire lake first trembled, and then the entire lake suddenly boiled. 12 undercurrents soared up from the surface of the lake, suddenly draining 2/3 of the lake's total water. However, Lu Ping's art of changing seas and mulberry fields didn't stop there. After the 12 undercurrents were drawn away from the lake's area continued to shrink, and the lake's surface continued to drop. Hidden at the bottom of the lake was a ball of white lightning entwined with electric light, faintly revealing a trace of its movements. After Lu Ping's art of changing seas and mulberry fields was shaken by the white light of the ball of lightning, he didn't look at the bottom of the lake again. At this time the entire lake was about to be drained by him. At an unknown time, a white jade lotus had already floated in the middle of the lake, directly above the area where the ball of lightning was located. Although Lu Ping's art of changing seas and mulberry fields hadn't been cultivated to the large success stage, it wasn't difficult to use it to drain the entire lake's water. Although this was already an extremely great ability for cultivators of the same level. At this time, the ball of lightning in the middle of the lake seemed to have sensed the approaching crisis. Suddenly, a purple light appeared in the ball of lightning, and then a purple lightning shot out from the ball of lightning again, about to strike Lu Ping, who was performing the art of changing seas and mulberry fields at the most critical moment. However, before this lightning could fall, the white jade lotus floating above the ball of lightning suddenly bloomed. 12 gentian beads emitting colorful light fell in different directions. Lu Ping's natal gentian formation was instantly set up. After spitting out purple lightning again, the ball of lightning was in a weakened state in one fell swoop. Lu Ping stepped into the gentian formation. Without looking at the purple lightning that was falling towards his head, he said in a deep voice, "Ding Hai." With the 9th rank white jade lotus as the center and the 12 gentian beads as the fulcrum, the entire gentian formation suddenly shook. The purple lightning that fell in midair was instantly shaken, and at the same time, the huge ball of lightning at the bottom of the lake was also suppressed. Chapter 667. Lu Ping activated his life source gentian formation. At this time, whether it was the lake water that was rolling up in the air or the thunder ball that was wrapped in a ball of lightning at the bottom of the lake, as Lu Ping spoke these two words, the entire space seemed to come to a standstill. The lake water maintained a state of reverse flow, and the thunder ball that was emitting from the lake water that could melt the Zhenyuan within Lu Ping's body was also suddenly isolated. Lu Ping could sense that the suppressed thunder ball had an extremely strong thunder power that was expanding outwards, wanting to break free from the shackles of the 12 gentian formation. However, Lu Ping's life source gentian formation had been refined by him for dozens of years, and he had never used this ability even in extremely dangerous times. How could this kind of formation be so easily broken? With Lu Ping's current strength he could completely destroy this thunder ball, but Lu Ping knew that there must be another treasure wrapped in this thunder ball. Previously, when Lu Ping used the 3 pure true pupils, his vision was blocked by the thunder ball's electric light, but Lu Ping was still able to sense something inside the thunder ball. Previously, the thunder ball had used the lake water to melt Lu Ping's Zhenyuan, but now the situation had reversed, and it was Lu Ping who was constantly using his life source formation to constantly consume the thunder power in the thunder ball. This was also why Lu Ping, with his vigorous and thick Zhenyuan, as well as his tyrannical Zhenyuan regeneration ability, was still able to compete with this thunder ball for a long time, even though he was using his life source gentian formation. Under the suppression of the life source formation, the thunder ball struggled left and right, but it was unable to break through the obstruction of the life source formation. On the contrary, in the process of the thunder ball's impact, the thunder power was constantly consumed, and the thunder ball's volume was also becoming smaller and smaller. From the previous 3 feet in diameter, it was gradually reduced to only 1 foot in size, and the electric light on the thunder ball's surface was also becoming thinner and thinner. Lu Ping looked at the right opportunity, his hands continuously changed signs, and a 5-colored light swept across the surface of the thunder ball, each time taking away a piece of electric light. Gradually, the thunder ball shrank again, and the electric light also disappeared. In front of Lu Ping there was only a sweet spring-like water ball. Lu Ping looked surprised and his divine sense slowly approached the water ball, but suddenly there was a burst of electric light in the water ball. Suddenly Lu Ping felt a numbing pain in his divine sense, and his head also felt dizzy. Immediately after, the life source gentian formation also showed a trace of relaxation, but it was only for a moment before Lu Ping recovered. However, just as Lu Ping let his guard down, a tiny purple electric bolt burst out from the water ball again. The electric bolt broke 3 layers of the life elemental array's protective shield. When Lu Ping regained his senses, the water ball almost escaped from his grasp. This was also because of Lu Ping's divine sense, which was far superior to that of other adepts of the same level, that he was able to recover so quickly under the sudden attack of the thunder ball. If it had been anyone else, that attack would have been enough to make them dizzy for half a day, and by then the water ball would have broken through the formation and escaped without a trace. Not only did this water ball contain the power of thunder and lightning, but it could also form a ball of electric light to protect itself. At the same time, it could also automatically release a purple electric light that was no less powerful than the power of a great power, and the power of the thunder could even attack divine sense. All these magical effects proved in Lu Ping's heart that the existence of a unique spiritual item was the thunder punishment liquid. When Dharma adepts faced their tribulations, the thunder in the sky would condense to its limit and form a few drops of thunder punishment liquid, hidden in the dark clouds of the tribulation. However, although the thunder punishment liquid would form when the tribulation lightning descended, when the adepts went through their own tribulations, they were often faced with a life and death crisis. How would they have the spare time to search for the thunder punishment liquid in the dark clouds of the tribulation lightning? Furthermore, every time a practitioner went through a tribulation, the amount of thunder punishment liquid that could be condensed was usually a few pitiful drops. Even if they were found without a certain amount of accumulation, these few drops of thunder punishment liquid would not be of much use. As such, only those who were exceptionally talented and had enough accumulation, and believed that they would have no problem passing the tribulation lightning, would have the leisure to search for the thunder punishment liquid in the dark clouds of the tribulation lightning. All these reasons led to the scarcity of the thunder punishment liquid. Only those sects with a long history of inheritance, with generations of highly skilled Dharma adepts, could accumulate enough thunder punishment liquid over a long period of time, when a Dharma adept was in a life and death situation during a Dharma adept's tribulations. Thunder punishment liquid, a high-grade heaven-level water attribute peerless spirit item. It was unknown how many generations of Laozu of the Ying-Tian faction had risked their lives to collect it from the dark clouds of the tribulation lightning. There were a total of 36 drops, an entire set of spirit items. Faced with a high-grade heaven-level spirit item, Lu Ping's heart suddenly did not have the ecstasy he felt when he saw such a rare treasure. All that was left was a silent silence. This precious treasure, which was formed from the blood, sweat and tears of generations of Ying-Tian faction's Dharma adepts, had been taken away by Lu Ping, a nobody who had nothing to do with the Ying-Tian faction. Lu Ping's heart was suddenly filled with a deep sense of sorrow. This sorrow was a memorial to the end of an era, but it also seemed to be a sense of helplessness towards the unpredictable future. The dead were gone. Although the name of the Ying-Tian faction had been lost in the passage of time, the legacy of the Ying-Tian faction had not been broken. At least, Junling would carry this legacy forward. This could also be considered a form of consolation to the previous generations of the Ying-Tian faction. Lu Ping sighed silently. Only now did he realize that although he had completely suppressed this ball of thunder punishment liquid, what could he use to collect it? At this moment, the thunder punishment liquid looked like a ball of flowing water, but in reality, it was unusually violent. Normal treasures could be stored for a short period of time, but once it was stored for a long period of time, these treasures would definitely be damaged. No matter how much Lu Ping thought about it, he could not think of any treasures on him that would not be affected by the power of the lightning contained within the thunder punishment liquid. At this moment, the 7 thunder treasures calabash that had been floating above Lu Ping's head suddenly began to spin rapidly. The mouth of the calabash had already opened, and it let out a woo-woo sound. Lu Ping looked at the 7 thunder treasures calabash above his head, and then looked at the thunder punishment liquid that was still slowly flowing in all directions under the suppression of the life gentian formation. Lu Ping extended his hand and called the 7 thunder treasures calabash into his hand. The mouth of the calabash sucked in the thunder punishment liquid, and the ball of water suddenly shook. Then, from the ball of water, there was a dense burst of lightning, as if it was resisting the 7 thunder treasures calabash's absorption of the thunder punishment liquid. At this time, Lu Ping did not care about whether or not the thunder punishment liquid could be spat out after it was swallowed by the 7 thunder treasures calabash. He had spent too much time searching for and subduing the thunder punishment liquid. During this time, he didn't know how many treasures had already been found by others in this central palace. Lu Ping once again poured his true essence into the thunder calabash, and the suction of the 7 thunder treasures calabash increased. The thunder punishment liquid was no longer able to resist the absorption of the 7 thunder treasures calabash. Finally, the thunder punishment liquid was slowly absorbed by the 7 thunder treasures calabash, and finally condensed into water droplets. Lu Ping shook the thunder calabash in his hand, and the sound of flowing water echoed out from within. Lu Ping secretly let out a sigh of relief. The thunder punishment liquid was not like the other heaven and earth treasures. After it was swallowed by the thunder calabash, it would be decomposed and consumed to enhance the thunder calabash's power. This was a high-grade heaven-step peerless spiritual treasure, and also a water attribute one at that. Lu Ping naturally had a great idea in his heart. If the thunder calabash and the other heaven and earth treasures were smelted to enhance his own power, then Lu Ping would die of regret. At this time, the thunder calabash and the thunder punishment liquid seemed to have formed a kind of symbiotic tacit understanding. With the assistance of the thunder punishment liquid, the thunder calabash's power would undoubtedly increase, and the thunder punishment liquid could also use the power of thunder and lightning within the thunder punishment liquid to supplement its own consumption. Subduing the thunder punishment liquid had consumed far too much of Lu Ping's true essence and energy. Because he didn't want to damage the thunder punishment liquid, Lu Ping had no choice but to use the stupidest method possible. He used the water control art to drain the entire lake of water, and then sacrificed his own life source magic weapon to compete with the thunder and lightning on the surface of the thunder punishment liquid. In this way, the thunder punishment liquid's power was almost completely consumed, and he finally obtained a complete portion of the thunder punishment liquid. After losing the control of Lu Ping's water control art, the lake water that had been swept back into the lake, splashing up a muddy mess. Waves of water vapor spread in all directions, giving the desert a different kind of vitality. Lu Ping didn't stay any longer and quickly left the desert. This Heaven's Grotto Heaven was the most important inheritance space of the Surplus Heavens faction, and who knew how many secrets were hidden inside. For the sake of this high-grade heaven-step peerless spiritual treasure, Lu Ping had clearly wasted too much time. In another unknown place in this Heaven's Grotto Heaven, Jiang Tianlin and Laozu had used some unknown method to unexpectedly meet up with spiritual master Xianqin. Just as Lu Ping subdued the lightning tribulation water, spiritual master Xianqin, who was calculating something in his hand, suddenly raised his head and said, "Senior brother Jiang, another treasure that was used to guard the palace has been removed." Jiang Tianlin and Laozu were currently playing with a purple bamboo pole in their hands, and the surface of the pole occasionally flashed with purple lightning. Hearing this, they said, "What, you still can't find the whereabouts of that item?" Spiritual Master Xianqin shook his head and said, "There are a total of 4 palace spirits, 1 main and 3 auxiliary. This purple lightning bamboo has already been obtained by senior brother, and the other auxiliary spirit has already been removed, so only the last auxiliary spirit is left. Only after this treasure has been removed will the traces of the main spirit be revealed." Jiang Tianlin and Laozu put away the purple lightning bamboo in their hands and said, "In this Heaven's Grotto Heaven, a high-grade spiritual treasure can only be used as an auxiliary spirit, so I really don't know what the main spirit is. Could it really be the legendary Pure Yang Soul?" At this moment, Jiang Tianlin and Laozu seemed to have suddenly thought of something and asked, "Since junior sister can see that the palace spirit in this Heaven's Grotto Heaven is not ordinary, then can the other two also discover something wrong?" Chapter 668. Not in the past but now the two of them became famous before me. Their knowledge and insight are not inferior to mine. So, when senior brother plucked out this purple thunder bamboo and obtained the first palace guardian spirit, the other two must have already sensed that something was wrong in the heavenly abode and began to calculate the location of the palace guardian spirit. Spiritual Master Xianqin thought about it and said with some uncertainty. Jiang Tianlin Laozu nodded and said, "Maybe the second palace spirit was one of them. So there is still a third palace spirit that has not been pulled out. Junior martial sister, have you determined its location?" Spiritual Master Xianqin gestured on the formation plate in his hand for a long time before saying, "It is roughly in the southeast, but the distance is too far. I'm afraid that before we arrive, the cultivators of the other sects will have already discovered the existence of the palace spirit." Patriarch Jiang Tianlin smiled and said, "It's fine. We can also explore the other legacies of the Surplus Heavens faction along the way. In just a little more than 2 hours, I have already collected 2 complete legacies of cultivation techniques from this Grotto Heaven. There are also dozens of secret cultivation manuals of magic techniques and magic techniques. Among them there are 3 sets of great magic techniques. As for the other treasures, there is no need to mention them. I believe that the cultivators of the other sects might not have gained less than us." After subduing the lightning tribulation water, Lu Ping quickly walked out of the desert. He could vaguely feel that there seemed to be some changes in the surroundings, but when he carefully looked around he found nothing. In the end he had no choice but to continue moving forward. Although he could not fly, Lu Ping's speed was still not comparable to that of a mortal. In just 10 minutes, Lu Ping had already walked out of the desert. At this moment, Lu Ping suddenly felt that the surroundings had changed again. When he looked around, he found nothing. Lu Ping suddenly became suspicious. The feeling in the cave was very similar to the feeling he had when he collected the lightning tribulation water. Could it be that there was some unknown change in the cave? Before Lu Ping could think more, after absorbing the lightning tribulation water, the 7-treasure lightning calabash, which was quiet for a moment as if it had eaten and drunk enough, suddenly convulsed on top of Lu Ping's head. Lu Ping originally thought that it was because the lightning tribulation water was in the lightning calabash. However, when Lu Ping sent his divine sense into the lightning calabash, he found that it was not the calm lightning tribulation water that caused the lightning calabash to convulse, but a dense purple gas. Lu Ping's heart moved. He remembered that when he was observing Laozu's tribulation, the purple pure yang gas that almost burned Lu Ping to ashes. The pure yang gas on that day had been refined into a cloud of dense gas under the joint encirclement of Lu Ping's thick true essence and the Ginshan's life source formation, including the 7-treasure lightning calabash and the Ginshan's life source formation. After that, the 14 magic weapons each swallowed the dense gas and returned it to Lu Ping's true essence. Not only did it make Lu Ping's cultivation greatly improved, but the true essence in his body also had a trace of purple from the previous blue. As Lu Ping's cultivation gradually deepened, this trace of purple also became more and more vigorous. Could it be that the 7-treasure lightning calabash was making such a big movement because of the purple pure yang gas it had absorbed that day? Lu Ping held a gentian bead in his hand and suddenly felt an eager throbbing from the gentian bead. However, the gentian bead did not have the same spiritual nature as the 7-treasure lightning calabash, but this was enough for Lu Ping to perceive that the attraction between the gentian bead and the 7-treasure lightning calabash must have something to do with the purple pure yang gas. Thinking of the purple pure yang gas that day, Lu Ping still had a lingering fear in his heart. It was just a small source of qi that was inadvertently released during celestial phenomenon Laozu's tribulation, but it almost took Lu Ping's life. What he did not know was that the pure yang gas that gathered around celestial phenomenon Laozu during the tribulation was something that even celestial phenomenon Laozu did not want to provoke. Instead, he let the pure yang gas wrap around his body. When celestial phenomenon Laozu's giant ape emerged from the celestial river of lightning, the pure yang gas that wrapped around his body had already been purified by the tribulation lightning and turned into source qi that could be absorbed by cultivators. On the other side of the cave, Jiang Tianlin Laozu, with the help of perfected Xianxin, had just swept away a batch of high-quality spiritual materials that the Ying Tian sect had left behind from a stone cave. Many of them were second-grade mutated spiritual materials that could be used to forge treasures, and they even found 3 top-grade spiritual materials. Among them, there were also many rare spiritual materials that could be used to forge alchemy furnaces and crafting furnaces. Just as the two of them were about to move on to the next place, a strange change occurred in the cave for the 3rd time, causing Jiang Tianlin Laozu to stop in his tracks. Perfected Xianxin said in surprise, "So fast, the 3rd secondary spirit has also been removed by someone. I wonder if it was Qian Daofeng or the one from the Shuiyan Pavilion." Jiang Tianlin Laozu's expression was solemn as he said, "It doesn't matter which of the 2 sects obtained the secondary spirit. What's important is that it is extremely difficult for a formation master without the help of a Dharma manifestation stage cultivator to obtain a high-grade heaven-level spiritual item. Although it is not impossible, it is extremely difficult. That means that they also have talismans similar to teleportation talismans in their hands. That is why they were able to avoid the influence of the cave space and teleport the 2 of them to another area in the cave." Perfected Xianxin thought about the process of the 2 of them subduing the purple thunder bamboo. This purple thunder bamboo could actually unleash a great thunder technique. If Jiang Tianlin Laozu had not been by their side, Perfected Xianxin, who was a late core forging stage cultivator, would have been unable to withstand the sudden attack. If that's the case, then the location of the main spirit should have been revealed by now. The array disc in Perfected Xuanxin's hand was already floating in mid-air. Perfected Xianxin, who had been calculating with one hand on the array disc, was now completely focused on the array disc. Both of his hands moved at the same time, waving rapidly on the array disc. Even beads of sweat appeared on Perfected Xuanxin's forehead. How could he care about Jiang Tianlin Laozu's question? After the time it took for half an incense stick to burn, Perfected Xianxin flicked the fine beads of sweat on his forehead and said, "I've finally found its tracks. However, Senior Jiang, we need to hurry over. The third bureau's secondary spirit is unusually fast. Perhaps Qian Daofeng and the others have already noticed the palace guardian spirit. If we are late, I'm afraid someone will beat us to it. Jiang Tianlin Laozu's expression was serious. He stuck 2 talismans on his legs. They were ordinary divine movement talismans. However, in this space where flying was forbidden, these 2 divine movement talismans were extremely suitable. Jiang Tianlin Laozu and Perfected Xianxin flew in the direction that Perfected Xianxin had pointed, kicking up a cloud of dust on the ground. In the desert, in front of the lake that Lu Ping had previously encountered, Qian Daofeng and Feng Shutao looked at the still turbulent lake water with ashen faces. When the 2 of them had just arrived near the lake, Qian Daofeng had already sensed that the third secondary spirit had been removed by someone. When Jiang Tianlin Laozu had removed the first palace guardian spirit with Perfected Xuanqin's help, Qian Daofeng had already noticed that something was wrong. During the calculation process, the second palace guardian spirit had also been removed by Lu Ping under the guidance of the Thunder Calabash. By now, Qian Daofeng had already calculated the locations of the 3 secondary spirits. However, unlike Perfected Xianxin, Qian Daofeng did not have the Ying Tian Sex Formation Inheritance book that Lu Ping had given her as a reference. After calculating the locations of the 3 secondary spirits, Qian Daofeng was unable to calculate the location of the unremoved secondary spirit. Left with no other choice, Feng Sudao and Qian Daofeng hurried toward the secondary spirit land closest to them. However, their luck wasn't so good. Lu Ping had already gotten there before them, and at the same time the third secondary spirit land was also removed. Xianling sect only had 1 array formation grandmaster, and 3 auxiliary spiritual lands, but none of them. Just as Feng Shutao was about to leave dejectedly, Qian Daofeng suddenly exclaimed in surprise. A Dharma treasure that looked like a formation plate appeared in front of her. Feng Shutao fiddled with it for a while, then shook his head. No, there's a big mystery here. Feng Shutao looked at the Dharma treasure in front of Qian Daofeng and saw that it was densely packed with runic patterns. Feng Shutao was confused and could only look at Qian Daofeng with a questioning gaze. However, he realized that Qian Daofeng seemed to have gone mad. Qian Daofeng only focused on the Dharma treasure and ignored Feng Shutao. After a while, Qian Daofeng came to a sudden realization and said, I see. The 3 places where the palace guardian spirits were located were only 3 places to hide the real palace guardian spirit. I was almost tricked by the surplus heavens sect. Feng Shutao perked up and said, Secondary spirit lands? Does that mean that the main spirit hasn't been found yet? Previously, in the space where the 3 small palaces were located, the spirits of the palaces were all Dharma power souls formed by the condensation of a mid-Dharma adept. Who knew what kind of treasure the spirits of the palaces would be in the final inheritance cave of the Yingtian dojo? Could it be a Dharma soul formed by a late Dharma adept? Why can't it be a pure Yang soul? Qian Daofeng, who was calculating the location of the palace guardian spirit, said casually. Then he once again focused on the ever-changing runic patterns on the Dharma treasure. Feng Shutao, on the other hand, was stunned speechless after hearing Qian Daofeng's unintentional words. In a stone valley in the cave, a group of 3 practitioners from the Shuiyan Pavilion gathered together. 2 of them, including Dharma Laozu from the Shuiyan Pavilion, were focused on a female practitioner who was sitting cross-legged in the middle. This person was the only formation master of the Shuiyan Pavilion. After a long time, this person let out a long sigh of relief and said to the Dharma adept from the Shuiyan Pavilion, Senior sister, it seems that there is still a real palace guardian spirit in this cave. Now, I have roughly found its whereabouts. If someone was able to look down from an extremely high place in this cave, they would see that the practitioners from the Jinling sect, Xianling sect, and Shuiyan Pavilion were all moving towards the same destination from different directions. These 3 sects might have already anticipated that there would be other sects moving towards their destination as well. However, the practitioners from these 3 sects would never have imagined that before they had even calculated the location of the real palace guardian spirit, there was already someone in front of them heading towards the location of the palace guardian spirit. Chapter 669. Lu Ping did not know that there were 3 groups of people rushing in the same direction as him. The 7 treasures thunder gourd was too eye-catching, so Lu Ping took out a gentian pearl and followed the faint guiding force of the gentian pearl as he sped towards the unknown location. Along the way, Lu Ping also found a few places that seemed to have hidden treasures. Unfortunately, Every time Lu Ping stopped, the trace of pure yang qi in the gentian pearl would go crazy and rush around the interior of the gentian pearl. From afar, a pearl that was glowing in 5 different colors would jump up and down for no reason, as if it was haunted. With no other choice, Lu Ping could only remember the location and let De Bao out again, allowing him to move on his own. Meanwhile, Lu Ping continued to move forward. Because Jinren Xianxin had received some of the formation inheritance from the Ying Tian sect from Lu Ping, she had advanced to become a formation master in the shortest amount of time. After the appearance of the 3 secondary spirit lands, she was the first person to calculate the location of the true spirit of the palace. Therefore, in terms of speed, the 2 people Jinling were slightly faster than Xianling sect and Shuiyan Pavilion. Jinren Xianxin worriedly asked Patriarch Jiang Tianlin, who was sprinting. Senior brother, legend has it that the pure yang soul is a Dharma soul that can only be condensed by a Dharma adept at the peak of the Dharma stage. It contains a Dharma soul of a Dharma adept at the peak of the Dharma stage, and it also contains the experiences of a Dharma adept at the peak of the Dharma stage. It even includes the experiences of a great adept at the peak of the Dharma stage, big and small. Everything that he has seen and heard is a detailed history of the growth of a great adept at the peak of the Dharma stage. However, it is extremely difficult to obtain the inheritance of the pure yang soul. The adept must go through a tribulation and nurture pure yang qi in the Dharma stage. Only then can the adept completely inherit the pure yang soul. Senior brother, you have already inherited the Dharma soul of a mid-Dharma adept. However, senior brother, you are only an early Dharma adept after all. Jiang Tianlin Laozu thought for a moment and said, I have not thought about this either. However, even if I cannot inherit it, I have to see if I can subdue it and bring it back to our sect's mid-Dharma adept who has gone through the tribulation to inherit it. Especially Uncle Master Tian Kong, he only has less than 200 years of life left. If he inherits it and is able to break through the tribulation to reach the mid-Dharma stage and become our sect's second great adept, then he will have another 300 years of life left. Jinren Xianxin was still worried and said, if what you say is true, that would be for the best. However, I am just afraid that the Ying Tian sect has set up a trap for the spirit of the palace. If the spirit of the palace can only be subdued and not taken away, then what should we do? Jiang Tianlin Laozu laughed coldly and said, if that is the case, then there is no other way but to destroy it. Destroy it? Jinren Xianxin was stunned for a moment and then said in shock, that is the crystallization of a peak Dharma adept's lifetime of training. Destroying it just like that would be such a waste. Jiang Tianlin Laozu said firmly, so what? We cannot let it fall into the hands of other adepts. Don't forget, this is not the North Sea, but the border between the North Ice Fields and Central Plains. In the North Sea, mid-Dharma adepts who can be regarded as masters of the sect may exist in some of the smaller sects in Central Plains. Any one of them can find this place after we leave and immediately inherit the pure yang soul. Jinren Xianxin sighed and did not say anything else. He knew that what Jiang Tianlin Laozu had said was correct. At this time, Jiang Tianlin Laozu suddenly laughed and said, Junior sister, actually, the real spirit of the palace may not be the pure yang soul. If it is the Dharma essence of a late Dharma adept, then we have a chance to subdue it. Jinren Xianxin said softly, let's hope so. However, Jinren Xianxin knew in his heart that the 3 secondary spirits of the palace were already high-grade heaven-level spiritual objects. As such, as the true treasure of the palace's guardian spirit, its spirituality would definitely surpass that of the other 3 secondary spirits. As such, it was most likely that the true guardian spirit of the palace was a pure yang soul at the peak of the Dharma stage. Lu Ping looked at the low but undulating hills in front of him, which gave Lu Ping a lot of visual impact. However, the rapidly vibrating 5-colored light in front of Lu Ping clearly told Lu Ping that the thing he was looking for was in the middle of these hills. Now that they were getting closer, Lu Ping could clearly feel the attraction of the gentian pearl in front of him getting stronger and stronger. It even felt like it was leaving Lu Ping's control and was searching for it alone. It was a pity that he had already let De Bao out. Otherwise, if De Bao was here, he would be needed now. Lu Ping followed the inexplicable suction force coming from the origin chin bead and stepped into the hill. Suddenly, he felt the true essence in his body was also being pulled by an inexplicable force. Although this force was so weak that it was negligible, Lu Ping could clearly feel this inexplicable suction force. Just like the Gentian Pearl and the 7 Treasures Thunder Calabash, the reason Lu Ping's inner Yuan also felt the attraction was probably because of the pure Yang Qi that had been filtered into the core space of the golden elixir through the 7 Treasures Thunder Calabash and the natal Gentian formation. With the guidance of his own inner yuan, Lu Ping took back the gentian pearl and found a door completely made of stone in front of a relatively tall hill in the middle of this hill. Lu Ping looked at the yellow light curtain of prohibition at the door and could not help but frown. Fortunately, there was no one else here. The forbidden technique that Lu Ping had obtained from Failing Mountain could be used here without worry. In addition, when such an obvious door was set up, it was obvious that there was no intention to prohibit others from entering. Therefore, Lu Ping easily broke the weakened prohibition and entered the door. Behind the door was a long corridor. After walking through the long corridor, Lu Ping found that the entire belly of the hill had been hollowed out. An abyss in the ground seemed to be directly connected to the broken space outside the field. Once Lu Ping fell in, unless he had the cultivation of the Dharma stage and could tear the space apart, there was a chance that he could survive. A stone bridge that was 1 foot wide and 180 feet long crossed the abyss and connected to the other end of the corridor. On the other end of the stone wall, a small stone hall had been hollowed out. In the middle of the stone hall there was a flight of steps. At the end of the steps was a seat carved out of stone. On the seat, there was a ball of light that flickered, causing Lu Ping to be unable to see what was hidden in the light from the other side of the abyss. However, just as Lu Ping looked at the ball of light, the circulation speed of the inner yuan in his body suddenly doubled. In the core space, the natal gentian array and the Thunder 7 Treasures calabash seemed to have sensed it and began to tremble in the core space. The Thunder 7 Treasures calabash, in particular, even felt as though it was about to jump out of the core space. This made Lu Ping very angry. He secretly decided that after the matter at Yingtian Dojo was over, he would definitely refine the Thunder 7 Treasures calabash and have it firmly in his hands. Green light flashed in Lu Ping's eyes. He then shook his head with an expression of wanting to cry and laugh. There were countless forbidden space arrays in the stone bridge that was 1 foot wide. These arrays were intertwined and intertwined. If one tried to break them, there was a high chance that this huge mountain would completely collapse. From the looks of it, he could only cross this stone bridge. However, he did not know what kind of test the cultivators from Yingtian faction had left behind on this stone bridge. At that moment, Lu Ping had no choice but to leave. He had already spent too much time on his journey. If he were to turn back now, it would not be worth it. Not to mention, the treasure was right before his eyes. If he did not go and check it out, Lu Ping would not be satisfied. The moment Lu Ping stepped onto the stone bridge, he felt his entire body tremble. From top to bottom, from the outside to the inside, a pressure seemed to be coming from countless directions. However, Lu Ping did not mind it. Although the pressure was there, it clearly could not affect Lu Ping in the slightest. At that very moment, however, Lu Ping gained a slight understanding of the stone bridge's test. It would appear that this test was not just a test of the cultivator's cultivation base. It was also a test of the cultivator's fleshly body. Lu Ping took 5 steps forward in a row. When he took the 6th step, the pressure on his body doubled once more. Similarly, the pressure was also coming from various directions. Rather, Lu Ping could feel his internal organs swelling outwards. Lu Ping did not utilize any primary energy. Instead, he relied solely on his fleshly body's strength to take 20 steps forward in one breath's time. After taking the 21st step, Lu Ping's fleshly body could no longer endure the pressure coming from all directions. Primary energy flowed through his meridians and the pressure on Lu Ping's body was instantly dispelled. By then, the pressure had increased by 16 times compared to the previous one. As Lu Ping continued to strengthen his primary energy to resist the pressure, Lu Ping took another 20 steps forward. By then he was standing in the center of the stone bridge. The bridge was 1 chi wide and there were no guardrails on either side. Suddenly, Lu Ping felt as though he would fall at any moment. Lu Ping steadied himself and his primary energy suddenly overflowed. Lu Ping's entire body turned bluish-purple in color. After that, Lu Ping took the 41st step. After taking just 5 steps, Lu Ping's body was suddenly enveloped by 7 layers of protective astral energy. When he took the 51st step, the water-controlling flag was already hovering above Lu Ping's head. After taking another 5 steps, Lu Ping could only helplessly put on the Cloudlight 5 Elements robe. The pressure on Lu Ping's body was greatly reduced. After taking another 10 steps, he finally stopped after taking the 66th step. At this time, Lu Ping's entire body was already soaked in sweat. However, the end of the stone bridge was already in sight. Lu Ping took 2 deep breaths and a white jade lotus flashed under his feet. The white jade lotus bloomed layer by layer, resonating with the 7 layers of protective astral energy around Lu Ping's body. By relying on Lu Ping's life source magic weapon, Lu Ping finally took the 66th step. After taking the 70th step, looking at the remaining 10 steps, Lu Ping suddenly discovered a weakness that he had been neglecting in his cultivation. That was, Lu Ping's primary energy was vigorous and pure enough, but it could not reach the explosive level. Chapter 670. Among the spells that Lu Ping had practiced, there were spells that could suddenly increase the power of the attack. Lu Ping's inner yuan output was also strong enough, but compared to Lu Ping's inner yuan, which was thick, pure and endless, the flaw of his inner yuan not being explosive enough was exposed. Under normal circumstances, this flaw would not be obvious, because no matter if it was a practitioner of the same level or a practitioner below the Dharma stage, almost no one could force Lu Ping to use spells that would greatly damage his inner yuan, or even cause damage to both sides. However, on this stone bridge facing these last 10 steps, this flaw of Lu Ping's was magnified infinitely. Lu Ping fully activated the natal gentian formation, and with great difficulty, once again transferred part of the pressure on his body to the formation. Then Lu Ping was finally able to take a step forward. After 5 consecutive steps, Lu Ping's legs were trembling, and his body had reached its limit. There were only 5 more steps left, and in Lu Ping's eyes, it seemed to be an insurmountable chasm. At this time, Lu Ping could see the ball of light on the stone seat at the end of the stone bridge very clearly. This ball of light was very similar to the Dharma Power Soul that Jianghu had previously captured, except that the Dharma Power Soul in front of Lu Ping looked even more crystal clear, and its entire body seemed to be emitting a warm aura, so that Lu Ping could vaguely feel it even while he was still on the stone bridge. Zhang Shi, Feng Shutao, and Jiang Tianlin Laozu had all obtained Dharma Power Souls from mid-Dharma adepts. Could it be that this Dharma Power Soul was of a higher quality than the ones that Jiang Tianlin Laozu and the others had obtained? Did that not mean that this Dharma Power Soul could possibly be the Dharma Power Soul of a late Dharma adept? No, he had to get his hands on this item. The temptation of the Dharma Power Soul of a late Dharma adept filled Lu Ping with energy. With a loud shout, Lu Ping struggled to take the 76th step, amidst the creaking sounds of his bones. With this step, Lu Ping's entire body seemed to be compressed into a ball, and all the bones in his body felt like they were about to break. Intense pain swept through his entire body in an instant. There was only the ball of light in front of Lu Ping's eyes. The golden elixir in the space of his heart vibrated rapidly, and an endless stream of inner yuan flowed into his blood vessels. The 12 gentian pearls around Lu Ping's body and the 9th grade white jade lotus beneath his feet shone brightly, slightly alleviating the pain in Lu Ping's body. Lu Ping took the opportunity to take the 72nd step. With a dull thud, Lu Ping's right leg slammed heavily onto the stone bridge. Blood flowed out of Lu Ping's mouth, nose, and ears. The gentian pearls that were emitting a colorful glow flickered. From afar, it looked like a candle that was about to be extinguished at any moment. On the 78th step, Lu Ping could no longer contain the injuries in his body. Blood spurted out of his mouth and Lu Ping's face turned deathly pale. At this time, close to half of Lu Ping's inner yuan had been injected into his legs, so that Lu Ping could still stand straight. However, both of Lu Ping's arms had long been broken, and he did not know how many of his ribs had been broken. However, when Lu Ping took this step, he suddenly realized that the situation did not get any worse. Lu Ping's divine will was constantly monitoring the development of the injuries in his body. This was also the main reason why Lu Ping could still dare to move forward despite his serious injuries. Under the situation where Lu Ping's whole body was under heavy pressure from countless directions, traces of medicinal power hidden in Lu Ping's skin, flesh, and blood began to gradually repair Lu Ping's damaged body. It didn't take long for Lu Ping to understand what was going on. These medicinal efficacies were the medicinal efficacies that couldn't be fully absorbed by Lu Ping's body after he consumed the golden resilience pellets, bone-forging pellets, and other spirit pellets that could strengthen his body. Now that Lu Ping's body was seriously injured, these medicinal power hidden in his body were squeezed out and began to automatically repair Lu Ping's damaged body. Lu Ping knew that if he could overcome this hurdle today, his physical cultivation would undoubtedly improve to the next level. He might even achieve a breakthrough and reach the level of an upper-grade Dharma treasure. Once Lu Ping's physical cultivation could reach the level of an upper-grade Dharma treasure, then Lu Ping's stockpile of ashwood pure jade fruit, 9th-grade white jade lotus root, lotus seed, and other elixirs that could originally only be refined and consumed when Lu Ping's cultivation reached the Dharma stage, with Lu Ping's current master-level alchemy skills, he could use them now. If Lu Ping could increase the strength of his physical body to the level of a top-grade Dharma treasure after he advanced to the Dharma stage, then when Lu Ping advanced to the Dharma stage, he could use the spirit chi to refine his body and raise his physical cultivation to the level of a Dharma treasure. This would be of great help to Lu Ping in passing the Dharma catastrophe in the future. However, these thoughts flashed through Lu Ping's mind. Now he was only 2 steps away from crossing the stone bridge. However, these last 2 steps made Lu Ping feel powerless. The inner yuan in his body did not show any signs of depletion even after refining the Wonder Dew. This was the biggest reason why Lu Ping was determined to continue taking the risk. Mobilizing the inner yuan in his body as much as possible to protect his internal organs, Lu Ping resolutely took the 79th step. However, before his foot landed, a force had already broken through the inner yuan that Lu Ping had used to protect his internal organs. Lu Ping's internal organs shook, and a mouthful of blood had already spilled over his clothes. Just as Lu Ping's foot landed, waves of tearing pain came from his arms and back. The muscles in his arms and back had already been torn into countless pieces under the tearing of this unknown but omnipresent force. As he took the last step, sweat rolled down his body, even covering Lu Ping's eyes. His arms hung down. Lu Ping was no longer able to control his arms. Relying on the guidance of his divine sense, Lu Ping relied on his obsession to take this last step. Gotcha. The left leg that had landed first was no longer able to withstand the heavy pressure that came from all directions, and it instantly snapped. In the moment that Lu Ping fell, the intense pain caused Lu Ping's consciousness to immediately recover a trace of clarity. His right leg rapidly followed, and in the instant that his right leg also snapped, he finally crossed this last hurdle. The weight that came from all directions instantly disappeared, and the sudden disappearance of the pressure caused Lu Ping's body to instantly switch between extreme weight and extreme lightness. Lu Ping's heart suddenly skipped a beat, and his complexion suddenly turned to purple gold. At this moment, Lu Ping's complexion finally changed, and a trace of panic appeared in his eyes. However, Lu Ping instantly sobered up. He withdrew all his divine sense and immersed it into the core space. On the surface of the withered golden core, the 7 four-legged strange dragons that were on the verge of death, under the stimulation of Lu Ping's divine sense, suddenly recovered a trace of vitality. The 7 strange dragons swam on the surface of the golden core, and a trace of Zhen Yuan radiated from the golden core. Then, the 7 strange dragons suddenly looked up to the sky and silently roared. The golden core in the core space suddenly shook, and Lu Ping's heart also shook. Lu Ping's Zhen Yuan immediately flowed smoothly, and the purple gold color on his face slowly faded. Lu Ping, who had fallen to the ground, finally let out a long sigh of relief. Right now, Lu Ping's entire body was severely damaged, and there was almost no part of him that did not hurt. Fortunately, the Zhen Yuan in his body flowed smoothly, and the torn muscles and tendons quickly recovered under the repair of the Zhen Yuan. Although the broken bones could not be repaired in an instant with the support of the Zhen Yuan, Lu Ping could still barely move. With the help of the Zhen Yuan, Lu Ping finally managed to open the storage ring on his finger. From within he found a jade-white spirit pill. This spirit pill was exactly the same as the spirit pill that Lu Ping had previously given to him after Jiang Tianlin Laozu had taken over the medium-sized spirit stone mine. The spirit pellet was originally a half-step avatar realm medicinal pellet. But after Lu Ping's alchemy skills reached the Grandmaster level, he upgraded the spirit pellet to the avatar realm. It was now a medicinal pellet meant for avatar realm cultivators to recover their arcane energy and heal injuries. At this time, Lu Ping did not care whether he would waste this spirit pill. At this time he just wanted to recover from the injuries in his body as soon as possible, get the benefits and leave as soon as possible. This was because Lu Ping did not know if anyone else would find this place. Outside the hill, Jiang Tianlin and Jinren Xianxin were the first to arrive. Jiang Tianlin Laozu frowned slightly and drew a line on the surface of the mirror with his hand. The small wine cup that had just been suppressed under a mountain range after being collected was beating rapidly, causing the whole mountain range to shake constantly, as if it was trying to break free from the mountain range. Jinren Xianxin was a little puzzled and asked, "Senior brother, is this small wine cup thing really a spirit treasure?" Jiang Tianlin Laozu nodded with a smile and said, "Before I was only 50% sure, but now I am 90% sure." Jinren Xianxin's face was also filled with joy, but then he heard Jiang Tianlin Laozu say, "However, this also means that the spirit of the palace that we are looking for is probably really a pure yang soul." Jiang Tianlin Laozu's tone was a little regretful. But when Jinren Xianxian heard this news, he was not too surprised. Instead he asked, "Senior brother, why are you so sure that the spirit of the palace is a pure yang soul?" Jiang Tianlin Laozu pointed to the wine cup that was suppressed in the Yingshu treasured mirror and said, "When a spirit-nurturing treasure reaches the peak of the 9th grade, that is, after refining the 9 treasure restrictions, it can undergo the thunder tribulation like a Dharma manifestation cultivator. After passing the thunder tribulation, the treasure can advance to become a spirit treasure, and after becoming a spirit treasure, not only will the spirituality of the spirit treasure increase greatly, but more importantly, after passing the thunder tribulation, the spirit treasure will form a pure yang qi, and this pure yang qi is the key to a spirit treasure." Now that this wine cup is so excited after approaching this hill, it has obviously sensed something that also has pure yang qi, and this area is where the spirit of the palace is located. Obviously, the treasure that has pure yang qi must be the spirit of the palace. Then why can't it also be a spirit treasure, or another Dharma manifestation soul? Venerable Xianxian asked, a little confused. Jiang Tianlin Laozu smiled and said, "Spirit treasures and normal Dharma manifestation souls are unable to attract the wine cup, which is also a spirit treasure. Only a pure yang soul formed from the Dharma manifestation soul of a Dharma manifestation cultivator who has gone through 3 thunder tribulations, or a spirit treasure that has gone through 3 thunder tribulations and become a pure yang spirit treasure can cause the wine cup to have such a reaction." Pure yang spirit treasure? Jiang Tianlin Laozu smiled and said, "Peng Laozu's 7 thunder treasures calabash was a pure yang spirit treasure." Venerable Xianxian suddenly understood. No wonder Jiang Tianlin Laozu only said that the spirit of the palace was a pure yang soul, and not a pure yang spirit treasure. If the Ying Tian sect really had a pure yang spirit treasure, how could it have been destroyed? At this time, Lu Ping, who had crossed the stone bridge in the middle of the mountain, finally managed to connect his broken bones with the support of his inner yuan. Although he still could not withstand too much vibration with the support of his inner yuan, he had no problem walking normally. Lu Ping slowly walked in front of the crystal ball of light that had caused him to go through all kinds of torture. Suddenly, a bluish-purple cloud slowly gathered on Lu Ping's chest. The cloud kept moving as if there was something hidden within it. The crystal ball of light floating above the stone throne seemed to be attracted by something, and it slowly floated towards Lu Ping's chest. After the ball of light floated in front of Lu Ping's chest, it suddenly stopped as if it was hesitating. At this time, a strange dragon with antlers on its head, the body of a snake, the legs of a crocodile, the tail of a fish, and the ears of a cow suddenly appeared from the bluish-purple cloud on Lu Ping's chest. The strange dragon flashed in the ball of light, and the bluish-purple cloud seemed to reach its limit in an instant. It began to rapidly shrink into the space in Lu Ping's heart core. However, the hesitant ball of light in front of Lu Ping's chest seemed to be attracted by the strange dragon the moment it appeared. The ball of light flashed and disappeared into Lu Ping's chest the moment the bluish-purple cloud completely shrank into the space in his heart core. Lu Ping's divine sense sank into the space in his heart core, and he saw a pure white ball of light slowly being assimilated by the cloud surrounding the golden core. At this time, the cloud that was slowly revolving around the golden core suddenly froze. It was as if a bolt of lightning had streaked across the sky. A dignified yet ancient and helpless voice suddenly sounded in the space in his heart core. The inheritance of the Ying Tian faction should not be severed. Lu Ping's divine sense was almost shattered in an instant. Lu Ping nervously searched for the source of the voice, but he found nothing. The ball of light that had just merged into the cloud surrounding the golden core also disappeared. However, the cloud surrounding the golden core was still solidified, and it formed a cloud shield that enveloped Lu Ping's golden core. Lu Ping's divine sense moved, but not only was his divine sense isolated from the golden core, even the true yuan in his body was isolated by this solidified cloud shield. This shock was no small matter, and Lu Ping's soul almost flew out of his body. If this cloud shield was still there, then wouldn't Lu Ping's cultivation be no different from being crippled? Cold sweat suddenly appeared. Lu Ping's mood at this time was even more gloomy than when he had just crossed the stone bridge. What should I do? What should I do? Lu Ping suddenly thought of the voice just now. The inheritance of the Ying Tian faction should not be severed. Could it be that this was a test left behind by an expert of the Ying Tian faction? However, 4,000 years had passed, and even a cultivator who had reached the true spirit level would have long since exhausted their lifespan and turned into ashes. So where did that voice come from? Chapter 671. At this point, Lu Ping could no longer care about where the voice had come from. The most important thing now was to figure out how to break through the purple cloud that had enveloped the golden core. If he could not break it, the little bit of vital energy that remained in Lu Ping's bloodline would become rootless duckweed. Once it was used up, it would be no different from a crippled cultivation. Lu Ping calmed himself down. He did not care if anyone could hear him and said in a low voice, "The Ying Tian faction has been destroyed, but the legacy of the Ying Tian faction will not be severed. I will do my best to spread the name of the Ying Tian faction, but the Ying Tian faction will no longer exist in this world." As soon as Lu Ping finished speaking, he heard a sigh that seemed to be fading away. The red cloud that had enveloped the golden core immediately returned to its original state. At the same time, an unparalleled vital energy suddenly surged from the red cloud toward the golden core. There was no joy on Lu Ping's face. Instead, his expression became even more solemn. This vital energy was obviously the pure vital energy that had been carried by the Dharma Power Soul just now. However, Lu Ping did not intend to absorb it into his own vital energy. Even though Lu Ping's cultivation might increase by leaps and bounds this way, Lu Ping had already learned from Jiang Tianlin's scolding of Feng Shutao that only by accepting the legacy of the Dharma Power Soul step by step would he be able to obtain long-term benefits. Moreover, Lu Ping had always pursued the purity and richness of his vital energy. Although the vital energy in the Dharma Power Soul did not have an owner and seemed to be abnormally pure, Lu Ping still insisted on condensing the vital energy in the red cloud first. Then, under the influence of the golden core, it would be slowly refined and absorbed by Lu Ping's body. From then on, it would be transformed into Lu Ping's own cultivation. Lu Ping did not know how much Feng Shutao, Jiang Tianlin, Zhang Shi, and the others had endured when they had inherited the Dharma Power Soul. However, Lu Ping now knew that he could not hold on any longer. The red cloud around the golden core was so thick that it almost covered the golden core again. The range of the red cloud was also increasing. The gentian pearl and the white jade lotus, which were in the innermost layer, were almost covered by the red cloud. However, at this time, the vital energy contained in the Dharma Power Soul had not been completely released. If this continued, Lu Ping could only face two choices. One was to directly integrate the remaining vital energy into his own vital energy. The advantage of this was that Lu Ping's cultivation would improve greatly, but the disadvantage was that in the long run, it might affect Lu Ping after he advanced to the Dharma stage. The second was that Lu Ping would give up on the remaining vital energy and expel it from his body. Although this would not affect Lu Ping's cultivation, such a large amount of vital energy would return to spirit qi and dissipate between heaven and earth. This kind of loss would make Lu Ping's heart ache. Lu Ping did not know how many years he would have to cultivate and how much vital energy he would have to condense before he could replenish the vital energy that he had given up. Just when Lu Ping was in a dilemma, the purple-red cloud finally overflowed the orbit of the 12 Gentian Great Array around the golden core. The red cloud was on the verge of losing control. Right at this moment, the entire 12 elemental star formation suddenly shook. The 9th grade white jade lotus that had been floating below the golden core all this time shone brightly, and the Dan cloud that filled the air rapidly gathered towards the white jade lotus as if it was being swallowed by a whale, forming a huge Dan cloud vortex below the golden core. The other 12 gentian pearls also formed small vortexes, absorbing the red cloud bit by bit, so that the red cloud could not surpass the circle formed by Lu Ping's natal array around the golden core. Of Lu Ping's 13 natal magic treasures, only 5 had been refined by Lu Ping, and they were only spiritual magic treasures. They were far behind Lu Ping's current cultivation of the 7th layer of the core forging stage. This was mainly because Lu Ping's own cultivation had increased too quickly. Not only did he have a large number of natal magic treasures, but each of them was also of extremely high quality. If he wanted to improve them, Lu Ping had to carefully carve the runes on each magic treasure. Only in this way could his natal magic treasures be more compatible with his own true qi. Only in this way could Lu Ping display 120% of his strength. However, now that a large amount of purple mist was pouring into the natal magic treasures, Lu Ping knew that it was because Laozu had absorbed a trace of purple pure yang qi during his celestial phenomenon tribulation. This was because there was still purple pure yang qi in the Dharma idol soul. If not for Lu Ping's strong rejection, perhaps there was no need for Lu Ping to guide it. The unparalleled true qi released from the Dharma idol soul would have automatically gathered in Lu Ping's golden core. After the purple mist was infused into the natal mystic treasure, Lu Ping's divine sense could sense that the mystic treasure's quality was slowly improving. The sixth mystic treasure that Lu Ping had engraved previously but couldn't be smelted in a short period of time began to light up after the purple mist was infused into the mystic treasure. Just as Lu Ping was finally able to control the expanding Danxia, Lu Ping's natal gentian formations suddenly intertwined with each other, forming a huge formation space with the golden core as the center. The rolling Danxia kept rushing left and right in the formation space, but it was unable to break through this space. Lu Ping's face lit up with joy. He didn't expect his natal mystic treasure to be refined to the pinnacle of spirit channeling mystic treasures in such a short time with the help of the Avatar's soul. At this moment, the seven treasures Thunder Calabash suddenly flew out from the second row around the golden core and carefully approached Lu Ping's natal magic treasure. Since the last time the seven treasures Thunder Calabash condensed the sixth treasure restriction, it wanted to occupy the position closest to the golden core occupied by Lu Ping's natal magic treasure, but it was defeated by the natal magic treasure. The seven treasures Thunder Calabash had been much more well-behaved in the core space. This time it slowly approached the lifebound formation, but it seemed to have obtained the recognition of the lifebound formation. The space formed by the formation slowly opened up an exit, and the surging purple Dan Yun immediately found an exit to vent, and all of it gushed out of the exit. The seven treasures Thunder Calabash suddenly swelled up above the exit. The mouth of the calabash was aimed at the exit of the natal magic treasure calabash, and a bluish-purple cloud formed an inverted whirlpool at the mouth of the calabash. Lu Ping knew that the bluish-purple cloud was the trace of pure yang qi that the seven treasures Thunder Calabash had snatched from the natal magic treasure. The danxia that had just gushed out of the exit seemed to be attracted by the pure yang qi in the seven treasures Thunder Calabash and was continuously absorbed by the Thunder Calabash. Just after Lu Ping's natal magic treasure successfully refined the sixth treasure restriction, the refined true essence from the 13 magic treasures gradually gathered and flowed towards Lu Ping's golden core. This part of the true essence had been refined by the natal magic treasure and was no different from Lu Ping's own true essence. After the golden core absorbed this part of the essence, Lu Ping could clearly feel the rapid growth of his own cultivation. Although Lu Ping tried his best to suppress it, his cultivation base still shot straight towards the 8th layer core forging realm. It was only when he reached the peak of the 7th layer core forging realm that Lu Ping finally managed to suppress it. He had only broken through to the core forging late stage a few years ago. Although this new part of the true essence had become the same as his own true essence, it was not obtained through his own cultivation. If he wanted to use it as freely as his own arm, he would need to run it for a long time. Once Lu Ping broke through and stepped into the core forging 8th layer, this part of the unfamiliar true essence would condense in his golden core. In the future, Lu Ping's cultivation would inevitably be adversely affected. Just as Lu Ping's cultivation was steadily rising under the impact of the huge Dharma Power Soul, Lu Ping's divine will suddenly suffered an explosive impact when the gradually fading sigh was heard. A mysterious cultivation technique, more than 1,000 years of cultivation experience, more than 1,000 years of travel, hundreds of life and death battles, strange things in the cultivation world, dangerous valleys, and even the big and small secrets of the Yingtian sect were all forcibly stuffed into Lu Ping's divine will. Although Lu Ping's divine will was already no weaker than a Dharma adept, the huge amount of information still gave Lu Ping a splitting headache. His divine will was almost lost in the information and was even about to be assimilated by it, causing Lu Ping to become another person. After a long time, Lu Ping finally woke up from his previous state. Only now did he feel waves of fear. The impact on Lu Ping's divine will was actually the Dharma Power Soul's inheritance to Lu Ping. Compared to this inheritance, the pure true essence in the Dharma Power Soul was merely an accessory to maintain the existence of the Dharma Power Soul, even though these accessories had almost caused Lu Ping's heart space to go out of control. At this moment, Lu Ping finally understood how much risk he had taken. What he had inherited was not an ordinary Dharma Power Soul, but a pure yang soul left behind by a practitioner who had gone through 3 thunder tribulations and had reached the peak of the Dharma adept. He was only one step away from becoming a true spirit. And the stone bridge test that the elder of the Yingtian sect had set up was obviously not for a late core forging adept like Lu Ping, but for a practitioner who had at least reached the Dharma adept stage. Perhaps the elder had not expected that the test he had set up would be passed by a late core forging adept. Originally, the inheritance of the pure yang soul could only be inherited by practitioners who had reached the mid-Dharma adept and had gone through the thunder tribulations. This meant that even early Dharma adepts like Jiang Tianlin and Laozu did not have the right to inherit the pure yang soul. However, Lu Ping had once refined a strand of pure yang qi during Laozu's thunder tribulations. Even though this strand of pure yang qi had been divided among Lu Ping's own golden elixir, his 13 natal treasures, and the 7 treasures thunder gourd, Lu Ping's inner yuan still carried the aura of pure yang qi. And it was precisely because the pure yang qi had been contaminated by so many treasures that Lu Ping was able to use his natal treasures and the 7 treasures thunder gourd to help his golden elixir suppress the inner yuan essence released by the pure yang soul and stabilize the foundation of his practice. Of course, if Lu Ping did not have an early Dharma adept's divine will, he would not have been able to completely inherit the pure yang soul from a peak Dharma adept. Among the hills, perfected Xianxin, who was walking towards the belly of the hill where Lu Ping was, suddenly exclaimed when he saw Lu Ping inherit the pure yang soul. "Oh no, the main spirit of the palace has been taken by someone else." Chapter 672. No one was clearer than Lu Ping about the huge benefits that the inheritance of the pure yang soul had brought him. This benefit did not seem to be reflected in the sharp increase in Lu Ping's cultivation and strength. However, Lu Ping knew that it was because of the inheritance of the pure yang soul that Lu Ping could go further in the future. The pure yang soul also brought to Lu Ping many secrets that were buried deep in the cultivation world. These secrets were enough for Lu Ping to clearly see the connections behind many things that happened in the cultivation world. It even included some speculations about the reason why large sects like Ying Tian sect and Fei Ling sect, which were once prominent in the cultivation world, were destroyed, as well as the culprit behind them, and so on. However, Lu Ping did not have the time to check all of these. After Lu Ping completely inherited the pure yang soul, the last sentence that appeared in Lu Ping's divine will was, "After the inheritance of the palace guardian spirit is completed, the Ying Tian dojo will collapse within 6 hours." At this time, Lu Ping's injuries were mostly healed due to the Dharma manifestation healing elixir, as well as the huge amount of vital essence that flowed into him when he inherited the pure yang soul. Lu Ping turned around and returned to the stone bridge. The forbidden space array that originally covered the space on both sides of the stone bridge had already begun to collapse. Lu Ping looked down and saw that the abyss under his feet that led straight to the shattered space seemed to have become much shallower. The belly of the mountain shook and broken stones began to fall. Lu Ping ran across the stone bridge at his fastest speed and passed through the corridor in the belly of the mountain. When he came out of the stone door, the hill behind him shook for a while and finally collapsed with a loud bang, sending dust flying everywhere. According to the memory of the pure yang soul, Lu Ping ran towards the west of this hill. At the edge of this hill, there was a hill that was slightly higher than the surrounding hills. Lu Ping came to a gravel slope behind the hill and found the largest stone. He slashed down with the golden scale sword in his hand, and the stone immediately broke into 2. In the center of the stone was an empty nest that was 1 foot square. A purple wooden box was placed in the empty nest. Lu Ping's eyes lit up. He picked up the purple wooden box and examined it before opening it. Inside was a thick book with a purple gold cover. Lu Ping put the book back into the purple wooden box and then carefully placed it in his storage ring. He then turned to the north. In the north of this hill, there was another legacy cultivation technique that was equivalent to the secret manual that Lu Ping had obtained. The Ying Tian sect had a legacy of more than 20,000 years. It had officially become a large sect in the cultivation world for more than 12,000 years. Whether it was its legacy or heritage, it far surpassed its overseas ally, the Fei Ling sect. In the 20,000 years of legacy of the Ying Tian sect, there had been a total of 4 Laozu who had achieved the true soul level. And the cultivation techniques that these 4 Laozu cultivated were called the direct legacy cultivation techniques by the Ying Tian sect. Before the Ying Tian sect was destroyed, these 4 direct legacy cultivation techniques were hidden by the Ying Tian sect's cultivators in 4 different directions on the hill in the middle of this grotto. The inheritance of the pure yang soul that Lu Ping had obtained was from the last peak Dharma adept of the Ying Tian sect, Fei Tian Laozu. On the eve of the Ying Tian sect's destruction, he used his final secret technique to activate the Ying Tian dojo and hide it in a crack in space. Fei Tian Laozu eventually died from his injuries. On the eve of his death, Fei Tian Laozu condensed the essence of his Dharma power, which he had cultivated for hundreds of years, into a pure yang soul and hid it in the belly of a mountain in the central palace grotto. It was used to suppress the central palace and even the entire Ying Tian dojo, so that it could be used by future cultivators to inherit the Ying Tian sect's orthodoxy. After Lu Ping obtained the inheritance of Fei Tian Laozu, he naturally valued these 4 direct legacy cultivation techniques that could allow a cultivator to achieve the true soul level. There was only one such cultivation technique in Jinling, and that was the mysterious ape water manipulation technique, cultivated by Tai Shin Laozu, the only expert in the history of Jinling who had achieved the true soul level. When Lu Ping arrived at the source of a spring at the foot of a hill in the north, he saw that the spring water had just dried up, and there was a huge pit about 10 feet deep at the source. His heart sank. The direct legacy cultivation technique of the Ying-Tian sect had already been taken by someone else. Another loud noise was heard. This time it was not the hill collapsing but the sound of people fighting. From afar, Feng Shutao shouted angrily, "Jiang Tianlin, you've gone too far. Do you want to keep this treasure all to yourself?" Jiang Tianlin Laozu's loud laughter rang out. "Feng Shutao, even though you and I discovered this treasure together, it's all yours. If you, Brother Feng, had snatched it first, do you think you'd be able to split it with me?" Yong. Feng Shutao snorted from the sky and then there was no more sound. It seemed like the Xianling sect had no choice but to swallow their anger. Lu Ping's heart skipped a beat. From the direction of the sound, there was indeed a place where the Ying-Tian sect had hidden the treasure. However, the inheritance of the pure Yang soul did not mention it too clearly. It only said that there were some treasures hidden there. It was obvious that the treasures there were not worth Fei Tian Laozu's attention. Lu Ping thought about it. Now that the central palace was on the verge of collapse, many of the previously hidden treasures were gradually being revealed due to the gradual disintegration of the restrictive formations. With the help of Fei Tian Laozu's inheritance, Lu Ping might be able to obtain more benefits than others. However, the various sects Laozu must have already discovered the abnormality of the central palace and were frantically searching for the treasures in the hollow. If Lu Ping was alone and encountered by the Dharma adepts of the other sects, there was no guarantee that the Dharma adepts would want to harm him. The battle between Jiang Tianlin and Feng Shutao just now had already proved that the previous agreement between the various sects was becoming less and less binding in the final moments of the self-discovery of the treasures. Lu Ping quickly ran in the direction of Jiang Tianlin Laozu's voice. Through the inherited memories, Lu Ping knew that although the treasures in that place were not high level, there were many of them. Jiang Tianlin Laozu would not be able to take all of them in a short period of time. Jiang Tianlin Laozu had just chased away Feng Shutao. With the help of Jinren Xianxin, he had just broken the restrictive formations that were already on the verge of collapse. From a cave, he had found a bunch of extraordinary items and low-level spiritual items. Then he saw Lu Ping flying towards him from afar. Jiang Tianlin smiled and said, "Just in time. This grotto heaven is probably going to collapse soon. It's best for everyone to gather together." After exchanging blows with Feng Shutao just now, I'm afraid that the other sects Laozu will also break the rules and attack recklessly. Lu Ping glanced at the cave behind Jiang Tianlin and found that it was already empty. Therefore he asked, "Martial uncle, which direction are you coming from?" Jiang Tianlin did not know why Lu Ping was asking this, but seeing that Lu Ping's expression was solemn, he replied, "From the south." "What?" Lu Ping said, "There is an inherited ancient book buried under a tree at the top of a hill in the south. I wonder if Martial uncle has discovered it?" Jiang Tianlin Laozu and Jinren Xianxin looked at Lu Ping in surprise. Jiang Tianlin Laozu reached into his sleeve and took out a book that was exactly the same as the one that Lu Ping had obtained with a purple gold cover. It was in Jiang Tianlin Laozu's hand. Jiang Tianlin Laozu weighed the secret book in his hand and said, "Are you talking about this ancient book?" Lu Ping was delighted and said, "Yes, this is the ancient book. This is the only 4 direct inheritance ancient books of the Ying-Tian faction." Direct inheritance ancient book? Looking at the two's doubtful eyes, Lu Ping did not want to waste time explaining. Therefore he took out the one that he had obtained and handed it to Jiang Tianlin Laozu. He said, "It is a cultivation method that is even more powerful than a direct inheritance cultivation method. It is just like our sect's art of mystical ape water manipulation." Jiang Tianlin Laozu's expression immediately changed when he heard Lu Ping's words. Although Jinling had 5 true inheritances, all the high-level cultivators of Jinling knew the position of the art of mystical ape water manipulation in Jinling's 5 true inheritances. Since Lu Ping said that the Ying-Tian faction's direct inheritance cultivation method was comparable to the art of mystical ape water manipulation, didn't that mean that the Ying-Tian faction once had a cultivator who used these 2 cultivation methods to achieve the real soul level? Jiang Tianlin changed his previous casual attitude and carefully kept the two ancient books. Spiritual Master Xianxin asked Lu Ping, "How did you know that there was an ancient book there?" Lu Ping naturally could not say that he had already obtained the inheritance of the pure Yang soul. That would be too shocking. Therefore he only said vaguely, "I just saw a similar record in a treasure trove. Later on I found this ancient book on a gravel slope in the west according to the record. I don't think it is wrong. Unfortunately, when I went to the source of a mountain spring in the north to look for the other one, I found that it had already been found by someone else." It was Feng Shutao. Jiang Tianlin Laozu said in a low voice. Feng Shutao and Chen Daofeng came from the north. Lu Ping didn't have time to explain further. He said, "I've also found out about some hidden treasures. There's a wooden bridge in the valley behind the eastern hill. There's also a book that was passed down from generation to generation." As soon as Lu Ping finished speaking, he heard a series of concentrated magic roars from the east. A woman's voice sounded. "Dongua Geezer, Zhang Shi, the two of you killed my Shui Yen Pavilion's disciple and even tried in vain to snatch the cultivation method that my Shui Yen Pavilion obtained. When I leave this grotto heaven, my Shui Yen Pavilion will definitely not let you off." Lu Ping and Jiang Tianlin Laozu looked at each other. They did not expect their luck to be so bad. They just wanted to find the ancient book, but the Shui Yen Pavilion snatched it first. Moreover, from the Shui Yen Pavilion's Dharma idol Laozu's angry shout, it was obvious that the Azure Sea sect's attempt to snatch it failed. Instead, they killed a Shui Yen Pavilion's core forging stage cultivator. However, they did not know if the person killed was the Shui Yen Pavilion's formation grandmaster. Otherwise, the Shui Yen Pavilion and the Azure Sea sect would really be enemies. Jiang Tianlin Laozu also laughed dryly. Out of the 4 direct inheritance ancient books, our sect got 2. It is considered not bad. Taoist Xianxin turned around and said, "Do you know where the treasures are?" Lu Ping was stunned and said, "Now that the formations and restrictions of the entire grotto heaven have started to collapse, the treasures that were previously hidden have started to be exposed. However, there are indeed a few places that are more important in my memory. Let's walk from the southeast first. If we are lucky, we can find a treasure vault that stores earth-rank spiritual items, an underground scripture pavilion, and a spirit sealing box that stores spiritual pills." That you're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.